Every night at the stroke of midnight, I stand before a mirror to sketch a self-portrait. I then submerge the drawing in water, allowing it to manifest as a physical clone. Every gain in cultivation, every technique mastered, and every insight or combat experience acquired by this clone is synchronized with my original body. With this power, I have scattered my clones across the vast world of cultivation. Some have joined holy lands, sweeping through their ranks to become peerless prodigies with heaven-defying potential. Some have infiltrated the demonic sects, ascending step by step to occupy the throne of the demon lord. Others have hidden themselves within the mortal realm, commanding merchant guilds and manipulating dynasties from the shadows. Since then, the world of cultivation has seen thousands of overlords, and my clones account for half of them, existing across the heavens and myriad realms. Together, they have woven a network of influence that blankets the entire cultivation world. Yet my true self remains in a small mortal town, living as an idle youth with nothing to do, spending each day lying in my courtyard soaking in the sun. At this moment, having just successfully created my first clone, I stare at the character customization interface before me, lost in deep contemplation. Creating a handsome man will not do. Being too attractive is bound to draw unnecessary attention. Without sufficient strength yet, it would be troublesome to catch the eye of some wealthy matriarch or a deviant cultivator. Creating a beautiful woman is even less viable. A stunning appearance is a source of disaster. While beauty could be used to earn wealth quickly, the risks are far too great, often leading to bloody conflicts. As I am currently unable to protect myself, the clone must be useful and durable. It must appear to be a ruthless individual one should not provoke. Yet it must also be the type of person whom no one would spare a second glance for in a crowd. Like a lowly pugilist from the bottom of society, my fingers glide across the screen, beginning to adjust the parameters. I set the height to 2.1 meters, broad-shouldered and sturdy of build. I adjust the muscle mass to the absolute human limit. The neck must be thick to denote raw power. I set the skin tone to a dark weathered bronze. This is the hallmark of years of hard physical labor. As for the face, I ponder for a moment, choosing a large square jawline for the clone, with eyes that appear slightly dull and witless, paired with a short-cropped buzz cut. One look at this appearance and it is clear that he is not the brightest, but possesses the raw strength of an ox. I confirm the creation of the clone and name him Adai. As the confirmation button was pressed, the mist instantly condensed. With a low thud, a burly man towering like a pagoda stood in the cramped room, his head nearly grazed the rafters. In the following moment, a miraculous sensation flooded my heart. I discovered that my vision had been split in two. I could see myself sitting by the bedside, and simultaneously I could see the frail youth standing before me. I attempted to raise my hand, and my main body lifted its left hand. Adai raised a right hand as broad as a palm leaf fan. The two consciousnesses did not conflict in the slightest, functioning much like the coordination between a left and right hand, or perhaps even more fluidly. My main body stood up and circled Adai twice. I reached out to pinch the muscles on the clone's arm, which were as hard as stone. Products forged by the system are indeed of the finest quality. Although still within the realm of a mortal, this was undoubtedly the peak of human physique. However, clothing presented a problem. I rummaged through the wardrobe, finding the old burlap garments my father had left behind, and after much effort I stitched two sets together, barely managing to clothe Adai. Although the trouser legs were short and clung tightly like training gear, they at least covered the essential parts. Very well, Adai, I sat back on the bed, my gaze growing profound. We are nearly out of rice, you must earn money, but how can we acquire it quickly? Robbery is out of the question. Though Kingston Town is remote, there are still constables. Once a bounty is placed on one's head, it becomes quite troublesome and manual labor is far too slow. An image flashed through my mind, the Zuisheng Pavilion at the west end of town. On the surface, it is a brothel, but beneath the earth lies a chaotic gambling den, along with an animal fighting arena for the entertainment of wealthy merchants. The so-called beast fighting often involves man against dog, or at times man against man. Winning a single match earns 5 taels of silver, while losing means being maimed of limbs. As Adai arrived at Zuisheng Pavilion, I closed my eyes and shifted the majority of my consciousness into the clone. The midday sun was somewhat blinding. Adai pushed open the door, ducking his head to squeeze outside. He walked barefoot, leaving a deep indentation in the muddy ground with every step. Passersby caught sight of this towering, dark, idiotic giant and hurried to clear a path. Adai maintained an expressionless face, his eyes dull as he marched straight toward the west of town. This was the exact effect I desired. A wanderer of unknown origin with a clouded mind, even if he were to die in the arena, no one would bother to investigate his background. At that moment, in the alley behind Zuisheng Pavilion, 2 thugs guarding the gambling den were squatting on the ground smoking when they suddenly felt the light blocked before them. Looking up, they saw a man as massive as a bear looming over them, staring down. "What are you doing?" The thug trembled, the cigarette in his hand nearly slipping from his grasp. Adai opened his mouth, his voice rasping and thick. It sounded like 2 grindstones rubbing against each other. The 2 thugs looked at each other and burst into laughter. This massive brute was exactly the type of punching bag the underground arena favored, resilient yet devoid of intelligence. There was no need for concern. He would take the money and flee, not even requiring a life and death contract. "Big man, follow us." One of the thugs stood up and led Adai through a dim corridor toward the basement. The air was thick with the cacophony of roars and the pungent stench of sweat and blood. Inside an iron cage, 2 bare-chested men were grappling, their faces masked in gore. Gamblers crowded around, waving banknotes in their hands with bloodshot eyes. "Fresh meat, we've brought in a prime specimen," the thug shouted out. A middle-aged man with a beard and a hat approached them. He looked Adai up and down, nodding in satisfaction. "5 taels for a win. If you lose, we drag you out. The winnings will be paid after the match. Do you want to test your mettle now? We are short on fighters." Very well. He did not waste words. The iron cage opened and the defeated fighter was dragged out like a dead dog. Adai stepped into the cage. His opponent was a wiry man nicknamed Mad Dog, his hands wrapped in rope stained with dried blood and flesh. Seeing Adai's clumsy appearance, Mad Dog sneered. He pushed off his feet, launching himself like a projectile, aiming straight for the groin. It was a vicious move typical of street fighters. However, under the clarity of my dual vision, this move did not seem slow because of Mad Dog's lack of speed, but because Adai's reflexes were simply too superior. Combined with my cold, ruthless judgment, I did not evade. Adai stood his ground, allowing Mad Dog to deliver a punch directly to his abdomen. With a dull thud, the smile on Mad Dog's face froze. He felt as though he had struck a sheet of iron wrapped in thick cowhide. His wrist throbbed with sharp pain. Immediately after, a massive hand clamped onto Mad Dog's head. Adai did not even use a technique, he merely leveraged his height and strength as if swatting a mosquito. He slammed Mad Dog's head into the ground, sending dust billowing into the air. The entire basement fell into sudden silence. Mad Dog twitched a few times before going still. With a single finishing blow, the gamblers in the stands were stunned for a moment. They cared not for who would emerge victorious. They were captivated only by the overwhelming dominance of such raw violence. The referee screamed until his voice cracked, declaring Adai the winner. The iron cage opened and ignoring the ball of wind on the ground, Adai walked straight towards Steward Wang, who stood in a daze and extended his hand once more. His face remained vacant, devoid of any expression. Steward Wang swallowed hard, retrieved a 5-tael silver ingot from his robes and placed it into that massive palm. Will there be another match? Steward Wang stared at Adai as if looking at a monster. Adai picked up the silver, casually stuffed it into his tight-fitting trousers and turned back toward the cage. Continue. In my dilapidated tile-roofed house, I opened my eyes, a faint smile curling at the corners of my mouth. This sensation is truly intoxicating. There is no need to risk my own life or fear sustaining injuries. Simply maneuvers like playing a game and the silver flows into my pockets. 5 taels have already been secured. At this rate, winning just one more match will allow me to recover the capital invested in Adai. By the third match, it will be pure profit. I cannot simply settle for earning silver. I tapped my fingers lightly against the bed frame. My mind raced. This was merely the beginning. Once I have secured enough capital, even a few dozen taels will be enough to exchange for 2 or 3 more avatars. By then, one can continue fighting in the arena to earn wealth, another can go to the apothecary as an apprentice to steal the knowledge of alchemy, and as for the third one, I looked out the window, toward the mountain range looming in the distant mist, for that is the residence of the Qingyun sect. It is said that the Qingyun sect recruits miscellaneous disciples every year. Although the life of a miscellaneous disciple is arduous, one could gain access to the most fundamental chi refinement techniques. It would be too dangerous for my main body to go. It is said that miscellaneous disciples are often bullied by outer sect disciples, and even if they are beaten to death, no one cares. Once I have enough money, I will send Ayer. I stretched my limbs and closed my eyes, shifting my consciousness back into the body of Adai. Down in the cellar, the new opponent had entered the cage. It was a hulking man wielding a wooden staff. Adai remained expressionless, as cold and unyielding as a boulder. In my eyes, that was not an opponent. It was clearly half a mobile avatar exchange. Come then, all of this is simply experience points for me. There came the crisp sound of snapping bones. Amidst the clamor of the underground arena, this sound was barely audible, yet to those involved, it rang out like a thunderclap. The hulking man wielding the club had not even finished his war cry before Adai sent him flying with a single iron mountain lean. His entire body slammed into the iron mesh like a wall hanging before he slumped limply to the ground. The arena fell silent for a heartbeat before erupting into an even more thunderous roar. The third match had concluded with yet another decisive finish. Up in the stands, the gamblers waved their betting slips, filling the air with fluttering parchment. Some faces were flushed with the joy of victory, while others pounded their chests and stamped their feet in the despair of defeat. I sat on the edge of the bed in my dilapidated shack, watching the scene with eyes as cold as a silent film, shielding myself from the phantom sensation of pain. This was a hidden function of the system. Adai had actually been struck on the shoulder by the club moments ago. Had he been an ordinary man, the agony would have left him unable to lift an arm. But for this vessel, it was merely a negligible deduction of his health bar. It had absolutely no impact on his movements. Before the next match, Adai stood inside the cage, his feet planted in the slick mire of blood and grime, his voice remaining dull and hoarse. Steward Wang, standing below the platform, stroked his thick beard, his gaze shifting from appreciation to cold calculation. This fool has not shed a single drop of sweat. He is nothing short of a human-shaped beast. Send in the butcher, lower his betting odds, and while you are at it, ask if this fool is interested in signing a long-term contract. Steward Wang tilted his head to bark the order at his subordinate. A moment later, a man heavy with fat, clutching 2 cleavers, crawled into the cage. Facing an armed opponent this time, my eyes flickered. Had it been my true body, I would have fled from such a ruffian as far as possible. But Adai was different. The match began. The butcher sneered and swung his blades wildly, lacking technique but possessing brute force. I controlled Adai to advance rather than retreat, taking a single step toward the path of the blades. It was a perilous movement as the butcher's blade grazed the bridge of Adai's nose, shearing off a few stray locks of hair. At that very moment, Adai's hand, as broad as a palm leaf fan, lashed out like lightning. He did not attempt to parry the blade but instead clamped his fingers directly onto the butcher's wrist. With his 5 fingers tightening like a vice, the excruciating pain in the butcher's wrist caused the cleaver to clatter to the ground. Adai followed through by lifting his leg, delivering an unadorned knee strike to the 100+ kilogram man. The butcher immediately curled up like a shrimp, foam spilling from his mouth, his eyes bulging in shock. It is all too simple, I shook my head. At this level of combat, as long as one overcomes the fear of injury and utilizes their physical constitution and judgment, it is no different from bullying a child. The 4th match was won, the 5th match was won, and by the time the 6th match ended, the rough hempen tunic on Adai's body had been shredded into rag. His bronze-colored muscles were exposed, marked by several fresh streaks of blood, yet his ferocious aura only intensified, and no one dared to step onto the stage again. Steward Wang had no choice but to intervene. Stop, that is enough for tonight. Very well, go and collect your earnings. If this fool continued to fight, the other matches tonight would never be able to proceed. Steward Wang handed Adai a heavy pouch of silver, his eyes flashing with calculation. Big brother, come back every day from now on. I will offer you double the appearance fee. What do you say? Adai accepted the money bag, mechanically stuffing it into his waistband, the only place on his person still intact enough to hold items. I am tired. I am going to sleep. Adai turned and walked away, not bothering to acknowledge Steward Wang's offer. 2 of the bouncers intended to block his path, but Steward Wang waved them off. Let him go. A man who risks his life like this only cares for the reward, and he will return tomorrow. Upon leaving Tui Sin Lao, Adai did not head straight home. I was being extremely cautious. I controlled Adai to circle the town 3 times, deliberately weaving through dark, narrow alleys, and only after confirming no one was following did I stop at a desolate shrine outside the town. Adai then tucked the money bag beneath the altar, standing guard at the shrine entrance like a wooden statue. Half an hour later, a gaunt figure utilized the cover of darkness to slip into the shrine. I retrieved the money bag and opened it. There was a total of 40 taels of silver, a 10-tael bonus. It seems a die has a very promising future. My heart pounded with excitement for a mortal still struggling for basic sustenance. This amount of money is a small fortune, but I did not intend to keep it in this world. Hoarding wealth is the most foolish course of action. Only by converting currency into strength can one be truly secure. System, initiate deposit. I wish to exchange for more clones. Deposit successful. Current balance, 40 taels. Mortal clone unit price. I sat cross-legged upon the tattered mat. With consciousness sharp as a blade, I began the process of forging my creations. This time there was no need to pursue the extreme combat prowess required for Ada. Clone number 2. Named A-Ear. This body must be agile, its appearance quick-witted. Ideally, it should resemble a rogue who has spent years navigating the gritty realities of life. I adjusted the parameters: a lean build, standing about 1.7 meters tall, with a common face and a slight persistent smirk at the corner of his lips, carrying a hint of deviousness in his expression, his slender fingers nimble, perfectly suited for intricate work or pilfering keys on the fly. Clone number 3, named Asan. This one was the most vital. I drew a deep breath, my expression turning solemn. Asan was destined for the Qingyun sect. What do the Immortal Gates look for when recruiting disciples? They examine one's foundation and age. I set his age to 12, crafting a youth with fair skin, appearing like a scholar's child, not a hint of rascality allowed. His features had to be refined, with a touch of heroic spirit and resolve etched between his brows. The presiding elders and deacons favor this type, assuming such a child possesses a righteous temperament. Soon enough, the image of a refined youth manifested in the air. Clone number 4, named AC. This one was a contingency plan. I pondered for a moment, then directly used the mold of a martial arts star from my previous life. Moderate height, muscles toned but not excessively imposing. I designated him as a hunter responsible for trekking into the mountains to forage herbs and hunt for meat to nourish the main body, while simultaneously scouting the wild terrain. After deducting 30 taels of silver for expenses, 10 taels remained. The clones were successfully formed. The empty, desolate temple instantly grew crowded with 3 new figures, plus Ada standing guard at the entrance. I had transformed from a solitary soul into a leader of a 4-man team. A strange yet profound sense of security washed over me. 4 perspectives from 4 angles simultaneously fed back into my consciousness. Ayer was lowering his head, studying his own hands. Asan was testing the agility of his youthful limbs. AC stared blankly at the spiderwebs in the corner of the wall. The system finally showed a glimmer of conscience as it had begun to provide clothing. System, you have my gratitude. I sat down and began to delegate their tasks. AD, you are to continue your martial bouts. That is our current source of liquid capital, but be mindful of the frequency. Go every 2 days and do not intimidate the opponent so severely. Ada, station at the entrance, did not turn back. Only a flicker of confirmation echoed through my mind. Ayer, the youth with the rogue-like air, turned back, a cunning smile plastered on his face. Take this silver to the town to procure medicinal herbs, then resell them in the city or visit the tea houses to establish connections. I require information. Wherever there are rumors of cultivators or strange occurrences, I must be made aware. I nodded slightly and accepted the loose silver I offered, his movements as nimble as a common thief. A 2, when you head to the back mountain, there is no need to venture too deep. Just stay near the hunting grounds at the forest's edge. The house is out of grain and meat. My true body is growing and requires sustenance. Clad in his hunter's attire, a 2 gripped a wooden staff in silence, turned and vanished into the night. Finally, I turned my gaze toward the refined 12-year-old youth. Asan, stay home for 2 days and recover your strength. Do not look so sallow. In a few days, the Qingyun sect will be recruiting laborers. When you go, remember, once you enter the sect, as long as you do not die, you must strive with everything you have. If you must spy on others to learn their cultivation techniques, so be it. If you must humble yourself to win the favor of the outer sect disciples, do so. I require you to obtain a chi refining manual within the shortest time possible. Asan blinked, his youthful face revealing a composure that belied his age. With the arrangements made, I looked at the remaining 3 taels of silver in my hand. Far from being panicked, I was brimming with ambition. This is the beginning of a snowball effect. To cultivate as a single individual is too slow, too arduous, and far too dangerous. But what if I possessed 100 or even 1,000 clones? Some responsible for earning wealth, others for refining elixirs. Some tasked with braving dangerous secret realms, while others act as molds embedded deep within the great sects. And I need only remain in the shadows to reap the rewards. My stomach growled at an inopportune moment, and I rubbed my hollow abdomen. I retrieved half a stale rock-hard bun left upon the offering table by an unknown hand, took a bite, and set my first small goal: to find a way to become a cultivator as quickly as possible. 3 days later, Qingshan town became unusually boisterous. The triennial grand ceremony for the Qingyun sect's labor recruitment was being held at the town's central plaza. While termed a grand ceremony, it was, in truth, quite modest. A few tables and 3 cultivators clad in azure robe. Before them stood a spirit stone intended for testing one's spiritual roots. The plaza was packed with people, mostly impoverished folk hoping to test their children's fortunes. I did not go to join the festivities. I sat at a noodle stall on the edge of town, slurping down a bowl of Yangchun noodles. At this moment, my consciousness felt as if it were observing a surveillance screen, quietly monitoring the proceedings of the recruitment ceremony. My primary perspective remained with me, while my secondary perspective lingered on Asan, lost within the crowd. A tam wore a long robe that had been washed until it was faded, yet it remained remarkably clean. Standing amidst a crowd of children with runny noses, he stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. The middle-aged cultivator in charge of the examination shouted with a hint of impatience. Next. The entire morning has been nothing but useless spiritual roots. It seems the mortal realm is indeed incapable of producing any promising seedlings. A tam stepped forward. Following my instructions, he feigned nervousness, his hands and feet moving clumsily as he placed them upon the dull gray stone. Since he was applying as a handyman, a high level of talent was not strictly required. Even without spiritual roots, as long as one possessed a healthy physique and remained obedient, one could occasionally be accepted for manual labor. The stone flickered with a faint white light, interspersed with an exceptionally dim trace of green. The middle-aged cultivator raised an eyebrow and appraised a tam from head to toe, noting the youth's refined features and clear eyes, which, despite their shyness, revealed a sharp intelligence. He could not help but give a slight nod. What is your name? Reporting to the Immortal Master, this humble one is named Fan Tam. This name was one I had chosen offhandedly to commemorate this being my third mortal avatar. The middle-aged cultivator tossed a wooden token to a tam, saying, "Go to the medicinal garden and pull weeds. Consider yourself passed." From the crowd, countless gazes filled with envy and jealousy turned toward him. Once one enters the Immortal sect, even as a mere handyman, one has effectively embarked on the path of Tao, rising to the heavens alongside the dogs and chickens of the master. From this point on, he would be considered a superior being in the eyes of ordinary mortals. From a distance, I sat eating my noodles, the corners of my mouth curling upward as I drained the last of the broth. Success. As long as he has secured entry, the cultivation techniques of the Qingyun sect will sooner or later be within my grasp. At that very moment, a violent ripple of energy suddenly surged from a different perspective. It was Ayer. He was currently inside the town's largest pawn shop, Jin Yutang. Through Ayer's eyes, I beheld a peculiar jade pendant. That jade pendant lay in the darkest corner of the counter, covered in grime, looking as if it had just been unearthed from the soil. Yet the system's notification window suddenly materialized within Ayer's field of vision. Faint spiritual fluctuations detected. Suspected fragment of a low-grade magic tool. My grip tightened on my chopsticks. I had stumbled upon a bargain. To think this system also possessed the inside Jin Yutang. Ayer, disguised as a hooligan, leaned against the counter and haggled with the shopkeeper. "2 dare ask for 5 taels for this broken piece of jade? Have you gone mad with greed? Look at this chip, it's so uneven it wouldn't even serve well as a table leg." Ayer wore an expression of disdain, his saliva flying as he spoke. The shopkeeper, a shrewd diminutive old man, cast a sidelong glance at him. "Buy it or don't, it is entirely up to you. This is a family heirloom passed down for generations. If you are sincere about buying it, it is 3 taels of silver for one." Ayer held up one finger. "I am buying this as a toy for my foolish younger brother. I cannot pay a cent more." Ayer fished out 2 pieces of broken silver and placed them on the table, his movement swift as if he feared the shopkeeper might change his mind, and immediately stuffed the grubby jade pendant into his robes. With the transaction complete, Ayer turned and walked out of the pawn shop, the hooligan-like expression on his face instantly vanishing, replaced by a cold, detached look unbefitting a common man. Following my instructions, he did not linger, heading straight out of the city and racing like the wind toward the mountain behind where AC waited. One cannot simply touch such an item carelessly. If there were a spiritual imprint from a former master or a trap laid by some demonic cultivator, bringing it home would be equivalent to inviting disaster. It is better to have an avatar take it to the wilderness, find a secluded spot to study it thoroughly, and then decide. Having many avatars is truly a blessing. I left a few coins to pay for the tea, pulled the brim of my hat low, and merged into the crowd. Even if it were to explode, I would only temporarily lose one avatar. Tomorrow, I will be a hero once again. Outside Qingshan Town, in the dense forest of the cemetery, a place where even wild dogs rarely tread, the yin energy hung heavy. Ayer squatted on a tombstone covered in green moss, turning the dirty jade piece he had just retrieved from the pawn shop over in his hands, his face maintaining that familiar roguish smile, yet his eyes remained devoid of any warmth. Opposite him, disguised as a hunter, sat beneath a crooked ancient tree, holding a paring knife and whittling a piece of wood with varying focus, wood shavings fluttering down. What did the main body say? Ayer suddenly opened his mouth and spoke into the void. At this moment, I sat within the thatched hut, gnawing on a cold steamed bun while accessing the system's group video chat interface. What is the next course of action? Smash it. Ayer, smash it to pieces. My instructions were simple. This jade fragment emanated fluctuations of spiritual energy, yet its exterior was encased in a dull, hardened gray shell, making its true nature impossible to discern. If this were a conventional cultivation protagonist, they would undoubtedly seek out a master for appraisal or attempt to refine it with flame. But I care little for convention. If the system commands me to smash it, I smash it. Ayer acknowledged the order, casually picking up a heavy stone from the side and placing the jade fragment upon a tombstone. With a dull thud, stone fragments scattered in every direction devoid of any mystical effects. A mere crack appeared, and a small milky white stone the size of a fingernail rolled out. The surrounding temperature seemed to drop by several degrees. A wave of indescribable pure energy permeated the air, causing Ayer, who was crouching nearby, to feel a sudden clarity of mind. The exhaustion accumulated from days of travel began to dissipate significantly. System notification detected a fragmented low-grade spirit stone containing 32% spiritual energy may be exchanged for 32 system currency or utilized for cultivation. I gazed at the control panel, an eyebrow arched in interest. Indeed, this is the universal currency of the cultivation world. Although this spirit stone possessed only a fraction of its total spiritual essence, it was far beyond the reach of mundane gold and silver. "Do not move," I commanded, stopping Ayer as he reached to stow the spirit stone away. "AC, you take it." Ace stopped whittling wood, stood up, retrieved the spirit stone, and clutched it tightly in his palm. Ayer returned to the town and maintained surveillance. Report any suspicious movement immediately. AC, remain within this forest and do not venture elsewhere. Even while you sleep, keep that stone in your mouth, do not lose it. With these arrangements settled, my consciousness shifted elsewhere. Sect, Manual Peak. The air here was indeed vastly superior to that at the foot of the mountain. I drew a deep breath, feeling a refreshing coolness within my chest, though the environment itself was far from ideal. Dozens of low, dilapidated wooden huts were scattered throughout the valley, the air heavy with the scent of sweat and the sour aroma of fermented medicinal dregs. A Sam stood before a wooden hut, holding a set of coarse gray linen garments and a pitifully thin manual. Before him sat a pockmarked menial disciple, legs crossed atop a large green boulder, lazily cleaning his ear with his pinky finger. "Newcomer, are you familiar with the rules?" The pockmarked youth glanced disdainfully at Asan. "I am the steward of this medicinal garden. You may address me as Senior Brother Zhao. Once you have entered the status of a chore disciple here, regardless of whether you were a young master or a noble in the mortal realm, you must tuck your tail between your legs and behave." "Yes, Senior Brother Zhao." Asan bowed his head, appearing extremely obedient. This copy of the first 3 levels of the Evergreen technique was granted to you by the sect. Senior Brother Zhao pointed at the small booklet. "Do not think that possessing a manual makes you an immortal. Among our 10,000 chore disciples, it is not certain that even one will successfully cultivate a sense of qi. Just obediently go to the medicinal field to weed. You must pick 3 baskets full every day. If you are short by even 1 basket, you will not receive your meal." Having said that, Senior Brother Zhao waved his hand, shooing Asan away as if he were shooing a fly. Asan carried his belongings to the communal wooden shack that had been assigned to him. The interior was a large open room shared by over a dozen people with snoring echoing to the heavens. Asan found an empty bed in the corner and sat down. The first thing he did was to open the Evergreen technique. He discovered the Immortal Cultivation Manual, the Evergreen technique. It is a fragmented, yellow-grade low-tier cultivation method. Scanning is in progress. The content has been synchronized. Within the wooden shack, a gray-colored incantation and several diagrams of chi flow instantly appeared in my mind. I closed my eyes and carefully read it. It was very simple. To put it plainly, it is a method of respiration, coordinated with a specific meditative path, to sense the spiritual energy drifting through heaven and earth and guide it into the body, circulating it through the meridians in a full cycle. It is no wonder that Callous Man said that out of 10,000 people, it is hard for even one to succeed. The most difficult aspect of this technique is the sensing of energy. A mortal's senses are dull. Having to grasp a single wisp of spiritual energy from the vast murky air is no different from searching for a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Without a master to guide the way, simply relying on oneself to sit in solitude, one could sit until death and still not necessarily be able to enter the gate of cultivation. Practicing in the conventional way will certainly not suffice. I stroked my chin. The clone has trash spiritual roots, and my own aptitude is also that of trash spiritual roots, only slightly better than Immortal's. If I cultivate step by step, it would take at least several years to develop a sense of chi. That is too long. My gaze turned toward another frame in the corner of my vision within the dark, dense forest. A sea was sitting under a tree like a statue, with that low-grade spirit stone held in his mouth. If I do not rely on sensing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but instead directly infuse the spirit, a wild, reckless thought took root in my mind. Within the sect, a tam could not act with such reckless abandon. Once a cultivation mistake was made or an anomaly detected, he would surely be cast down the mountain. But Ace Sai was outside the sect. Asi was a death knight, a mere sacrifice. What would happen if the system failed to grant the necessary meridian durability, and I forcefully extracted spirit energy from the spirit stone to stimulate the light aperture? The system offered no answer. Disregarding the risk, I decided to test it immediately. My gaze flashed with determination as my consciousness fully descended into his body. The night wind howled, and the occasional cry of an owl echoed through the forest. Asai sat cross-legged, his face as stoic as a wooden statue betrayed no emotion befitting a death knight. With the spirit stone held firmly in his teeth, it began. I controlled Asai to bypass the gentle breathing techniques of the Evergreen Manual, instead visualizing the energy diagrams in my mind and biting off a corner of the spirit stone with all his might. A faint, crisp cracking sound resonated within his mouth. The very next second, a violent surge of heat rushed straight down his throat. It was not a gentle stream of energy. It felt as if he had swallowed a mouthful of boiling lava. The pure spirit energy sealed within the stone erupted without any mitigation. In an instant, it flooded Asai's chest. Asai's eyes snapped open, blue veins bulged on his neck, and his bronze-colored skin turned as crimson as a boiled shrimp. The pain was agonizing, as if his body were being torn asunder. An ordinary person would have been rolling on the ground in agony, or even passed out from the shock, but I immediately shielded his perception of the pain. Cold and detached as a surgeon, I silently observed the damage report of my clone on the system interface. The volume of spirit energy was overwhelming, esophageal damage, gastric hemorrhaging, but I ignored it and continued to guide the flow. Using my willpower, I forcefully compelled the raging heat rampaging through Asai's body to follow the path of the first layer of the Evergreen Manual, driving it toward the Dantian. This step was unimaginably difficult. The meridians were too narrow and the energy current too violent, much like trying to force a high-pressure hose into a rusted pipe. Asai coughed up a mouthful of blood, and crimson liquid seeped from his nostrils, yet he remained sitting perfectly upright, not moving an inch. It was finished. I saw that although the violent spirit energy had ruptured several minor meridians, it had finally been forced into the main meridian channel. The sensation was remarkably clear. The previously obstructed meridians were forcibly stretched, and the path of the spirit energy left a deep, carved impression upon my consciousness. This was the sensation of chi. Others might search for this tingling feeling by gently teasing it with a feather. But I struck it with an iron rod, brutal perhaps, but effective and immediate. 1, 2, 3 times. Asai's body began to tremble as blood leaked from his 7 orifices and tiny beads of blood seeped through his skin. The fractured spirit stone had already been more than half consumed. Finally, as the 9th circulation reached its conclusion, A2's body collapsed, limp and lifeless. His meridians were shattered, and his internal organs suffered grave injuries. In the thatched cottage, I suddenly opened my eyes, my expression pale, the lingering aftermath of extreme mental exhaustion. Glancing at the interface, I saw that the avatar A2 had perished. The cause of death, spirit energy explosion. The revival countdown began. 12 memories were synchronizing. As the insight synchronized, a massive surge of information flooded my mind. These were not mere words from a manual, but genuine, visceral muscle memory. How did spirit energy flow through the meridians, and which acupoints hindered its passage? The intense burning sensation finally settled into a cooling thread within my dantian. Every detail was etched permanently into my mind. Is this the joy of a player who pays for power? I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, yet a fierce, menacing smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. I immediately shifted my consciousness to Asan in the distant Qingyun sect. Inside the communal wooden hut on Menial Servant Peak, Asan, who had been feigning sleep, suddenly sat bolt upright and crossed his legs. Amidst the persistent sound of snoring, Asan closed his eyes and began regulating his breathing, no longer needing to waste effort searching for the sensation of chi. It felt as if I were traversing a familiar trail in the dead of night. Even without a lamp, I could navigate it blindly. With a slight movement of his will, the sparse spirit energy floating in the air, as if drawn by a gravitational force, followed the path that A2 had forged with his very life, and flowed effortlessly into Asan's pores. The first thread of spirit energy entered his body, moving as naturally as a river flowing into the sea without a single obstacle. If that senior brother Zhao were to witness this sight, his eyes would surely fall out of their sockets in shock. Even the intersect geniuses require days of cautious experimentation to successfully guide chi into their bodies for the first time. Such a thing as this was unheard of. To receive a manual and enter the path of cultivation within a single hour, it was inconceivable. Asan guided this gentle stream of spirit energy through one full circulation of his meridians, finally converging it in his dantian where it condensed into a strand of white chi as thin as a hair. Congratulations to the host. You have successfully reached the first level of the chi refining stage and embarked upon the immortal path. Current cultivation ref, first level. As the host has stepped onto the immortal path for the first time, the system grants a complimentary reward. All living avatars will now synchronize their base attributes. Almost simultaneously, I, sitting in the thatched cottage in Kingshan Town, felt a warmth erupt in my lower abdomen as a flow of vital energy was born from within. The exhaustion of my body vanished, and my hearing sharpened. His vision sharpened significantly in an instant. Was at a tavern in town, eavesdropping on the braggarts at the next table, when the wine cup in his hand shattered with a snap, his power erupting. Ada, who was sleeping at the underground arena, turned over. His bones creaked throughout his body as his muscle definition became firmer and more refined. Every member had ascended. I exhaled a breath of turbid air, looking at the faint white light radiating from my fingertips. Although it was so weak it could not even extinguish a candle, this was the power of a cultivator. Ussie's death was truly worth it, I remarked with a sigh. Using a clone to commit suicide as a scout and having all members share the experience. This is the correct way to utilize the infinite clone system. Now that I have reached the first level of the chi condensation stage, the speed of earning money can be increased. I stood up to stretch my limbs. A mortal clone in the mundane world is already considered the pinnacle of combat strength. Now, with the reinforcement of spiritual power, even without knowing any spells, by relying solely on spiritual power to strengthen the physical body, Ada's combat strength has increased by at least threefold. Ada, go to the arena tomorrow, stop hiding your strength. I want to act as the bookmaker, I sent the order to Ada. Before I was afraid that standing out too much would bring trouble, but now with the foundation of the first level of chi condensation, in a small place like Kingshan Town, as long as I do not encounter an old monster at the foundation establishment stage, I can basically walk sideways without fear. At this moment, at the handyman peak of the Qingyun sect, just as the sky began to brighten, a piercing scream awakened everyone. Wake up, everyone wake up, it is time to work. Senior brother Zhao held a rattan whip, striking it against the doorframe, his expression filled with impatience. The newly arrived handymen struggled to open their eyes, rushing to put on their clothes in a panic. San blended into the crowd. After a night of cultivation, his expression was not one of fatigue, but rather of refreshment and vigor. Mortal San, you go to the medicinal field. Remember to pull out all the weeds around the purple leaf grass. If you damage the leaves of the spiritual herb, even selling you off would not cover the cost. Senior brother Zhao walked past San and gave him a fierce warning. I understand, senior brother. San lowered his head submissively, picked up a hoe and headed toward the medicinal field. San crouched down. The purple leaf grass planted here is the lowest grade spiritual herb. Tam extended his hand. Instead of pulling the weeds directly, he silently circulated the spiritual energy within his body, concentrating it at his fingertips. As his fingertips touched the soil, a miraculous sensation washed over him. He could clearly perceive the growth patterns of the purple leaf grass, and he could even sense the faint emotions radiating from these plants. It was a profound yearning for water and spiritual energy. Is this what it feels like to be a cultivator? Tam felt a stir in his heart. He did not rush to pull the weeds, but rather, using his body to shield himself from view, he stealthily channeled the spiritual energy from his fingertips into the roots of a withered-looking purple leaf grass. With the naked eye, one could see the leaves of that plant unfurl slightly, their color deepening into a vibrant green, gaining a rudimentary mastery of the skill. Spiritual plant cultivation not yet formally initiated. Tianjia's eyes lit up. Finding such unexpected gains while leveling up his skills in the sect was serendipitous. Couldn't he specialize in creating a clone purely for cultivating and selling medicinal herbs in the future? The four arts of cultivation, alchemy, weapon crafting, talisman making, and array formation, are all professions that burn through resources, yet they are also the most lucrative. It seems this Tam clone must be trained in a technical direction. Just as I was pondering this, an emergency signal arrived from Ayer. Something had happened to the main body, and my vision shifted instantly. In the bustling streets of Kingshan, Ayer was hiding behind a baked goods stall, staring intently ahead. Two youths wearing the attire of Qingyun sect outer disciples were swaggering down the street, holding a portrait in their hands and inquiring everywhere. Have you seen this person? Have you seen this dull-witted oaf carrying a blade? Ayer's gaze fell upon the portrait. His pupils constricted. The person in the drawing was none other than Ada. My heart skipped a beat. Ada was merely a martial artist. How could he have offended outer disciples? Listening closely, the conversation between the two outer disciples drifted toward him. Senior brother, it doesn't matter that the fat man is dead, but the blade in his possession is a replica of the blood-slaying saber that senior brother Wang specifically demanded, yet it was snatched by someone at the fighting arena. Damn it, that dull-witted oaf who killed the butcher must still be in this town. Senior brother Wang has spoken. The blade must be retrieved and you must be brought back as well. That dull-witted oaf has a sturdy physique. He will serve perfectly as a human test subject for our elixirs. A medicinal trial disciple. Upon hearing these 4 words, my gaze sharpened as I recalled Asan back at Qingyun sect mentioning them. It is an existence far more wretched than a menial servant. They are used as human vessels to test the toxicity of new elixirs for alchemists. Out of 10, 9 are poisoned to death. They dare to lay hands on my people? I let out a cold laugh. Since AC had just perished, I was in need of an excuse to acquire more funds to replace the avatar. Through Ada, who was resting his eyes in the thatched cottage, I issued a direct command to the avatar. Do not go to the arena. Ambush these 2 delivery disciples outside the city walls as twilight falls. In the graveyard, the trees grew in twisted, grotesque shapes. Crows shrieked mournfully from the withered branches. The air was thick with the scent of rotting leaves and the stench of decay. Ada halted his steps, standing before a cracked tombstone with weathered engravings. He turned around, his large, simple face devoid of any expression. He was like a marionette, knowing nothing but the execution of orders. Not far away, 2 beams of light descended, landing upon the treetops. Is it really you? You fool. The speaker was a short, stout man wearing the blue robes of a Qingyun sect outer disciple. He held a paper parcel in his hands, gasping for air. Beside him, the tall, thin youth wore an expression of deep impatience. Xiao Xia stood upon a flying sword. Hovering 3 feet above the ground, neither of them possessed the aura of a true cultivator. To them, mortals were nothing more than lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Even if this particular lamb were a bit stronger than the rest, it would simply mean a few extra slashes of the blade. Sitting in the hut, my vision shifted, and Ada clearly observed every subtle expression on the pair. Mortals, I chewed half of a hard-steamed bun in my mouth, my eyes turning ice-cold. Even in the hands of a mortal, there is a blade. He struck without the slightest warning. The mud beneath Aday's feet suddenly erupted. His entire body launched forward like a cannonball fired from its chamber. He hurtled straight toward the short, stout man with the intent to kill. The short man had never expected this fool to dare resist. The fat on his face twitched as his right hand formed a seal. The flying sword tucked at his waist whistled as it flew out, though it was positioned too close. Furthermore, he intended only to sever Aday's limbs to capture him alive, rather than striking at his vitals. The flying sword transformed into a flash of cold light, instantly piercing Aday's left shoulder as fresh blood sprayed into the air. For an ordinary man, this single strike would be enough to leave him writhing on the ground in agony, stripped of all fighting strength. Yet Aday did not even knit his brows. Under the influence of his dulled sense of pain, his body ignored the severity of the injury. Before the shock on the dwarf's face had even faded, Aday did not stop, his muscles contracting violently to lock the blade in place, with nothing but his own flesh and bone. Fresh blood surged forth. Leveraging the momentum, his speed did not decrease but instead intensified, bringing him face to face with his opponent in the blink of an eye. The dwarf panicked and scrambled backward, his hands fumbling desperately for a talisman. It was too late. A hand as large as a mortar, accompanied by the whistling of gale force winds, slammed directly into his throat. The crisp sound of bone shattering in this burial mound was jarringly sharp. The dwarf's eyes instantly turned bloodshot and bulged from their sockets. Both his hands clutched at his collapsed throat, where he could only exhale, unable to draw in a single breath. He collapsed limply, and until the moment of his death, he could not comprehend how anyone pierced through the shoulder blade by a flying sword could continue to kill as if nothing had happened. The tall, thin youth standing beside him was terrified out of his wits. This was no mere cultivator. This was clearly a savage beast draped in human skin. Retreat. The tall youth reacted with lightning speed, immediately hurling a fiery red talisman forward. A fireball the size of a basin erupted against Aday's chest, flames roaring as the clothing on Aday's body instantly turned to ash, his scorched flesh curling and blackening. A nauseating, acrid stench filled the air. The tall youth heaved a sigh of relief. Having landed a direct hit with a fireball talisman, even a second-layer chi-refining body cultivator should have fallen. Yet in the next heartbeat, he witnessed the most harrowing sight of his life. Amidst the flames, that hulking man remained devoid of expression, not even letting out a single cry. His entire body smoldered with rising smoke, embers still clinging to his skin like a demon crawling out from the depths of hell as he lunged forward with arms wide open. Madman. Are you insane? The tall youth attempted to command his sword to take flight, but it was already too late. A pair of charred, blackened hands, firm as iron bars, locked tightly around his waist. His protective spiritual light flickered twice, but under the barbaric, crushing strength of Aday, it let out cracking sounds as if unable to withstand the pressure any longer. Aday, possessing no knowledge of combat techniques, lowered his head and used his skull hard as stone to slam violently into the tall youth's face. The protective light shattered completely, the tall youth's nose bridge caved in, and his face blossomed with blood. By the third strike, the tall youth ceased to breathe. His head lolled to one side, his neck bent at a grotesque angle. The burial mound fell into silence, save for the crackling of the limb. I lay prone on the bed, drenched in cold sweat, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was the first time I had truly killed a cultivator. Not a martial arts spar, not a friendly bout, but a genuine life and death struggle. I took a deep breath, suppressing the surge of turbulent emotions, and hurriedly issued my final command. Aday's vitality had bottomed out. His left shoulder was pierced, his internal organs were shattered, and over 60% of his body was burned, yet he still clung to life. With trembling hands, Aday reached out, fumbling over the two corpses for a brief moment. He stripped away 2 gray storage bags, along with the flying sword and the blood-slaying blade lying on the ground. With his final ounce of strength, he tossed them into a hollow tree concealed within the nearby thicket. Then, this iron tower of a man slumped against the trunk and slid to the ground, his head bowing low as Aday finally perished. Cause of death: severe burns, penetrating trauma, and excessive blood loss. He is now entering the resurrection cooldown. The 12-hour period of sensory interruption began. I collapsed onto my bed, staring blankly at the dark rafters above. Suddenly, a grin spread across my face. The laughter bubbling from my throat grew louder, laced with madness and triumph. If mortals are mere insects, then I have just slain a god. At midnight, the wind in the burial mound grew bitingly cold. A nimble figure glided through the woods like a seasoned hunter, not disturbing a single bird in his path. It was AC, who had just been summoned. Last night, AC had committed suicide during cultivation, and as his resurrection time had just concluded, he was revived within the system space. It was perfect timing to retrieve the spoils. Ace skillfully navigated to the hollow tree and tucked the treasures into his tunic. Next, he approached the 2 corpses. Following my instructions, AC drew the butcher's knife from his waist. He slashed several times at the bodies, creating wounds that mimicked the savage tearing of wild beasts. He then sprinkled a layer of powder designed to lure predators. Having finished his task, he departed with haste. By the time the sun rises, nothing will remain but a few bones gnawed by wild dogs. No one will ever discern that they were killed by a man. Back in my tile-roofed house, I lit the oil lamp and rubbed my hands together, my eyes burning with anticipation as I stared at the 2 storage bags on the table. This was the accumulated wealth of a cultivator. The restrictive seal on these spirit storage bags was slightly troublesome. I attempted to probe the bag with a sliver of the divine sense I had just refined. I encountered an invisible barrier, but these 2 disciples were merely outer sect members at the 3rd level of chi condensation. The restrictive seal was not strong. Furthermore, with the owners dead, their wills were extinguished. The remnant divine sense had already dissipated into nothingness. Open for me. I gritted my teeth and concentrated all of my divine sense, driving it like a chisel into that thin membrane. A soft clatter echoed as I emptied the contents onto the table, my eyes immediately igniting with fervor. I have struck it rich. First there were the spirit stones, the most prominent of the lot. These 2 were truly worthy of being disciples from a great clan. Despite being mere outer sect members, their wealth far surpassed that of any wandering cultivator. In total, there were 43 low-grade spirit stones. According to the market rate, a single low-grade spirit stone can be exchanged for 100 taels of silver, and even then they are often out of stock. These 43 spirit stones are enough for me to purchase half of Qingshan Town in the mortal realm. Beyond the spirit stones, there were 2 medicine vials. One contained 3 remaining chi-gathering pills. These are excellent resources for advancing one's cultivation base. The other vial contained rejuvenation powder intended for treating external injuries. The flying sword that Ada had clamped down upon was a low-grade magical artifact. Although slightly bent, it could be restored to use with some minor repairs. There were also 2 manuals, the fireball technique and the wind riding art. These were the very spells that the lanky youth had employed earlier. Excellent, truly excellent. It is like receiving a pillow when one is tired. I tucked the manuals away. With these, my clones will no longer need to rely solely on brute force and magical energy for close-quarters combat. Finally, I took hold of the bloodthirsty saber, which they had referred to as a tool for self-protection. The blade was a deep crimson red, radiating an aura of malevolence. Though it is not a magical artifact, the material is of superior quality, sharper than a mortal blade by 100-fold. It is no wonder those two pursued me so relentlessly. As I cleared out the storage bag belonging to the lanky youth, my finger brushed against a hidden compartment at the bottom. Concealed within was a letter, the paper yellowed with age, bearing a unique wax seal shaped like a wolf's head. I unfolded the letter and scanned its contents under the lamplight. My expression, previously filled with excitement, instantly froze. The letter was addressed to Wang Tianba, the head of the Wang family. The content was brief, but every word was earth-shattering. The matter of excavating the sex spirit mine has been settled. The entrance to that hidden mine lies directly beneath the ancestral graves of the Wang family. 3 days from now, an inner sect deacon will arrive under the guise of an inspection to take over the excavation. I trembled, my hand shaking so violently that I nearly dropped the letter. The private embezzlement of a Qingyun sex spirit mine is a capital offense punishable by execution. These two were not just here to hunt me down for the saber. They were essentially couriers for the power behind the Wang family, hoping to make some quick money from the spirit mine. They never expected to find themselves mired so deeply in such a dangerous scheme. If this letter were to be revealed, the Wang family would undoubtedly face total annihilation. But if the Wang family or their backers discovered this letter was in my possession, I would be hunted to the ends of the earth until my death. Yet within every crisis lies an opportunity. The fear in my eyes gradually faded away. In its place emerged the calculated greed of a gambler who has just realized they are holding a winning hand. If you dare to embezzle the sex spirit mine, then do not blame me for playing the wolf against wolves and carving out a fortune from this very mine. I too desired to taste life within that tiled house. The wick of the oil lamp flickered with a sudden spark. I gazed at the pile of spirit stones emitting a pale ivory light upon the table, my fingers tapping a steady rhythm against the wood. To a cultivator, 43 low-grade spirit stones might merely be enough to purchase a few medicinal pills, but in this mortal realm, it was a fortune that would make any family covetous. According to the system's conversion mechanics, a level 7 mortal avatar requires a certain amount of silver, and the official exchange rate is 1 spirit stone to 100 units of silver. The black market rate is even higher, but within this system it remains 1 to 100, quite unlike the platforms of my previous life. Without a moment's hesitation, I deposited everything into the system, ignoring the transaction fees. Keeping these stones in my possession is a liability. Converting them into true strength is the only logical path. The pile of spirit stones on the table vanished instantly, as if they had never existed. Following that, the system interface in my mind flickered. The numbers began to fluctuate wildly, eventually settling on a figure that made my heart race. I had deposited 43 spirit stones, which converted into 4010 system. Watching the digits soar on the board, the corners of my mouth curled into a cold, sharp smile. The Wang family, is it? I shall prepare a grand surprise for you. I stood up, pushed open the drafty window, and looked toward the distant Wang estate where lights blazed brilliantly. Under the veil of night, those lanterns did not look like signs of celebration, but rather like funeral lamps lining the path to the underworld. Excluding equipment costs, this windfall is enough for me to build a mortal army of 400 men. I licked my slightly parched lips, my gaze swiftly turning icy. However, human wave tactics are useless before a cultivator. Quality is far more important than quantity. Furthermore, too much commotion would easily attract the attention of the experts from the Qingyun sect. What I require is an elite force capable of infiltration, assassination, acting as decoys, and helping me turn this Qingshan town upside down. I turned around, and with a single thought, 100 points were instantly deducted from the board. On the narrow floor of the tiled house, a flash of light appeared, and 10 featureless, naked energy bodies emerged. Emerging from the void like lumps of clay waiting to be sculpted, this time I did not pursue the extreme physique I used for Ada, nor did I synchronize their strengths. For the first 3, I established the forms of men over 60 years old. I began the intricate process of molding them in my mind. The physiques of Avatar number 1, number 2, and number 3 were quickly refined. Their skin became loose and wrinkled, their eyes turned cloudy, and I even saw to it that they were missing a few teeth. To ensure they appeared authentic, I specifically added symptoms such as, "These are the finest assassins available." Who would ever be suspicious of a frail, coughing old man basking in the sun by the roadside? Number 4 and number 5 were fashioned into beggars. Their skin turned dark and coarse, their hair tangled and matted into thick, filthy clumps. They even emanated a foul, sour stench, covered in sores from days without bathing. These are the ultimate eyes and ears. They could lie directly beneath the walls of a royal estate, listening in, right out in the open. My eyes flashed, and I proceeded to craft the remaining 5 bodies, using the template for the swordsman clones from number 6 to number 10. Their builds were well proportioned, their muscle density adjusted to the absolute peak of mortal limits. Their appearances were so utterly unremarkable that they would be impossible to find in a crowd. Yet their arms were slightly long, their palms thick with calluses, and their gazes devoid of emotion. These were sharp blades, joined by the surviving key condensation tier 1 subordinates, A-Air and A-San. With Ada and A-Sai about to be resurrected as mortals, the number of clones under my command had reached 14. Ayer, take this group of elders and beggars to the town and disperse, I commanded. Dispose of the 2 flying swords and the various miscellaneous magical artifacts. Accept only spirit stones or medicinal layers in exchange. The swordsman squad stood ready. With external matters settled, I retrieved the fireball technique manual I had taken from the tall, thin disciple's storage ring. The book was thin, consisting of only a few pages detailing hand seals and the diagrams for spiritual power circulation. The spells of a cultivator focus heavily on using divine sense to guide spiritual power. I flipped through the pages and casually tossed it to swordsman number 6. I do not believe in the subtlety of this art. A C could use his life to test the cultivation manual. You too can use your life to test this spell. I still had a bottle of chi-gathering pills in my hand. I tipped one out and shoved it into number 6's mouth. Number 6 sat cross-legged, not bothering to carefully sense the fire element as a normal person would, but instead directly unleashing the violent energy of the chi-gathering pill. Regardless of whether his meridians could withstand it, he followed the diagrams in the book, forcing spiritual power toward his fingertips. He didn't bother to construct the spell model properly. If the spiritual frequency resonated incorrectly, so be it. Number 6's finger suddenly exploded in a spray of blood and bone. The spiritual power had veered off course, rupturing his blood vessels. I remained expressionless, commanding number 6 to switch to his other hand and continue. Wrong. Still wrong. Both of number 6's hands were now a mangled mess of flesh, his face as pale as parchment, yet he continued to repeat the hand seals like a machine. Finally, on the 17th attempt, this time using his toe, that violent surge of spiritual energy seemed to find its path. A brilliant red fireball erupted directly from number 6's toe. The power was immense and the distance too close. Before number 6 could even cast his fireball, the lower half of his body was instantly engulfed in flames. A mortal body is far too fragile against the fires of a cultivator. Without even a chance to scream, number 6 was reduced to a charred corpse. Clone number 6 has perished. The system is now assimilating his experiences. Within the tiled house, I abruptly closed my eyes as a sharp searing pain flashed across my skin before vanishing. Soon after, a segment of incredibly clear memories flooded my mind, detailing the arrangement of fire elemental energy and the instantaneous burst of spiritual power within the meridians. I raised my right hand, flicking my thumb and index finger together. A brilliant crimson flame danced upon my fingertips, steady and scorching hot. It grew and shrank at my command as if it were an extension of my own arm. No complex and tedious hand seals. The price of a clone's life in exchange for an instant fireball technique. What a bargain. Profitable, I whispered, blowing out the flame on my fingertip as a cold smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. My gaze then shifted to the wind control manual and the Wang estate in Kingshan Town. A premium celadon teacup was smashed into pieces. Wang Tianba, the head of the Wang family, stood in the center of the great hall, his chest heaving violently, his square face contorted with murderous intent. The guards and servants on both sides knelt on the ground, trembling, not daring to even draw a full breath. 2 living, breathing cultivators had gone missing less than 5 miles from the town. Wang Tianba let out a roar so thunderous that dust drifted down from the rafters. Is this how you conduct your business? Those were emissaries he sent by the sect. If anything happens to them, I will have your entire families executed. Half an hour ago, the Wang family's informants at the sect had sent word. The 2 emissaries had departed early and should have reached the Li family by last night, yet now there was no sign of them, alive or dead, especially not that letter. If that letter fell into the wrong hands and the secret of the Spirit Stone mine were exposed, it would be a crime punishable by the extermination of our entire clan. We have already locked down the entire town. Every exit is under heavy guard. The captain of the guards looked up, trembling. Could it be that the 2 immortal masters encountered trouble on the road or perhaps ran into a high-level demonic beast? Nonsense. Where would a high-level demonic beast come from in this region? Wang Tianba kicked the guard captain aside. Those were 2 cultivators at the 3rd layer of the chi refining stage. Other than those eccentric seniors at the Foundation establishment realm, who could kill them without making a sound? Send men to search for them. Dig 3 feet into the earth if you must, but find them for me. As for any strangers who have entered or left the town in the past 2 days, kill them all. Better to slaughter an innocent than to let one slip by. Understood. The great gates of the Wang estate swung wide and dozens of fully armed guards surged into the streets like demons. It was midday and the streets were teeming with pedestrians. As the prince's guards burst forth, chaos immediately erupted. Stalls were overturned and any sign of resistance was met with a brutal beating. At the base of a wall in a street corner, a beggar covered in scabs and sores sat leaning against the stone, busy picking lice from his rags. That was my 4th clone. A guard passed by, pinched his nose in disgust, and delivered a swift kick to the beggar's leg, barking at him to get lost. You foul-smelling beggar, have you seen any strangers around here? The beggar let out a cry and rolled twice across the ground. His filthy hand trembled as he pointed toward the alley to the west. My lord, just a moment ago, a few hulking men carrying blades headed that way. They did not look like good people. Assuming the west, the guard did not suspect for a moment that a lowly beggar would dare deceive him, and he led his men rushing into the western alley. The beggar lay on the ground, peering through his matted hair at the backs of the departing men, a cold glint flashing in his otherwise cloudy eyes. The west led only to a dead end where the prince's latrines were located. At the same moment, at the other end of the market, a hunched old man, my first clone, was walking unsteadily while carrying a basket. As he passed a weapons shop, he deliberately stumbled, colliding heavily with Steward Wang just as the latter was emerging from the shop. Are you blind, you old dog? The steward, enraged, raised his hand to strike, but the old man gripped his sleeve tightly and began to wail loudly. Heavens, he has struck me dead. Steward Wang is murdering a commoner. Everyone, come and see. The surrounding crowd immediately swarmed them, pointing and whispering. A few minutes later, the old man clutched a few coins of compensation, wiping away his tears as he trembled and retreated from the crowd. Once he turned into a secluded alley, his back immediately straightened. Within the tiled house, I observed this figure. Long nodded. The prince's forces were in the light, while I remained in the shadows, simultaneously directing the beggar to distract the enemy, commanding the old man to create a diversion, and sitting in my own home sipping tea with my true body, which gave me the exhilarating sensation of a grandmaster pulling the strings from behind the curtain. Do not move yet, I transmitted the order through my consciousness. Wait until nightfall. Furthermore, there is news from Asan. The scene shifted to the Qingyun sect, the alchemy hall, where the temperature was over 10 degrees higher than outside. Beneath a colossal bronze alchemy furnace, the earthly fire blazed intensely. Asan, clad in the gray robes of a handyman, his face smeared with soot, crouched beside the furnace, clutching a fire poker, his gaze fixed with absolute focus on the shifting flames within the cauldron. Not far away, the eccentric alchemy elder Gu, he was tossing the spirit herbs into the pill furnace one by one. Elder Gu, he suddenly shouted for the fire to increase by a fraction. Atam's wrist flicked slightly, and the cattail fan immediately increased its rhythm, blowing wind into the bellows with measured precision. The earthly flames surged to a height of 10 feet before being pulled back. 3 breaths later, the furnace was opened. Atam stopped his hand immediately, his movements as precise as those of a seasoned master. Elder Gu He looked with mild surprise at this menial servant who was usually silent and reticent. This boy's control over the flame was truly a natural gift, far superior to the clumsy efforts of the registered disciples. Yet, he did not know that every stroke of Atam's fan was the result of meticulous calculations by me and my other clones. Elder Gu He struck the furnace with a palm. The lid flew off and 3 perfectly round medicinal pills emerged. Falling into the jade bottle, the pill was still slightly lacking in fire. Gu He looked at the pills in his hand and sighed to himself, overwhelmed by their potency. The secondary herbs were unable to suppress the energy. If only he knew the water-swallowing method from the ancient pill scripture of the inner sect. Unintentional words are often heard by those who listen. Atam, crouching in the corner, felt his ears twitch. From where I sat in Kingshantown, my eyes lit up. A Foundation establishment pill is the ticket for a mere mortal to rise above the clouds and enter the world of immortality. A single pill is enough to trigger a storm of blood and slaughter. Atam in the coming days remain in the alchemy room and await my commands. The medicinal dregs that Elder Gu He discards collect every bit that is useful to me. What appears as useless waste to an alchemist still contains unrefined medicinal essence. As the sun set outside the window, I stood up. The banners of the prince were hung high, crimson as blood. First, I would purge Kingshantown, then I would pluck the wool from the Qingyun sect. I pushed the door open. 10 sword-wielding clones, clad in night-walking attire, stood silently in the courtyard like lifeless stone statues. The Qingyun sect's alchemy room burned with perpetual heat, an environment that would stir the blood and chi of any ordinary chi-refining disciple. Yet Atam remained indifferent, having smeared soot across his face to remain inconspicuous. He sat crouched beside a colossal bronze alchemy furnace, holding a tattered cattail fan, fanning sporadically while managing the fuel. In front of the furnace, Elder Gu He's hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot, resembling a gambler who had lost everything. Atam's movements came to an abrupt halt. With practiced ease, he used tongs to remove a glowing piece of spirit coal and plunged it into the water bucket nearby. Instantly, white smoke billowed, and the fire beneath the furnace diminished by 3 parts with absolute precision. Gu He did not even deign to glance at Atam. In his eyes, this servant was merely a sentient wooden stake, whose only merit was his unwavering obedience. He did exactly as he was told. Yet the elder was unaware that I was currently residing in a tiled house in Kingshantown, dozens of miles away. I sat with my legs crossed, snacking on melon seeds while observing the live scene through Asan's vision. The hand seals this old man utilized were quite intriguing. This was the true strength of a clone. Whatever Asan witnessed, I witnessed as well. He was a Foundation establishment stage cultivator and a high-grade alchemist of the Qingyun sect. Under normal circumstances, inner sect disciples would have to queue and pay spirit stones just to watch him refine pills. Now things were different. Asan was not only watching, but he held a VIP seat at the very front. That was the refinement technique of using spirit energy vibrations to purge impurities. I mimicked the hand movements in the air. Although I was not practicing, the theoretical knowledge was pouring into my mind at a terrifying pace. Suddenly, a muffled sound erupted from the alchemy furnace, followed by a pungent, acrid smell, causing Gu He's expression to darken. He struck his thigh in frustration. How unlucky, another furnace of chi recovery pills had been ruined. The age of this ghost nether grass is incorrect, he muttered. Frustrated, he flicked his sleeve, causing the lid of the furnace to fly open. Inside, a heap of charred medicinal residue was swept up by his spirit energy. It was dumped directly into the waste bin nearby. The sight of the blackened waste was an eyesore. He let out a low growl, and Asan silently nodded, hoisting the waste bin, which reached half his height, and headed outside. After leaving the alchemy room and turning 2 corners, he reached the dumping ground behind the sect, which was filled with various colored dregs and failed medicinal remnants. It emitted a peculiar nauseating stench. It was said that even the rats in the rear mountain that consumed these remnants grew as large as cats, before dropping dead instantly. Asan glanced left and right, ensuring no one was around, and refrained from dumping the contents. He reached into the pile of charred chi recovery pill residue and rummaged through it. He retrieved several pills that, despite being charred, still emitted faint ripples of spirit energy. Detected low-quality chi recovery pill. Highly toxic, contains 30 wild spirit energy. Impurities, 70 fatality rate upon consumption. The sim system's cold voice manifested. Poison? It is a tonic. I chuckled within my tiled house like a miser guarding his treasure, eager to strip away the volatile spirit energy and keep the rest. To me, this was nothing short of a supplement. Asan quickly stuffed a dozen waste pills into the hidden pouch in his belt, then nonchalantly dumped the remaining refuse as if nothing had happened. He trudged back toward the alchemy room, heading for the underground cellar of the tiled house in Kingshantown. I looked at the bag of waste pills just delivered by Air. Opened. Model, Mortal, System, Infinite Clones, Host, DTN, Realm, Chi Condensation Layer 1. My current clones include A1, A2, A3, and A5. Number 3 is the old man, number 5 is the burly one, and number 6 through 10 are the blade wielders, plus 1 little black figure. 42 tails of silver were deducted. A brand new little black figure appeared in the basement. I casually adjusted its features slightly. I picked up a pitch-black waste elixir and shoved it into the clone's mouth to refine it. The clone sat cross-legged. There was no need for any so-called transition, as power erupted within its belly. It was a surge of fire poison sufficient to kill an ox. The clone's skin instantly turned purple like a boiled shrimp. A creaking sound emanated from its throat, and blood began to flow from its 7 orifices. If this were a normal cultivator, they would have long since panicked, suffered a cultivation deviation, and perished. However, the clone mechanically circulated the basic chi refining technique. It forcibly extracted a sliver of spiritual energy from within the poison. 3 minutes later, the clone's blood vessels ruptured. It collapsed to the ground, twitched twice, and ceased all movement. The clone has perished. Cause of death, elixir poison attacking the heart. Extracting cultivation gains, extraction complete. Obtained 15 points of pure spiritual energy. I and all my other chi refining stage clones felt a wave of warmth suddenly manifest in our Dantian. The spiritual energy, which had previously been at the first level of chi refining, increased by a visible margin. Continuing on, I remained expressionless. Death of one clone yields 15 points of spiritual energy. Yet for an ordinary cultivator to cultivate that same amount, they would need at least 3 days of meditation and would have to consume earth-red chi gathering pills. This is truly exchanging life for time. Inside the tiled house, the bodies of the clones piled up one after another until the 5th clone fell. A soft pop echoed within my body of chi refining. Breakthrough. I clenched my fist, sensing that my strength had doubled compared to before, and the corners of my mouth curled upward. What does top-tier understanding truly mean? This is what it means to be a flesh and blood refining machine. Qingyun sect outer court pill chamber. Asan was squatting on the ground, scrubbing the furnace. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over him. You foolish sweeper, a youth clad in intersect robes looked down at Asan from above, his eyes filled with disdain. This person is named Zhangfeng, a managing disciple of Pill Peak. His favorite pastime is extorting the meager earnings of the chores servants, and incidentally profiting from the discarded waste materials. Asan raised his head, looking at him with a calm expression. Senior bro, do not play the fool. Zhangfeng kicked the water bucket in front of Asan, sending dirty water splashing all over him. I am asking you, where's the batch of waste elixirs that Elder Gu ruined just now? Although waste elixirs are toxic, there are malevolent cultivators in the black market who specialize in purchasing them to refine poisons or cultivate venomous insects. Zhangfeng had been eyeing them for a long time. They had been poured away. Asan replied calmly, I poured them away. Zhangfeng let out a cold laugh, his narrow triangular eyes fixed firmly on Asan's waist. I saw you lurking in the back mountain for a long time just now. If you dare to hide anything for yourself, I will throw you into the oil refining furnace today. With that, Zhangfeng reached into Asan's robes to search, tearing open the lapels to reveal nothing but emptiness. Aside from a few protruding ribs, there was nothing there. Zhangfeng was stunned. At that very moment, a shout echoed, what is all this noise? An angry roar erupted from within the pill refinement chamber as two elders stepped out, their robes stained with medicinal residue. Their brows were furrowed so tightly they could practically crush a beetle. They were in the middle of researching a new prescription and despised being interrupted. Zhangfeng was startled and quickly bowed his head. Disciple suspected the servant of stealing waste elixirs and was just about to interrogate him. Have you finished, Elder? Gi cast a cold, sharp glance at Asan. No, not yet. Zhangfeng broke into a cold sweat. As an intersect disciple, he should have been cultivating instead of picking fights with a mere servant. Gu He waved his hand in disgust. Get to the discipline hall and receive your lashes. Do not be an eyesore here. Zhangfeng's face turned pale. He shot a vicious glare at Asan, but not daring to resist, he slunk away. He turned his gaze toward Asan, his expression softening slightly. Very well, Go, he said, casually pulling a small vial from his storage ring and tossing it onto the ground. This is a low-grade salve. Take it and apply it. Clean this place up. I have business to attend to outside. Keep an eye on the fire and let no one enter. With those words, Gu He performed a sword art, transforming into a streak of light as he vanished into the horizon. Asan picked up the medicinal vial from the ground, his expression remaining unmoved. He is truly a kind man. The voice of Dtian resonated within Asan's mind. Asan turned and walked straight into Gu He's private study. This was a place accessible only to personal disciples, but now the only person guarding the gate was Asan. The study was not large, and the shelves were stacked with jade slips and handwritten manuscripts. Asan did not rummage through them aimlessly. His goal was clear, the books on the desk that Gu He read most frequently. Detailed interpretation of the herbology canon and foundations of fire control and the 3,000 questions. Atam's fingers flipped through the pages of the book with such speed that they left only afterimages. The system's notification sounds cascaded down like a torrential waterfall. In an instant, a complete theoretical system of elementary alchemy had been etched into my mind. This is what it means for knowledge to alter one's destiny. Atem returned the book to its original position, meticulously adjusting its angle to ensure no trace of it having been disturbed remained. He then returned to the alchemy furnace, crouched down, took up the tattered fire tongs, and resumed his role as an unremarkable servant. In Kingshan Town, the sky had turned pitch black. Tonight was even more somber than the last. Outside the tile-roofed house, beggar clone number 4, who had been keeping watch, suddenly transmitted an image with lightning speed. The side gate of the Wang family estate swung open, and a fully armed squad of guards silently slipped out. Each of them gripped a saber, their aura murderous as they advanced toward the slums. The one leading them was not Wang Tianba, but a stranger clad in a black cloak. He carried a ghost-head broadsword upon his back, his entire body radiating an aura that sent chills down one's spine. 5th level of chi refining. I opened my eyes inside the tile house and ceased my cultivation. According to the intelligence gathered previously by AC, this man was a renowned rogue cultivator in the surrounding area. Black Wind Saber, Lu San. It seems the Wang family spared no expense. The external reinforcements they hired had finally arrived. I blew out the oil lamp, and in the encroaching darkness, my eyes shone with a terrifying brilliance. 20 mortal experts coupled with a 5th level chi refining practitioner. It appears the Wang family has finally uncovered some clues and intends to raze this entire slum to the ground. Better to kill an innocent than to let a single target escape, I muttered as I rose to my feet. I loosened my neck, the joints popping with sharp rhythmic cracks. I pushed the door open. In the courtyard, alongside the 10 swordsman clones already prepared, stood 5 more figures. These were new clones exchanged with the soul power points earned from refining discarded medicinal dregs. They possessed no names, only serial numbers, from number 11 to number 15. They carried no blades, but each had several bulging cloth pouches concealed within their robes. These were my homemade explosives. For a dear friend, one must prepare fine wine. I watched the torchlight approaching from the distance. My voice was soft, as if speaking to myself. Since they have come all this way, I must treat them to something spicy. Take your positions. Upon my command, the 15 shadowed figures dispersed instantly, vanishing into the crumbling alleys and the surrounding gloom. A vast net aimed at the hunter was being silently cast within the shadows of the night. The silence was bone-chilling. Within the slums, several dilapidated tiled houses stood abandoned and solitary. The surroundings were so still that only the sound of the wind whistling through rotting doors could be heard. The Wang family's guard unit, consisting of 2 men, approached with sabers drawn, encircling the area in a fan formation. Their footsteps were light. They were seasoned experts who had tasted blood before. Yet, as they drew within 30 paces of the slums, their breathing involuntarily grew heavy. After all, the gathered clues pointed toward a rogue cultivator hiding in this very location. Lu San of the Black Wind Blades walked at the rear, bearing a large ghost-headed saber, his expression one of growing impatience. To think that I, the master, must personally intervene for such a trivial matter. Tu San spat on the ground, the spiritual pressure of the 5th layer of chi refining radiating faintly from his body. The guards in front immediately felt as if a heavy boulder had been pressed upon them, their desire for a quick victory intensifying. I still have wine to drink back home. Understood, Exalted One. The captain of the guard signaled with his hand, and 2 vanguard scouts kicked open the door of the first house with brute force. The remaining men charged inside like wolves and tigers, the light of their blades flashing wildly. They slashed recklessly at the empty bed, turning over the blankets to find only 2 bundles of hay beneath. It was a decoy. The captain stood stunned, only to discover a piece of paper on the table that had not yet fully dried. He brought it close to a torch to inspect it. Scrawled upon it were several large characters. In your next life, do not provoke a cheater. The captain did not understand the meaning of cheater, but he understood the blatant mockery written there. Something is wrong. It is too late to retreat. The 4 corners of the house suddenly detonated. These were not magical arts, but improvised bombs made of black gunpowder mixed with iron shards and fragments. Their power was not great, insufficient to kill a cultivator, but for dealing with these mortal guards, it was more than enough as flames billowed toward the sky. The shockwave blew the roofs apart. The 8 guards who had charged inside let out harrowing screams before being blown back out. Their bodies were riddled with shards, drenched in blood and gore. The screams echoed through the night. Lucan let out a cold snort, spiritual light flickering around his body. The incoming shards were repelled 3 feet before they could reach him. Just as he prepared to mock this crude trap, his gaze suddenly darkened. Movement stirred in the surrounding shadows, yet there was no sound of screaming. 15 dark figures like demons crawling forth from hell ignored the burning. A die and the 2 swordsmen surged forward, the blood-slaying blade in a die's grip dragging along the ground, trailing a shower of sparks that signaled their defiance of death. Lucan drew his blade, the massive ghost-headed saber conjuring a dark, violent gale. The 2 swordsman clones charged ahead, only to be instantly cleaved at the waist, their viscera and fresh blood pooling across the earth. Had they been ordinary men, witnessing such a gruesome end for their companions, the remaining few would have long since fled in terror, wetting themselves in fear. But these creatures did not even blink. When the clones were severed at the waist, those with their upper bodies still intact dragged themselves forward like lizards with severed tails, using their hands to propel their mangled forms. One clamped its jaws firmly onto the calf of the nearest guard. Let go. This madman. The guard frantically struck the head of Clone 6 with the hilt of his blade, and though its skull was shattered and brain spilled out, those teeth remained locked deep into the flesh, tearing away a massive chunk of muscle. What kind of monsters are these? Every guard was gripped by terror. They had seen men who did not fear death before, but these beings lacked the very capacity for fear. If they lost an arm, they kicked with their legs. If they lost a leg, they charged with their heads. Even with a blade pierced through their abdomen, they would slide along the steel just to land a single strike in exchange. A guard's long saber impaled the chest of Clone 7. Before he could withdraw the blade, Clone 7 lunged forward, ignoring the steel protruding through its body, and tightened its grip around the guard's throat. With a sickening snap of the neck, both tumbled to the ground. In just a few breaths, more than half of the 20 elite guards of the Wang family had been decimated. This was no longer combat. This was a campaign of suicidal attrition. A pack of ants. Lucan, at the 5th level of chi condensation, found himself flustered by mere mortals forced into a desperate scramble. He performed a hand seal, and his great blade erupted with a crimson glare. With a sweep meant to annihilate an army, a dark blade aura of full zhang long lashed out. The clones, a die included, were instantly sent flying. Some suffered shattered limbs, others had their ribs pulverized, and a wide clearing was carved into the chaotic fray. Lucan gasped for air, his eyes filled with contempt. Mortals were ultimately just mortals. What use was there in sheer numbers? The words died in his throat, for he watched as those he had clearly pulverized, shattering their internal organs, began to rise like disjointed puppets. Most notably, the swordsman whose right arm he had severed, shifted his blade to his left hand without a flicker of emotion, despite his own arm hanging at a grotesque angle, and continued his charge. Even the hulking man, with the great blade, whose chest was sunken from the impact, spat a steady stream of blood, yet he curled his lips, revealing a sinister bone-chilling grin. Furthermore, several figures emerged from the shadows. These were the clones that had just been teleported back. Lucan felt the gaze of these men. They stared at him like hunters stalking prey, leaving him drenched in a cold sweat. It was a primal nervous reaction to extreme tension. After all, this was his first time facing a human wave tactic used against a cultivator, yet the fervor in their eyes seemed ready to ignite. Lucan, your spirit energy is finite, mine however is not. This is a game you cannot win. As long as I have the wealth, I can crush you into despair through sheer numbers. On the battlefield, Lucan's mental fortitude began to crumble. He struck down an opponent, but even as the head was severed, the corpse lunged forward to deliver one final kick before collapsing. Evil arts, this is surely dark sorcery. Lucan dared not engage further. His protective spiritual aura was already flickering. He kicked away the clone of the old man charging at him, and spun around intending to take flight and escape. Trying to run, a C who had been lurking in the shadows of the rooftops finally made his move. Having been a hunter by trade, he excelled in waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Just as Lucan lifted off the ground, a C descended from above. He held no weapon, only a heavy beast trapping net. Get down here. A C collided with Lucan, wrapping him tightly within the net. Get lost. Lucan's spirit energy surged outward, the force immediately causing blood to bleed from AC's 7 orifices. The beast-trapping net was torn to shreds by the sheer power. Yet, in that exact moment, AD launched his attack from the ground. It was a display of explosive power that transcended the limits of any mortal. The sound of his thigh muscles snapping under the strain echoed clearly through the air. Like a cannonball fired from its chamber, Ada slammed his body into Lucan. There was no technique, only a desperate embrace like an octopus. His legs locked around Lucan's waist, and his arms pinioned the cultivator's right arm, the one wielding the blade. Immediately afterward, 7 or 8 remaining crippled clones swarmed forward with a roar. Some clung to his legs, others locked their arms around his neck, and one even reached out to grapple at Lucan's groin. Get away. All of you, get away from me. Lucan struggled frantically, his protective spiritual aura dimming like a dying lamp, flickering between light and shadow. Each pulse shattered the bones of a clone. But for everyone destroyed, 2 more rushed in to take its place. This was the reality of fighting numbers with numbers. This was a slaughter, a human meat grinder. Finally, Lucan's spirit energy ran dry. The thin, fragile light surrounding him emitted a crisp snapping sound and then shattered completely. Without spirit energy to protect the body, a cultivator's physical form, though stronger than that of a mortal, is still vulnerable to the bite of a blade. Adai released the arm he had been locking, and despite his own ribs having pierced his lungs, he raised his chipped, blood-stained saber. Liu San's pupils contracted into tiny points. For the first time, terror flickered in his eyes. No wait, I am from the Liu. The blade did not slice through flesh quickly. In fact, the motion was agonizingly slow. With every ounce of his remaining strength, Adai drove the blade into the nape of Liu San's neck. Blood sprayed across Adai's face, yet he did not even blink, fearing that any distraction might leave the final thread of life intact. The head, frozen in a mask of horror, rolled into the dust, and a deathly silence fell over the area, broken only by the crackling of the burning villa. The few remaining guards of the Wang clan had long since discarded their weapons, fleeing the town while wailing in terror. Demons, they are all demons, I muttered, choosing not to pursue those insignificant runts. Fear is the most effective messenger. After tonight, no one in Kingshan Town will dare approach this area again. I let out a long breath, my body exhausted as I slumped against the wall. I have won. Though the cost for a mortal to slay a cultivator is devastating. I lost 14 avatars, and those that remain are broken and maimed. Yet, looking at the bulging storage bag on Liu San's corpse, I let out a laugh that bordered on madness. AC, clear the battlefield. Aside from the storage bag, do not forget that ghost-headed saber. Drag the corpse to the rear mountain and dispose of it. With the order given, the surviving avatars, dragging their ruined bodies, began the work of clearing the scene with practiced efficiency. Dai picked up his severed arm like a piece of firewood, tucked it under his armpit, and dragged Liu San's headless corpse into the shadows. 10 minutes later, I emerged from the tunnel in my true form, the storage bag of Liu San clutched in my hand. I forcibly shattered the restriction, and a pile of items spilled onto the table. There were 200 low-grade spirit stones, 1 mid-grade ghost-headed saber, 3 bottles of elixirs, and a yellowed handwritten manual. I triggered the system to absorb everything. The deposit was successful. System alert, spirit stone quantity exceeds 100. Avatar exchange unit automatically updated to low-grade spirit stones. Mortal tier avatars are no longer provided. Current balance of 61 units, less than 1 spirit stone, can be used to restore all injuries sustained by the avatars. Unused balance will be cleared automatically after 12 hours. Current balance, 161. Infant Avatar System Host, Heavenly Emperor Realm, Chi Refining Stage 2. A Dai, A Ear, A San, AC number 1, number 2, number 3, the Old Man, number 4, number 5, the tablet, number 6 through 15 are mine. Does the system possess such a function as well? What are we waiting for? The system restored all injured clones, though 61 tails of silver vanished in the process. A light shimmered over Adai and the others. Their severed limbs regrew and their wounds knit together. Save for their tattered clothing, they had returned to their peak condition. This was the sheer shamelessness of the system. As long as the body had not completely perished, a minor repair would make it usable once more. I closed the system interface. Where the spirit stones had been, I noticed a black iron token engraved with the silhouette of a ferocious demon and the characters Blood Shadow. Could Blood Shadow refer to the Blood Shadow sect? I rubbed the iron token between my fingers. This was likely the backing behind Liu San, or perhaps a form of identification. I slammed the token onto the table, my expression thoughtful, though I quickly dismissed it. When I eradicate the Wang clan, I shall use this to shift the blame. Since it was the Blood Shadow sect that did the killing, what could that possibly have to do with me? Looking toward the horizon, my gaze settled upon the most prosperous district in the center of town. The Wang clan mansion. I must pull the weeds out by the roots lest they grow again when the wind blows. The Wang clan had emptied their reserves of elites tonight, only to be completely annihilated. Now the Wang clan is like a maiden stripped of all her garments. Furthermore, the Wang clan must possess at least a few hundred spirit stones. They are simply waiting for me to come and collect them. As I rallied my forces, I stood up and straightened my attire. In the courtyard, dozens of clones turned in unison, the blades in their hands reflecting a bone-chilling light under the flickering torches. Once this night passes, there will be no more Wang clan in Kingshan Town. We set off, a legion that knows neither fatigue nor fear, surging through the darkness toward the brightly lit mansion in the town center. There, people were anxiously awaiting news of victory, unaware that what truly awaited them was the King of Hell coming to claim their lives. At the heart of Kingshan Town, the Wang clan mansion was ablaze with light, yet the silence was eerie and unsettling. In the main hall, the clan head Wang Qinba held a cup of tea in his hand. The tea had long since gone cold, yet he had not taken a single sip. He was fixated on the outcome of tonight's operation. He had grit his teeth to hire the Black Wind Blade Liu San and had dispatched the 20 most elite guards of his clan. Logically speaking, dealing with a few impoverished wretches in the slums should have taken no longer than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. But an hour had passed. Why had they yet to return? Wang Tianba slammed his teacup onto the table, a growing sense of unease gnawing at his heart. The steward at his side smiled and said, "Rest assured, clan head, that Liu Shangxin's a master at the 5th level of the Qi refining stage. To slaughter a few mortals and a small cultivator at the 3rd or 4th layer of Qi refining, is that not as easy as slicing vegetables?" Perhaps Immortal Liu was in high spirits after completing his task and went elsewhere to drink? Wang Tianba snorted, his expression softening. Indeed, a 5th layer Qi refining cultivator in Kingshan Town is heaven itself. There is no reason for him to fail. At that very moment, a dull, heavy thud resounded from outside the main gate. He has returned. Wang Tianba's face revealed his joy, and he hurriedly stood up to head toward the entrance. Quickly, go and welcome Immortal Liu. The steward rushed to open the door, and the heavy vermilion wooden gate creaked open. The smile on the steward's face had not even fully bloomed before it instantly froze, immediately transforming into sheer terror. There was no triumphant army to be found. Before the gate stood a massive man, his entire body drenched in blood, holding a sodden cloth bundle in his hand. And behind this giant stood several figures, their faces devoid of expression, their bodies covered in gore. Who are you to dare trespass into the Wang? Before the steward could finish his sentence, the giant swung his blade, a motion simple and brutal without the slightest hint of flourish, cleaving the steward directly in two. Fresh blood sprayed across the vermilion door, making it impossible to distinguish between the paint and the gore. Wang Tianba, who had just reached the center of the courtyard, suddenly halted, his pupils shrinking to the size of pinpricks. That giant. He recognized him as Ada, the fool from the slums. But that was not what mattered. What mattered was that Ada carelessly tossed the sodden cloth bundle at Wang Tianba's feet. The bundle unfurled and a severed head with eyes wide open rolled out. Facing Wang Tianba, the expression on that face still bore the terror felt before death. It is Lu San, this is impossible. Wang Tianba felt a chill rise from the soles of his feet straight to the top of his head. His knees grew weak, nearly causing him to collapse to the ground. Lu San, a 5th-layer chi refining cultivator, was dead, slain by these mortals and these few low-level cultivators. Before he could recover his senses, more than a dozen figures surged from the shadows behind Ada like a pack of wolves. They did not speak, they did not scream, and there was not even the sound of heavy breathing. Strike down everyone in sight, whether they be guards, servants, or even the guard dogs. Stop him, someone stop him. Wang Tianba shrieked until his throat went hoarse, drawing his longsword to organize a defense. But this was no longer a battle, it was a slaughter. The remaining guards of the Wang estate had not even drawn their blades before they were paralyzed with terror by this suicidal fighting style. Who has ever witnessed a madman with a pierced abdomen still rushing toward them? Within the span of half an incense stick, was there truly no one left alive in the front courtyard? Ada dragged his blood-stained saber, its edge chipped and battered, stepping closer to Wang Tianba. Blood dripped from the blade, carving a long crimson trail onto the blue stone tiles. Hero, please, spare my life. Wang Tianba finally broke. The sword in his hand clattered to the ground as he collapsed to his knees. I have money. All the wealth of the Wang estate is in the vault. As long as you spare my life, everything shall be yours. I even have connections at the Qingyun sect. I can recommend you for entry. Ade stepped before him and halted. His eyes were devoid of emotion, lacking greed or pity, appearing like two stagnant pools of water. I shall retrieve the wealth myself. My voice echoed not in the physical space, but directly into Ada's mind like a command. To me, only the dead remain the most loyal keepers of secrets. As long as Wang Tianba lives, he remains an unknown variable. Who knows if he would turn around and report this incident to the Qingyun sect? Only in death is there absolute security. Ada raised his saber and brought it down, sending the man's head rolling to the ground. Wang Tianba's headless corpse convulsed twice before falling completely still. All units, heed my command, I muttered, hiding in a secluded corner outside the town, watching the scene with a blank expression while crushing a melon seed. I want this place cleared of everything, even the mice. The order was given to scour the earth, and the 10+ clones, who had moments ago acted like gods of death, immediately transformed into a professional cleaning crew. Or rather, a swarm of locusts with a terrifyingly clear division of labor. AD led a group straight toward the main bedroom and the study to search for hidden mechanisms or secret chambers. The first old man clone, though possessing only one arm, relied on his extensive experience to head straight for the ledger room, prying up every floor tile to inspect the ground beneath. The remaining mortal clones, even those with broken legs, crawled along to strip the corpses of jade ornaments and silver. They even removed any valuable clothing from the bodies. With a violent strike, AD shattered a wall in the study, revealing a reinforced steel interior containing 5 neatly stacked large chests. Opening them to inspect the contents, the first chest was filled with gold, its brilliance shining even brighter under the torchlight. The second chest held jewels and precious jade. The third chest I found them, and my eyes lit up. The third, fourth, and fifth chests were filled with low-grade spirit stones. Although most were of inferior quality with dull luster, furthermore there was a small brocade box placed separately at the very top. I opened the brocade box, revealing neither gold nor silver inside, nor were there any spirit stones. There was only a tattered goatskin map and a black token that was made of neither gold nor wood. The map was drawn in a crude manner, marking several strange symbols, with the final destination pointing toward a location in the back mountain of the Qingyun sect. This must be the clue regarding the illicit mine mentioned in the previous secret letter. I understood clearly in my heart that the Wang family dared to secretly mine spirit stones belonging to the Qingyun sect. What incredible audacity! But now this secret belonged to me. The shadow clones retreated with agile movements, each carrying 2 large bundles. They had even stuffed Lu San's ghost-headed blade into the loot sacks. Before departing, Ada followed my instructions, tossing the iron token engraved with the words Blood Shadow beside the corpse of Wang Tianba, and ignited a massive blaze to incinerate the Wang family's estate. The raging inferno erupted, staining half the night sky of Kingshan town in deep red, and amidst the chaotic crowd and the frantic shouts to extinguish the flames, a group of mysterious figures carrying large and small bundles had already slipped into the dark alleys, vanishing without a trace. Outside the town in a secluded corner, I gazed at the mountain of spoils, the corners of my mouth finally curling upward despite my best efforts to remain stoic. A horse cannot grow fat without nightgrass, a man cannot become wealthy without ill-gotten gains. I casually picked up a gold ingot, the heavy weight in my palm providing a sense of immense security. However, in the world of cultivation, such things are merely trifles. The true value lay in the 300 spirit stones, all of which were to be deposited into the system. Without a moment's hesitation, I chose not to hoard the spirit stones for a rainy day, for transforming them into true strength is the only absolute truth. The spirit stones in my hand disintegrated into fine powder at a speed visible to the naked eye, the spiritual energy within them forcibly absorbed by the system. Deposit successful, current balance 500. I took a deep, steadying breath. Although my previous mortal clones were inexpensive, they were ultimately bound by the limitations of a mortal vessel. Even by using refined trash pills to forcibly reach the 7th level of chi refining, the meridians remained fragile and casting spells required burning one's very life force. System I wish to exchange for a chi refining 7th level clone. One chi refining level 1 clone costs 100 spirit stones. Please specify your requirements regarding gender, physique, and appearance or the system will generate one randomly. The 100 spirit stones vanished, and the exchange was successful. Current balance 400. Congratulations to the host for satisfying all requirements of the Infinite Clone System Official Edition. The system is now fully bound and has automatically upgraded to version 1.0. The command to automatically recall all mortal clones has been issued, and the system's storage space has been unlocked, allowing the host to store all possessions. It can automatically calculate spirit stones without the need for additional deposits. What on earth is this? Was the official version I used previously merely a trial version? Now I must even recall my clone. That represents a significant loss of wealth, and there isn't even a shred of compensation? Damn it, so you didn't charge me fees just to lure me into this trap. So this was your plan all along. You are a crooked merchant, a wicked capitalist. I am speechless, yet the system remains like an unfinished product, offering no response whatsoever. Fine, if I must recall it, then so be it. Deep within the narrow alleyway, I watched as a young man in white robes emerged from the void. He appeared quite ordinary, yet his skin shimmered with a faint flowing radiance, his eyes were clear, and he possessed an ethereal temperament. A chi-refining clone crafted by the system is indeed extraordinary. It naturally possesses a spiritual root. It is a born seed for cultivation. With a single thought, I took control of Ling Yi's body. The sensation was akin to stepping out of a muddy swamp and into a warm spring. The sparse spiritual energy in the surrounding air seemed to be pulled by an invisible force, joyfully surging into my pores. Without even the need to intentionally circulate a cultivation technique, the spiritual energy flowed through my meridians unimpeded. This is what it truly means to cultivate. I raised my hand and flicked my finger. A fireball the size of a fist formed instantly, its scorching heat causing the air in the narrow alley to distort. The power of this fireball is 3 parts stronger than what my mortal clone could muster even while risking his life, and furthermore the consumption is so minimal that I could cast a dozen of them with ease. With this, my combat capability has undergone a qualitative transformation. I returned my consciousness to my original body. With 400 spirit stones remaining, I chose not to exchange for another clone and instead turned my attention to the collection of vials and jars seized from the Wang family. Inside were many elixirs to aid in cultivation. Although their quality was not high, the sheer quantity was impressive. Take these 1,000 taels of gold along with the common treasures, and under the cover of night, head to the neighboring city's black market to trade everything for spirit stones or elixirs. Mundane gold and silver are difficult to spend in Kingshan Town without inviting scrutiny. Traveling elsewhere is the safest course of action. Lead the team to guard the perimeter, kill anyone who dares to approach. With everything arranged, I had Ling Yi sit cross-legged amidst the pile of spirit stones, a bottle of gathering spirit powder, which the Wang family had kept in reserve, resting in his hand. As Ling Yi swallowed it, the medicinal power erupted within his body. At the same time, I also sat cross-legged and began to cultivate in synchronization. Watching my joy double, time passed second by second. In the silent alley, devoid of any sound, only the low growling emanating from Ling Yi's body could be heard. Yet it surged like a great river. Suddenly, I opened my eyes, and a golden light flickered within them. An aura many times more powerful than before erupted from my body, instantly blowing away the dust in the surrounding area. The third level of chi refining, this is not merely an increase in spiritual energy but a complete transformation of the divine sense. At this moment, even with my eyes closed, I can clearly perceive every blade of grass and every tree within a 30-meter radius. Truly, fortune favors the bold. The ancients did not deceive me. I clenched my fist, feeling the surging strength within my body. This is only the beginning. I retrieved the tattered sheepskin map that I had obtained from the brocade box. The symbols that I could not decipher before, under the sweep of my third-level chi-refining divine sense, vaguely revealed that this map had been sealed with a restriction, one that only a cultivator could comprehend. I traced my finger along the flow of spiritual energy. The final location was a secret valley in the back mountains of the Qingyun sect, and it was situated very close to the corner of the sect's grand formation. The Wang family wants to steal the spirit stone mine, I scoffed coldly. With only the strength of the Wang family, they would not have the audacity to touch the assets of the Qingyun sect. There is certainly someone else behind this. The secret to Foundation establishment mentioned in the confidential letter now seems to indicate that the mine is merely a sacrificial pawn. Since I have discovered the spirit stone mine, someone as enthusiastic as I am wouldn't mind going to take a look. I stood up and tucked the sheepskin map securely away. The feathers of the Wang family have been plucked clean. It is now time to pluck the feathers of the Qingyun sect. Ling Yi, prepare yourself. Once returns, we shall head to the back mountains. After waiting for 3 days, finally returned. Having exchanged all the gold, silver, I immediately teleported to my side. This teleportation function is truly convenient. It saves a tremendous amount of time. Let me see how many spirit stones you've managed to acquire, I said, rubbing my hands together with a devious grin while looking at Original, could you please stop smiling so lecherously? Felt an immediate sense of urgency and hastily tossed the bag over to me. I caught the bag and opened it to inspect the contents. It was filled with nothing but spirit stones. I counted them carefully, and there were exactly 2,000 pieces, no more, no less. Why are there no medicinal pills? Why is it all just spirit stones? Shot me a sidelong glance and slowly replied, Original, what exactly are you thinking? Medicinal elixirs are rare commodities in the mortal world. I had to visit several shops just to exchange these for spirit stones. I said nothing, instead walking in a circle around before speaking. Why do I get the feeling that you have become more agile? You are speaking nonsense again. Every day at the tea house I listen to news and interact with all sorts of people. Compared to Ada and Asan, is it not perfectly natural for me to mature faster? Fine, I muttered, deciding to pay her no more mind. I waved my hand, opening the interface for the system of spirit stones. Infinite clone system, host realm, third layer of chi condensation, current clones, Ada, Asan, spirit stones, 2400 low grade. I stared at the count of spirit stones, a plan quickly forming in my mind. Dark nights and howling winds are the perfect cover for killing and arson, or rather for diligent wealth accumulation. The back mountain of the Qingyun sect is a desolate place. Even the chore disciples have no desire to venture there. It is overgrown with brambles and jagged, protruding rocks. Aside from the occasional cry of a night bird, it is as silent as a graveyard. Asan stooped low, holding the tattered sheepskin map obtained from the Wang family, and came to a halt before a boulder covered in green moss. This is the place, I murmured, observing through our shared vision from my secluded corner outside the town. I looked at the massive, seemingly ordinary boulder before me. Were it not for the guidance of the map, one would never know what lies beneath. Asan reached into a crevice in the stone and fumbled for a moment. His fingertips brushed against a protruding piece of rock. He pressed down with force, yet there was no deafening rumble. The massive stone simply slid silently to the side, revealing an opening just large enough for a person to pass through. A dense wave of spiritual energy mixed with a musty scent surged outward. Asan slipped inside and the massive stone immediately slid shut. This was a man-made tunnel, the further one ventured, the wider the space became. Embedded into the cliff walls on both sides were cheap, luminescent stones, casting a pale, ghostly light over the surroundings. After walking but a short distance, the space ahead suddenly opened up. It was a cavernous, subterranean hall. More than 10 miners dressed in rags swung their pickaxes, striking the rock walls mechanically. Beside them stood 2 cultivators acting as overseers, holding whips and dozing off in their chairs. The Wang clan has truly overstepped, daring to carve out meat from right under the eyes of the Qingyun sect. I let out a cold laugh. This is no mere mine. This is clearly my personal ATM. The order was issued, and Atam did not charge out directly but instead sought out a blind spot. System, deploy 4 location, near Atam, deduct the required spirit stones. The clones were being manifested. The air began to ripple and distort. 24 hulking figures in black, their faces devoid of expression, emerged from thin air, instantly filling the cramped tunnel without a single shout or wasted word. The 24 figures surged into the cavern like a black tide. The 2 overseers were still dozing, and before they could even grasp what was happening, they were pinned to the ground by 7 or 8 massive hands. Rags were stuffed into their mouths. They lost consciousness before they could even let out a cry. The miners nearby were already frozen in terror, huddled in the corner and shivering. 7 of the Atams approached, each delivering a strike, a physical form of hypnosis. With the area cleared, I took control of Atam's body and walked over to the corner where the ore was stored. There, a pile of newly excavated spirit stone ore as high as a small mountain sat waiting to be transported. The system absorbed it directly. I have no patience for transporting it out to sell. Middlemen take far too much of a cut. It is better to consume the unrefined spirit stone ore directly, even if the impurities reduce the absorption efficiency by 30%. As the absorption began, the pile of spirit stone ore weathered away at a rate visible to the naked eye, eventually crumbling into a heap of gray-white ash. The absorption was complete, resulting in a balance of 1/200 spirit stones. Only 1 T200. I curled my lip, though I knew this was merely the yield of the last day or two. Nevertheless, it was enough to upgrade this labor force. System upgrade AATM and all 24 clones on site to the 3rd level of key refining. This is how I intend to utilize them. Using those at the 1st level of chi refining for mining is a waste. Spirit stones deducted, upgrade complete. Inside the cave, the 24 clones who had previously only been at the 1st level of chi refining suddenly felt their aura erupt, their bones popped and cracked, their muscle definition became more defined, and their once dull eyes instantly grew sharp and bright. To use laborers at the 3rd level of chi refining in the world of cultivation is an utter extravagance. Begin work and dig for me. Even the smallest shards of spirit stone hidden in the crevices must be extracted. The 24 superpowered miners at the 3rd level of chi refining picked up the discarded pickaxes from the ground, their speed so great that only afterimages remain. With every strike of his pickaxe, the stone shattered, revealing massive chunks of raw spirit stones. This was no longer simple mining, it was as if a human excavator were at work. Atam was not idle either. He patrolled the depths of the cavern, searching for the so-called secret bamboo. Upon reaching a junction in the deepest part of the cave, a pungent, cloying stench of blood and decay assaulted his senses. Atam furrowed his brow and ventured further inside. It was a small stone chamber sealed by an iron gate. As the scene within came into view, I stood rooted to the spot. The ancient seeds in my hand were crushed into powder. There were no treasures in the chamber, only a dozen massive iron cages. Inside those cages were not spirit beasts but children. The oldest could not have been more than 7 or 8 years old, while the youngest were barely 3 or 4. Every one of them was deathly pale and gaunt, skin stretched tightly over bone. Their eyes were vacant, and their wrists were marred by jagged incisions. Some wounds had already scabbed over, while the stone table beside the cages was littered with vials and jars. Inside them sat a viscous dark crimson liquid. This was a blood sacrifice. Although I do not claim to be a saint, having killed and plundered without hesitation, this sight still crossed the line of my tolerance. Who is responsible for this? My voice turned frigid, as if echoing from the depths of the 9 underworlds. In the corner, a middle-aged man dressed in brocade robes was cowering beneath a table, trembling. He was the supervisor of this place. Sensing that something was amiss, he had attempted to hide. Now Atam grabbed him by the collar, dragging him out as easily as one would hoist a dead dog. Do not kill me. Do not kill me. I am merely a follower. The fat supervisor wept, his face slick with tears and snot. Atam did not waste words. He reached out and tightened his grip around the man's throat. What are these children to you? They are medicine guides. The fat supervisor's eyes rolled back as he struggled to speak. The great elder, the outer sect elder of the Qingyun sect, Chu Yan, he is nearing the end of his lifespan and requires the vital essence of young boys and girls to refine the longevity pill. Chu Yan etched this name into my memory. An outer sect elder of the Qingyun sect, a cultivator at the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. He usually masqueraded as a man of refined virtue and immortal grace. Who would have guessed that, behind the scenes, he was nothing more than a beast who preyed upon the innocent? Besides you, does anyone else? The Wang family is responsible for capturing the people, while I am responsible for guarding them. The Grand Elder comes to collect blood once every month. Very good. A sand twisted his wrist and the fat overseer's neck went limp and collapsed. In the corner of the alley I stood up and paced back and forth. You want to prolong your life? I will send you to meet the King of Hell. Down there, you can live for as long as you wish. Once the intent to kill has risen, it is difficult to suppress. However, this old man is at the late stage of Foundation establishment. Furthermore, having spent years within the sect, he is constantly surrounded by experts. An assassination is certainly not feasible. A sand searched the body, fumbling over the fat man's corpse for a moment. He discovered a ledger and several secret letters. As I flipped through the secret letters, my eyes brightened. The letters were written by Zhu Yan to the head of the Wang family, urging them to expedite the collection of medicinal ingredients, because an ancient immortal ruin would soon be opening. Zhu Yan intends to refine the final batch of pills before entering the ruin, aiming to reach his peak state to try his luck at forming the core. An ancient immortal ruin. This is truly a case of finding a mat just when one is drowsy. A cold smile curled at the corners of my mouth. Killing an elder within the sect is inviting death, but in a ruin, if a few people die, that is simply called a lack of fate, a mere misfortune resulting in death. Since you wish to enter the ruin, I will present you with a grand gift on behalf of those children. The mining operation continued for 3 hours. The efficiency of the 3rd level of chi refining is truly terrifying. The spirit mine vein, which was not particularly large, had been completely hollowed out by my 24 clones. Beyond leaving behind a pile of rubble, not a single low-grade spirit stone remained. Asan, you continue to remain hidden. I shall begin the preparations. Ada, lead 12 clones to escort these children down the mountain. Find a safe location far from the Qingyun sect to settle them, and give each of them some silver. Let this be the extent of my conscience. The remaining clones will transport all the excavated spirit stones to the underground palace. Dawn is approaching, and within the underground palace outside Qingshan town, the spiritual energy is so dense it is almost tangible. I gazed at the mountain of spirit stones piled before me, and my mood finally improved. This is true wealth. Following the system's assessment, although this private mine was not expansive, it yielded a total of 150,000 low-grade spirit stones. This wealth was enough to transform a talentless wretch into a genius, and just as easily enough to turn a genius into a corpse. Ayer headed to the Wanbao Pavilion at the eastern market of the Qingyun sect. As soon as the doors opened, the shopkeeper realized he had received a major patron. Ayer had changed into different attire, wearing a conical bamboo hat to conceal his face. It was the standard attire for those who possess vast wealth but wish to remain anonymous. Do not ask who I am. I require the finest life-saving artifacts for a 7th level chi refining cultivator. Speed talismans, earth escape talismans, golden light talismans, how many do you have in stock? Furthermore, provide me with a complete cultivation technique, the best available, capable of guiding one to the foundation establishment stage. The shopkeeper smiled so broadly that the wrinkles on his face bloomed like flowers. Respected guest, we have the 5 Elements Origin Return Manual. It is an orthodox technique from a profound sect. Neutral and stable, though its progress is somewhat gradual, it lays an unshakable foundation. It can be yours for a mere 3,000 spirit stones. A San tossed a storage bag onto the counter. On this trip, a San had spent a total of 20,000 spirit stones, and the items purchased filled the tables within the underground palace. First, I organized the various talismans. I dispatched the protective items to a San. After all, it is the only clone that has successfully entered an immortal cultivation sect, and it must not be allowed to perish. Assemble, all of you, I commanded. Within the underground palace, excluding a San who was lurking outside, all remaining clones, whether it was Ada, Ayer, who was responsible for combat, or the others who had just returned from mining, sat neatly on the ground. In the center lay the 5 Elements Origin Return Manual, and we began our study. This is what one might call synchronized distributed cloud computing. Dozens of brains contemplating a single technique simultaneously. What kind of efficiency does that represent? Even the most obscure and difficult mantras were divided into dozens of parts. Each clone was responsible for comprehending only a small segment, which was then synthesized within my own mind, allowing for instantaneous enlightenment. In just half a stick of incense's time, I opened my eyes, a flash of clarity gleaming within them. So that is how it is. The crux of foundation establishment lies in refining spiritual energy to construct the foundation of the Tao. I looked toward Ling Yi, who sat cross-legged in the very center. This is the most perfect card in my hand. Ling Yi, everything depends on you. The spirit stones were being consumed like flowing water. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. The aura emanating from Ling Yi began to skyrocket. 4th level of chi refining, 7th level, 9th level perfection. There were no bottlenecks. As long as one has enough resources, there is no hurdle one cannot overcome. Is this what it means to reach foundation establishment? A dull thud echoed from within Ling Yi's body, as if something had fractured. The gaseous spiritual energy was rapidly compressed and liquefied, finally converging into a clear, flowing stream within his dantian. Early stage of foundation establishment. And it was even a perfect foundation. I could sense that immense surge of power. I felt that my current self could easily strike down 10 of my former selves, and that would still be an understatement. I looked at the remaining spirit stones. There were still 80,000 left. Zhu Yan is at the late stage of foundation establishment and possesses protective artifacts. Relying on Ling Yi alone is not enough. Ada, Ayer, Asan all synchronized to the early stage of foundation establishment. Another massive amount of spirit stones was consumed. The auras of the 3 clones erupted accordingly. Although not as perfect as Ling Yi, they had truly stepped into the foundation establishment realm. This is my trump card. Zhu Yan, no matter how strong you are, can you withstand several foundation establishment cultivators? I took the remaining spirit stones and pushed all other clones to the 9th level of chi refining. Once everything was finished, my storage bag was essentially empty. But I looked at the array of experts filling the house and smiled with great satisfaction. The feeling of being so poor that only strength remains, it is truly magnificent. 3 days later, news that the ancient immortal relic had opened spread throughout the Qingyun sect. In the outer sect plaza, the crowd was as thick as a swarm of ants. Great Elder Zhu Yan stood upon the high platform. His face flushed with health, though deep within his eyes lurked a trace of malice that was difficult to discern. His mood had been very poor lately. Contact with his private mind had been lost, and the men he sent had not returned, leaving him with an impatience he could no longer suppress. This time, as the relic opens, any disciple of the Qingyun sect may enter to seek their own fortune. Jiaxin's voice boomed, projecting an air of impartiality. Amidst the crowd, a handsome young man carrying a long sword on his back mingled with the rogue cultivators, a playful smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He was Ling Yi, currently going by the name Yi Liangshen. Ada hoisted his massive warhammer, while Ayer meticulously polished his dagger. Behind them, several dozen dead soldiers at the 9th layer of chi refining waited in silence. Elder Chu, your life extension elixir has arrived. I sat within the underground palace, tapping my fingers against the table. Though the method of delivery is somewhat forceful, I fear you may not be able to withstand it. The entrance to the ancient immortal ruins was in truth a spatial fissure suspended in midair, a grotesque, jagged maw torn into the fabric of reality. It incessantly spewed torrents of gray, howling gale winds that screeched with a sound sharp enough to set one's teeth on edge. This gale was no ordinary wind. It carried the lethal sharpness of void fragments, deadly enough to flay a cultivator at the 7th layer of chi refining. Without protective magical artifacts, a single brush with those winds would result in severed limbs or worse. At this moment, a dense crowd of rogue cultivators, members of minor clans, and the contingent from the Qingyun sect had gathered beneath the fissure. Chu Yan stood at the very front, his hands clasped behind his back. He had little longevity remaining. Despite the spiritual energy he used to mask the age spots on his face, a shroud of death emanated from him, though his eyes remained terrifyingly bright. They burned with the madness of a man who would gamble everything on a final desperate move. He refused to die. Great Elder, the gale wind at the entrance is too formidable, a sect deacon from the inner court remarked, watching as the winds ground solid boulders into fine powder. He hesitated. What is there to fear? Chu Yan cast him a sideways glance, his voice rasping like grinding stones. To cultivate is to defy the heavens and contend for one's destiny. If you do not even dare to enter through this threshold, what point is there in cultivating at all? With that, he raised his hand and pointed toward the team of outer court disciples. All disciples below the 5th layer of chi refining step out of line. Roughly 40 to 50 young disciples stepped forward, their bodies trembling. Most were newcomers who had only recently joined the sect, and some were even forced conscripts, Zar Yi, who hesitantly joined hands to form an iron wall formation. Chu Yan issued his command, and the disciples exchanged glances of dread. The iron wall formation was indeed a defensive array, but the gale before them was clearly not something meant to be withstood by those in the chi refining stage. Why are you still standing there, dazed? Chu Yan's expression darkened, and the pressure of a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator crashed down upon them. Disobey and be executed. Trembling, the disciples locked hands, manifesting a thin pale yellow protective barrier. Enter Chu Yan gave them no time to compose themselves. With a flick of his wide sleeve, a surge of soft energy shoved the crowd from behind. Dozens of people were forced headlong into that terrifying spatial rift. A chorus of wretched screams erupted, then vanished into silence. No miracle occurred. The 7 or 8 disciples in the lead, the very moment they touched the gale, their protective barrier shattered like a soap bubble. Flesh and blood scattered, and the sound of bones being pulverized echoed out, as rapid and rhythmic as popping kernels. Yet this was precisely what Chu Yan had intended. The spatial gales were diluted by the spray of flesh and blood, creating a momentary stagnation. The breach is open. Move. Zhu Yan showed no expression, not even blinking his eyelids. He stepped over the mangled remains and pools of fresh blood on the ground. In that fleeting moment of emptiness, he transformed into a streak of light and surged into the ruins. His loyal disciples followed closely behind. Even as they vanished, the severed limbs scattered on the ground continued to twitch. The crowd fell into a deathly silence. The rogue cultivators looked at one another, a chill running down their spines. This is an elder of a major sect. He is more ruthless than a demonic cultivator. At the back of the crowd, Ye Liangshan, who was actually Ling Yi in disguise, lowered the brim of his straw hat. I am currently in the underground palace of King Shan Town. Watching this scene through the screen, I toyed with a spirit stone, my expression calm as I planned how to fill the void. It certainly saved me a defensive treasure, my voice devoid of joy or anger. This old dog truly deserves to die. Since he is destined for death, I feel no moral burden in ending him. The system calculates the optimal entry point. Within Ling Yi's mind, the system interface immediately constructed a spatial model of the area ahead. The violent spatial gales transformed into predictable lines within the data visualization. Calculation complete. 3 zhang to the left. 7 chi from the ground. In 3 breaths' time, I will be the only one to blend into the rogue cultivators. I appeared to be moving forward with the flow of the crowd, but the moment the spatial gales stirred again, I let my foot slip, my body stumbling as if losing balance, falling toward the left side of the rift. Is he courting death? Someone beside me exclaimed in shock. Unexpectedly, Ling Yi's fall allowed his body to twist at a strange angle. He slipped perfectly through the gap between 2 currents of wind. He glided inside without suffering a single scratch. His movements were as fluid as an inhabitant of the ruins. The heavens and earth were dim. There was no sun, only a faint hazy light originating from an unknown source. The ground was fractured, littered with floating boulders and the beds of dried-up rivers. The air was thick with a scent of decay. Zhu Yan led the 20-odd surviving disciples, carving a path forward. Although he had entered, he did not dare to be careless. After all, this is an ancient immortal ruin. A single remaining restriction could claim his life. This is the relic of an ancient sect. Chu Yan inhaled the dense spiritual energy of the location, feeling his withered vitality stir with newfound vigor. If he can secure the legendary golden core fruit or the relics left behind by his predecessors, he will be able to survive. Elder, there is a thick fog ahead. Our divine sense cannot penetrate it. A disciple reported, causing Chu Yan to furrow his brows. Just as he prepared to force his way through the formation, he suddenly heard a noise from behind. He turned to see a rogue cultivator with an old scaled pack strapped to his back, clutching a shattered compass and murmuring before a dilapidated stele. It was Ling Yi who had arrived later. Seeking the dragon, parting the gold, inspecting the mountain ranges. Each layer of ridges reveals a gateway. Ling Yi muttered lines from the films of his past life. The compass in his hand spun erratically as he took peculiar steps, circling 3 times left, 3 times right before pointing at a specific spot on the broken steel. The mist formation, which had baffled the rogue cultivators for half a day, suddenly cracked open and Chu Yan's eyes lit up. He had not expected to find someone well-versed in arrays among these common rogue cultivators. This type of person is the perfect scout, Chu Yan signaled to the disciple beside him. 2 disciples at the 9th level of chi refinement immediately rushed forward, seizing Ling Yi from both sides and dragging him before Chu Yan. Boy, do you understand arrays? Chu Yan looked down, scrutinizing the seemingly ordinary young man while Ling Yi put on a terrified display, trembling as if he were about to lose his composure entirely. Reporting to the senior, this junior is named Yi Liangchen. My ancestors passed down the craft of feng shui. I know a little. Yi Liangchen, a name that is not half bad. Chu Yan wore an inscrutable mocking smile. If you know feng shui, do not waste it. Lead the way ahead. If you guide us well, this sovereign will reward you handsomely. Should you play any tricks, he lightly crushed a floating rock beside him. This junior dares not. I will certainly give my utmost effort. Ling Yi kowtowed repeatedly, and from within the underground palace, watching Ling Yi's performance, I could not help but comment. This acting is slightly exaggerated, but to deal with such an arrogant fool, it is perfectly sufficient. The group continued to advance, with Yi Liangchen leading the way. Their speed was indeed much faster. Ling Yi held the compass, feigning directions to the east and west, but in reality he was avoiding the truly dangerous sectors and leading Chu Yan's group directly. That map was acquired at the cost of the lives of the other clones I sent inside. After traveling for half an incense stick of time, the surrounding scenery shifted. The jagged rocks vanished, replaced by a terrain of soft crimson sand. The surroundings were strangely silent. Not even the slightest rustle of wind could be heard. Wait, Zhu Yan suddenly came to a halt. He scanned his surroundings with suspicion. This place was far too quiet. As a seasoned Foundation establishment cultivator, he possessed an innate intuition for danger. Senior, this is a hidden dragon formation. The silence is merely a sign that a great opportunity is gestating. Ling Yi pointed toward a red sand dune ahead, spouting nonsense with a perfectly serious expression. According to the compass, once we cross this stretch of sand, we will reach the gate of living sands. Zhu Yan stared at Ling Yi for a long moment until the latter broke into a cold sweat before finally withdrawing his gaze and gesturing for him to move ahead. Zhu Yan pointed toward the seemingly flat stretch of sand. The wily old fox Ling Yi nodded and bowed obsequiously. Yes, this junior will scout the path immediately. He stepped onto the sands with extreme caution. After taking several dozen steps, he turned back and shouted, "It is safe. The ground is very firm." Only then did Zhu Yan wave his hand, leading the rest of the group forward. Just as the team reached the center of the sands, Ling Yi, who was leading, suddenly stopped. He bent down as if to tie his shoelaces. In truth, he surreptitiously dropped a small nondescript blade of grass from his sleeve. The moment the grass touched the ground, it emitted a strange sweet fragrance. That was the essence of spirit-luring grass I had specially concocted, possessing a fatal attraction for subterranean creatures. After finishing this maneuver, Ling Yi crushed a yellow earth attribute talisman he had been holding. It was a second-rank high-grade earth evasion talisman. A flash of golden light erupted, and Ling Yi immediately sank into the earth, vanishing without a trace. "You little wretch, how dare you!" Zhu Yan reacted with lightning speed, raising his hand to strike with a wind blade toward the spot where Ling Yi had disappeared, but he only sliced through a mound of red sand. Escaped? This is bad. A wave of terror washed over Zhu Yan. Before he could even command a retreat, the red sands beneath their feet suddenly began to churn and boil. The sound of countless small chitinous legs scraping against hard shells was so dense and frantic that it made one's scalp crawl. A disciple's ankle was suddenly clamped tight by something from below. In an instant, his entire body was dragged deep into the sand. Even his final scream was smothered by the earth, leaving behind nothing but a pool of blood. Immediately following that, the red sand erupted, and a swarm of pitch-black ants obscured the sky and covered the earth as they surged forth. Each one was the size of a fist, their mouths filled with fangs, glinting with a metallic sheen. "Spirit-devouring ants! It's the spirit-devouring ants!" A surviving disciple shrieked in terror. A single ant of this species is not formidable, but when tens of thousands gather, they become a nightmare that would make even a golden core cultivator break into a cold sweat. They do not consume flesh, they specialize in gnawing through spiritual energy, rendering protective barriers as fragile as thin paper before them. Then, offer your final strength to this master. Several disciples were struck by a burst of spiritual energy, sent plummeting into the densest cluster of the swarm. The spirit-devouring ants were instantly drawn to the fresh source of spiritual power and swarmed over them in a frenzy. Taking advantage of this brief chaos, Zhu Yan burned his vital blood to fuel his escape technique, transforming his entire body into a streak of blood-red light recklessly charging out of the red sand plains. Behind him echoed the desperate curses and the sickening sounds of consumption as the disciples were devoured. Zhu Yan collapsed heavily onto the hard rocky ground, appearing utterly wretched. His robes were in tatters and even his hair accessory had been lost. Yet he paid it no mind, crawling forward several dozen yards. Only when the terrifying skittering sound faded did he finally go limp, gasping for air. Alive, he had actually survived. He wiped the blood from his face and lifted his head to look ahead. Before him lay the entrance to a gargantuan canyon, flanked by towering cliffs that blocked out the light, casting an ominous gloom over the path. That red sand plain seemed to be a boundary between life and death. Tens of thousands of spirit-devouring ants gathered at the mouth of the canyon, their antennae waving frantically, their mouths clicking incessantly, but it appeared as though they had struck an invisible wall, halted before the fractured stone steel. Zhu Yan wheezed, his lungs feeling like a torn bellows, each breath carrying the metallic tang of blood as he slumped against the rubble. His three remaining loyal disciples were in an even more pathetic state. One had lost an arm, while another had half of his face gnawed away, revealing raw flesh. They aren't pursuing. Zhu Yan braced himself against the ground, attempting to stand, but his knees buckled and he fell hard once more. This impact caused his complexion to turn deathly pale, not merely from exhaustion. The spiritual energy that had flowed through his meridians for years, acting as an extension of his own body, had vanished. His dantian felt like a dried-up well. No matter how he exerted his divine sense, he could not perceive the slightest fluctuation of spiritual energy. His late-stage foundation establishment cultivation within this canyon had been utterly deflated, like a punctured ball. My spiritual energy is gone. The remaining disciples also discovered the anomaly, screaming in horror, with one even attempting to manifest his flying sword. As a result, the Dharma treasure that usually glimmered with spiritual light now resembled nothing more than a scrap of rusted metal, clattering onto the ground with a heavy, dull thud. Zhu Yan bellowed, his voice rasping with strain. The Forbidden Spirit Zone. This is the Forbidden Spirit Zone. He stared intently at the stone tablet, a sense of unprecedented dread rising within his heart. Without spiritual energy, his storage ring could not be opened. His Dharma treasures were useless, and he lacked even the most basic protective light barrier. He was now no different from an ordinary mortal, and due to having burned his life essence moments ago, his body was even weaker than that of a commoner. At that very moment, a grating, teeth-clenching sound echoed from the depths of the shadows in the canyon. Scrape, scrape, as if something heavy were being dragged across the jagged rocky ground. Zhu Yan abruptly snapped his head up. A flash of vigilance flickered in his cloudy, aged eyes as his hand instinctively reached for the sword at his waist. It was the only weapon he could rely on now. The darkness parted and a man bare-chested stepped forth. What kind of physique was that? His muscles were like slabs of solid granite stacked atop one another, his skin coated in an unknown viscous oil, shimmering with a dark luster under the dim, faint light. Most notable, however, was the object he dragged in his hand, a colossal crude hammer. The hammerhead, the size of a millstone and pitch black, was crafted from an unknown material. Judging by the deep gouge it left in the earth, it must have weighed at least 1,000 caddies. The man remained expressionless, his eyes as hollow and stagnant as a pool of dead water, save for a flash of savage ferocity that flickered within them from time to time, signaling that he was a lethal creature. It was Ada who had been lying in wait. Who are you? Zhu Yan gripped the sword hilt tightly, his voice stern. I am the elder of the outer sect of the Qingyun sect, Zhu Yan. Which wandering cultivator are you? If you can escort me out of here, you shall be handsomely rewarded. His only reply was the whistling of the wind. Ada was not one for idle talk. The order he had been given consisted of only 2 words: kill him. The 1,000-caddy hammer was lifted with one hand as if it were a mere straw, swinging toward Zhu Yan's face with terrifying kinetic energy. There were no flashy techniques, only pure overwhelming power, the strength to court death. Zhu Yan was enraged. Although he had lost his spiritual energy, he tilted his body to dodge, his long sword striking Adai's throat like a venomous viper. Under normal circumstances, this strike possessed enough power to slice through gold and shatter jade. But now as the sword pierced Adai's neck, it emitted only the sound of clashing metal. Adai merely tilted his neck and the tip of the blade did not even break the skin. On the contrary, the blade itself bent into a strange arc due to the immense rebounding force. External physical training? Zhu Yan's eyes nearly bulged from their sockets. In this world, there were actually madmen who specialized in tempering their physical bodies, not cultivating spiritual energy. Before he could even regain his composure, a die spun around and unleashed a slap. This time, Zhu Yan could not evade. A crisp, sharp sound rang out, accompanied by the cracking of bone. Zhu Yan's entire body was struck as if by a horse-drawn carriage traveling at high speed. He was sent flying 7 or 8 meters, slamming heavily into the cliff face. One side of his face immediately swelled up violently. Several teeth coated in blood were sent flying out. The 3 remaining trusted disciples gritted their teeth and charged forward. Although terrified, they knew that if Zhu Yan died, they would not survive either. Attacked together, he is only one man. The 3 drew their weapons, forming a triangle to surround him. But this was not a battle. It was a one-sided slaughter. A die ignored the blades and swords slashing against his back. Such mundane weapons against a physical body tempered repeatedly by spiritual energy and further reinforced by the system felt no different than a mere itch. He cast aside his large hammer and reached out with both hands, grabbing the heads of 2 disciples. As if clutching 2 watermelons, the 2 men did not even have time to scream. Their heads collided with a sickening crunch, white and red gore splattering in every direction. Their 2 limp bodies collapsed onto the ground. The remaining disciple was scared out of his wits and turned to flee. With a single kick, Adai scooped up a fist-sized piece of rubble from the ground. He struck it hard and the stone shot forth like a cannonball, accurately striking the back of the disciple's head. The man did not even have time to groan before he collapsed face first to the ground, twitching for a few moments before falling still. In the blink of an eye, everyone except Zhu Yan had been annihilated. Adai dusted his hands, picked up his large hammer and walked step by step toward Zhu Yan, who was coughing up blood in the corner. A gargantuan, ominous shadow loomed over him. Zhu Yan stared at the hammer stained with brains and fresh blood. The arrogance of a Foundation establishment cultivator collapsed entirely. Terror gripped his heart like a cold, tightening hand. Don't kill me. Just as Adai was about to swing his hammer to send him on his way, a soft chuckle echoed from above. Hold Adai, do not damage our source of wealth. Zhu Yan hurriedly looked up. He saw that on the steep cliffs on both sides of the canyon, 2 figures had appeared, though he did not know when they had arrived. The person on the left wore black, donned a fierce demon mask, and held a handful of melon seeds, eating them while letting the shells fall to the ground. The person on the right held a diamond-encrusted crossbow emitting a cyan glow, aiming it directly at the space between his brows. That face, a face bearing a mocking smile. Yi Liangshen. Zhu Yan let out a wretched howl, the corners of his eyes seemingly splitting open. It was you vile beast, you led me into this trap. Lin Yi, or Yi Liangshen, shrugged, picked his ear with his little finger and maintained an innocent expression. Elder Chu, those words are truly unpleasant to hear. This junior only provided guidance. This path was chosen by you alone. The legs belong to you. How can you blame us for your choices? Zhu Yan spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, his entire body trembling with rage. He had been plotted against. From the very beginning, this was an inescapable death trap. What searching for dragons and dividing gold? What great opportunity. It was all fabricated by this little beast. Who exactly are you people? Zhu Yan gritted his teeth, his gaze darting between a ear, and Lin Yi. The Qingyun sect will not let you off for this. Who am I? Brushed the remaining melon seeds from his hands, jumped down from the heights and landed without making a sound. He walked up to Chu Yan and sat down, the demon mask nearly pressed against Chu Yan's face. What is important is that right now, your life rests in our hands. Aya reached out and wiped his hand on Chu Yan's blood-stained robes. Elder Chu, we are reasonable people, we cultivate the Tao after all. Focusing on wealth, companions, techniques, and resources, I wish you a peaceful journey. Possessions are external. Carrying them to the afterlife is worthless. It would be better to leave them to those in need like us, to accumulate some virtue. Don't you agree? Chu Yan's face turned deathly pale. If I surrender my belongings, will you spare my life? That goes without saying. Ayer chuckled, his tone so sincere it was enough to make one weep. We only seek wealth. After all, killing an elder of the Qingyun sect brings far too much trouble. Chu Yan stared intently into the eyes hidden behind Ayer's mask, trying to discern his true intent, but all he saw was a bottomless, chilling greed. Only through greed can one find the leverage for negotiation. Chu Yan took a deep breath, struggling to compose himself. His fingers trembled as he attempted to remove the storage ring from his hand. Because he lacked spiritual power, the storage ring would not slide off easily. It remained wedged tightly against his bony knuckle. Ayer remained patient, smiling as he watched Chu Yan exert great effort. Finally, he managed to pull the jade-green storage ring free. He clutched it tightly in his hand for you. But how could you say I have no choice? Ayer pointed toward Ada standing nearby. Either you pay the price or you let this blacksmith help you stretch your limbs. I doubt your old fragile bones could withstand even a single strike from that hammer. Ada coordinated by raising his hammer and spinning it through the air. The ground trembled and Chu Yan's eyelids twitched. Resolved, he tossed the storage ring over. Very well. Ayer reached out to catch it, toyed with it in his hand for a moment, and nodded in satisfaction. This is what I call a proper business attitude. Just as Chu Yan felt a surge of relief and prepared to stand, Ayer's tone shifted, turning cold and ominous. Now let us settle a different debt. What debt? Chu Yan was stunned. The smile on Ayer's face vanished, replaced by a chilling, terrifying coldness. The children in the back mountain mine of the Qingyun sect, those whose blood was drained dry. How does Elder Chu intend to settle this debt? These words struck Chu Yan like a thunderbolt. He stared at the 3 people before him in complete disbelief. The affairs of the mine were kept in absolute secrecy. Even the core members of the sect did not know that these rogue cultivators had come specifically for those commoners. Commoners. The crossbow in Lin Yi's hand was suddenly raised, and he pulled the trigger. A jet-black arrow grazed Chu Yan's scalp and embedded itself into the rock behind him. The tail of the arrow vibrated violently. That was a human life. Lin Yi's voice was as cold as ice. Ayer stood up, looking down at Chu Yan from above. The mockery in his eyes was gone, replaced by the utter loathing one reserves for trash. Ayer stepped back, waving his hand to signal Ade to cripple one of his legs, to ensure he would never forget this lesson. Chu Yan was thrown into a state of absolute panic. These men were not mere bandits seeking wealth, they were Yama's envoys come to claim his life. I am an elder of the Qingyun sect, he cried, but Ada's massive mace descended without a moment's hesitation. This time, instead of a crushing blow, Ada used the sharp spiked tip of the mace to plunge deep into Chu Yan's right thigh. Blood sprayed forth, and a shriek of agony echoed throughout the narrow gorge. The sound was enough to startle the vultures nesting nearby into flight. Chu Yan collapsed to the ground, clutching his leg and writhing in pain. Cold sweat instantly soaked through his robes. The excruciating agony was enough to make him lose consciousness, yet the overwhelming terror of death forced him to remain awake. "You are all madmen, absolute madmen." Chu Yan screamed, his eyes filled with a desperate, frantic edge. After all, death awaited him regardless of his actions. He suddenly ceased his thrashing, his trembling hand reaching into his tunic to pull out a wax-sealed pellet he had kept hidden. It was his final trump card. If he were destined to perish, he would drag them down into the abyss with him. Ayer seemed to sense the change, his gaze sharpening instantly. "Ada, be careful." But Chu Yan moved with desperate speed, biting through the wax seal as a crimson mist erupted from his 7 orifices. It was a burning blood pill. Even in this realm where spiritual energy was suppressed, the power unleashed by incinerating one's core vitality was not to be underestimated. Chu Yan's withered muscles began to bulge as if inflated by an unseen force. His eyes turned blood red, and his entire form resembled a demon crawling out from the depths of hell. "I will have you all buried with me." A scorched scent filled the air, the smell of blood vaporizing under intense unnatural heat. Chu Yan's appearance had completely transcended that of a human. The medicinal power of the burning blood pill was incredibly tyrannical. It drained the last of his remaining lifespan, forcing his shriveled frame to bloat and swell. Veins throbbed and coiled beneath his skin like frenzied earthworms. His bloodshot eyes appeared as though they might burst at any moment. "Die. All of you must die." He released a roar like a wild beast, and the rocky ground beneath his feet shattered. What did it matter if he lacked spiritual energy? The raw, explosive power currently surging through his body was enough to tear tigers and leopards asunder. Before Ada could even suppress his mocking expression, the world before his eyes blurred. A dull, heavy thud echoed, sounding like a massive hammer striking home. Adai, despite his tower-like frame, was sent flying from the ground by a single punch from this decrepit old man. His chest clearly caved in and his body slammed heavily into a pile of rubble, sending dust billowing into the air. Adai spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with shattered internal organs and sneered with a curse. This old dog's combat power was completely unexpected. He had not even seen Adai being sent flying. This punch was merely to pave the way. The medicinal efficacy of the blood ignition pill would only last for a few dozen breaths. Once the medicinal power dissipated, he would not need these people to strike. He would collapse into a pile of mangled flesh himself. He only needed to rush out of this bizarre, spirit-suppressing canyon to recover his spiritual energy. As for these mortal ants, what could they do to him with a mere flick of his hand? Ayer leaped down from the cliff but was struck by Chu Yan's shoulder and sent hurtling away instantly. The sound of ribs snapping was distinct. The frenzied state of a Foundation establishment cultivator risking his life was truly terrifying. Chu Yan saw the exit only a few dozen meters ahead, and the sunlight there seemed to manifest as a path to survival right before his eyes. However, just as he was about to break through the final line of defense, more than a dozen men suddenly charged out from behind the previously empty rubble without any warning. These men were dressed in disheveled loose cultivator robes, some unarmed, others holding short blades, yet their eyes remained entirely void of emotion. There was no fear, no hesitation, not even killing intent, only the singular execution of the order to hold him back. Someone let out a shout. More than a dozen men, acting like zombies devoid of pain, charged straight into Chu Yan's fists that were capable of splitting stones. Chu Yan struck and shattered the skull of the first man to rush forward. Brain matter splattered everywhere, but the moment the corpse fell, its hands remained locked tightly around his waist. Next came the second man. The third, one man, despite having his chest pierced through, still used his teeth to bite down firmly on Chu Yan's calf. Another had his arm torn off, yet used his remaining hand to clasp Chu Yan's ankle. This was no longer combat, this was a suicidal effort to hinder his path. "Get lost!" Chu Yan struck frantically at the human-shaped decorations hanging off him. Each blow claimed a life, but these people were too numerous. For everyone killed, 2 more took their place within 3 breaths. To a cultivator, 3 breaths is time enough to accomplish much, but for the current Chu Yan, this was a countdown to hell. His explosive speed was dragged down by these fearless madmen. His legs felt as if cast in lead, every step burdened by the weight of several corpses. It was almost time. Lin Yi, perched atop the canyon, had knelt on one knee at some unknown moment, his custom-made crossbow held rock steady. This was no magical artifact, but a steel-piercing crossbow he had spent a small fortune to acquire from the Wanbao Pavilion. The bolt tips were coated in a dark murky violet, the 7-step soul-severing poison compounded with corrosive toxins. The wind died down and Lin Yi's breathing slowed to a crawl. The sight was locked firmly onto the blood-red figure writhing in madness. In the next life, he would do well to be a more virtuous man. The clear hum of a bowstring vibrated in the air, and an invisible streak of light tore through the atmosphere, carving a path of certain death across the gorge. Just as Zhu Yan prepared to swing his fist once more to crush the skull of the man beneath him, a sudden, frigid chill seized his throat. His fist hung frozen in midair. He attempted to scream and curse, only to realize that his windpipe could produce nothing but the hollow whistling of the wind. Raising a hand to his neck, he touched the jet-black arrow that had pierced straight through it. The arrowhead protruded from the back of his neck, trailing a spurt of dark blood. The potent toxin began to paralyze his nerves instantly. The strength granted by the blood-burning pill receded like a falling tide, replaced by an overwhelming sense of frailty and suffocation. Zhu Yan staggered backward, clutching his throat. The blood-red hue in his eyes quickly faded, replaced by the gray tint of despair. He had lost, not because of a disparity in cultivation, but because he had fallen to this pack of scoundrels who lacked any shred of martial honor. "Ada, finish him. Do not give him a chance to speak," Lin Yi's cold voice echoed from above. Amidst the rubble, Ada rose unsteadily, wiping a streak of blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes flickering with a savage intensity. That previous strike had truly been agonizing. He hauled his massive warhammer and took heavy, deliberate steps toward the kneeling Zhu Yan. By now the toxins had completely immobilized Zhu Yan, leaving only his eyeballs to roll slightly, filled with desperation as he gazed at the approaching shadow. "Old man, you enjoyed your rampage earlier, didn't you?" Ada showed no mercy, his muscles tensed, his waist engaged, and the 1,000-pound hammer in his hands traced a perfect semicircle. This time there was no dull thud, but rather the sickening sound of a melon being smashed to pieces. The great elder Zhu Yan, who had dominated the outer sect of the Qingyun sect for decades, had lived a life so cruel that he could not even utter a final dying word. His entire upper body was pulverized into a mound of red, white, and black gore, splattering across the earth. The gorge returned to a deathly silence, save for the few corpses still twitching on the ground. After the deed was done, A-Air stepped over from the side, gingerly avoiding the filth on the ground before kicking the pile of remains. Not even his own mother would recognize him now. Ada, you were too brutal. What if you had destroyed his storage ring? It wouldn't have broken. That thing is far too durable. Ada cast the hammer aside and slumped to the ground, panting heavily. That old man's desperate counterattack was truly formidable. I've broken at least 3 ribs. I don't know if the main body has any insurance. Forget it. What am I saying? Tomorrow I'll be back on my feet as good as new. Lin Yi leapt down from above, agilely producing a porcelain vial from his robes. Chu Yan was after all a Foundation establishment cultivator. Should any remnants of his soul or tracking marks remain, it would prove troublesome. Total physical destruction is the only way to be certain. Kerosene was poured over the pile of corpses and a match was cast into the pyre. The flames roared into existence instantly. Thick black smoke billowed upward, carrying the pungent scent of scorched flesh. While disposing of the bodies, the group began to skillfully fabricate the scene. Ayer directed the slightly injured clones to create numerous marks of magical attacks and chaotic sword slashes in the surrounding area. They splattered blood in strategic spots, ensuring the scene appeared disheveled. 2 strikes were carved into that boulder. It had to mimic the style of a chaotic brawl between rogue cultivators. They arranged the corpses of the fallen clones carefully. They disguised the scene as a dog-eat-dog conflict that ended in mutual destruction, making sure to mutilate the faces so their identical features remained unrecognizable. The sequence of actions was as fluid as flowing water, professional to the point of being unsettling. When the flames finally died down, a jade-green ring shimmered amidst the pile of ashes under the sunlight. Ada picked up the storage ring, wiped it clean on his clothes without a hint of hesitation, and handed it directly to Lin Yi. Lin Yi took the ring and gestured to the remaining clones without a word. Supporting the wounded, they quickly dispersed, slipping into the hidden tunnels deep within the canyon and vanishing without a trace. They left behind only this chaotic scene of carnage, waiting for those who followed to speculate on the scale of the harrowing battle that had taken place. Back at Kingshan Town, I witnessed the final image transmitted from the light curtain. My tense nerves finally began to relax. My entire body went limp against the Grand Master's chair. I let out a long breath. It was a success. This battle seemed to be an easy victory, yet in truth every step had been heart-stopping. Had Chu Yan been more decisive, had he risked his life from the very beginning, had the effects of the human blood elixir lasted even a moment longer, or had I not sacrificed over 10 clones to bridge the gap, the outcome might have been entirely different. It all came down to a lack of raw strength. I sighed, but the smile on my lips only grew wider. The greater the risk, the higher the reward. This was after all the storage ring of a Foundation establishment late-stage peak cultivator. With a flash of white light, the jade-green ring, still radiating residual warmth, appeared on the tray in my hands. This is the cross-dimensional teleportation function of the system. Even from the vast distance of the ancient Immortal ruins, it could successfully transport items back to me. I infused my divine sense into the ring. Although Chu Yan's spiritual imprint remained, a dead man's aura fades with his life. The imprint was as fragile as a thin sheet of window paper. It took only a slight exertion of my power to shatter it. With a flicker of my intent, the contents of the ring poured out onto the table like falling rain. The first thing that caught my eye was a mountain of spirit stones piled high. 80,000 low-grade spirit stones and 30,000 mid-grade spirit stones. My eyes practically turned into the shape of spirit stones the moment I saw them. This Chu Yan is truly worthy of being an outer sect elder, and when combined with all the spoils he pillaged from this ruin, this haul is nothing short of a massive windfall. Beyond the spirit stones, there were over a dozen vials of various elixirs, mostly consisting of chi replenishment pills and healing bombs, along with a few precious vials designed to accelerate cultivation progress. There were 3 Dharma artifacts, a high-grade Dharma sword, a defensive shield, and a small damaged bell. The everlasting withered wood technique. From the chaotic pile, I unearthed an ancient text bound in yellow silk. This was the primary cultivation manual practiced by Chu Yan. While it may not compare to the heritage of top-tier sects, its strength lies in its stability, not to mention a miraculous secret technique for longevity. If I have my clone practice this and later task him with cultivating medicinal herbs or serving as a human shield, it should prove quite useful. I tossed it aside casually and continued my search. Very quickly, a piece of sheepskin parchment drew my attention. The map had several red marks, and next to the largest one, 3 tiny characters were inscribed, no larger than a needle's point. Golden Fruit of Foundation, the Golden Core Opportunity. My heart skipped a beat. This was the true purpose for which Chu Yan was willing to risk his life to enter these ruins. With this, the path to my Golden Core is finally secure. Just as I prepared to pack the items and draft my plan, my finger brushed against an inconspicuous bead tucked away in the corner. The bead was as black as ink, its surface dull and devoid of luster, bearing several small cracks, looking much like a cheap glass marble that children might play with. Yet the moment my fingertip made contact, the system, which had been silent until now, suddenly projected a glaring notification. Alert, detected spatial fluctuations from a high-energy dimension scanning item. Name, a remnant nucleus of a small thousand world. Grade, special, upgradable. Description, the final remaining essence of a collapsed small thousand world. Although destroyed, the interior space and fundamental laws have not yet entirely vanished. Upon restoration, this may serve as the host-owned small thousand world. Restoration protocol requires an infusion of 20,000 mid-grade spirit stones as activation energy. Is there a repair and binding function? I was stunned. 20,000 medium-grade spirit stones, the cost is truly ruthless. The 30,000 medium-grade spirit stones I just acquired haven't even warmed up in my hands, and already the vast majority is about to vanish. One must understand that for me right now, 20,000 medium-grade spirit stones are enough to trade for an entire army of chief refining stage cultivators, or to propel over a dozen clones to the Foundation establishment stage. This is truly extortion. And yet a small world hard to possess a world of my own, entirely under my control. What does this mean? It means I can hide all of my secrets within it. It means I have an absolutely secure logistical base. It means that in the future, even if I cannot win a fight, I can simply retreat into the small world. Who could possibly touch me then? This is the ultimate dream for those who follow the path of Tao. Money can always be earned again. But to miss an opportunity of this magnitude would surely invite divine retribution. I looked at the pile of shimmering spirit stones on the table, my heart aching as if it were bleeding, yet I still gritted my teeth and nodded firmly. System, deduct the cost and perform the repairs. If you fail to complete the repair, I will dismantle you and sell you for scrap. At my command, 20,000 of the 30,000 spirit stones on the table vanished instantly. A beam of white light so brilliant that it was impossible to keep my eyes open erupted from that black orb, immediately engulfing the entire cavern. An aura of ancient desolation began to stir within the cramped space. The expression in my eyes shifted from heartbreak to intense fervor. The Great Elder did not merely send a courier package this time, but the very foundation for my future security. Go in peace, Elder. On this day next year, I will certainly make sure someone burns more offerings for you. Within the cavern beneath Kingshan Town, 20,000 medium-grade spirit stones were reduced to the purest essence of energy, devoured by the Black World Orb. The surface of the orb, previously dormant, began to mend its cracks at a speed visible to the naked eye. The black light converged, then radiated a warm, chaotic glow. Repair complete. The small world has been bound to the host's soul. Current status: primary level, 10-mile radius, spiritual energy concentration 15 times higher than the outside world. I felt a wondrous newfound connection bloom within my mind. With a single thought, upon opening my eyes once more, I found myself standing on hard brownish-gray earth beneath a sky devoid of a sun. Was that a moon? There was only a layer of faint, ethereal white light illuminating the desolate expanse, rendering everything visible at a single glance. On the horizon lay churning gray mists, the chaotic currents of unstable space. Despite the desolation, this atmosphere. I took a deep breath. The spirit energy here was far more dense than in a barren place like Qingshan Town, and though it may not rival the inner sect of Qingyun sect, it was not far behind. Most importantly, this place was absolute safe haven. From this day forth, it shall be named the Heavenly Court. Having named it on a whim without time for further sentiment, I immediately shifted my perspective to the system interface. The ancient relic site was now ripe for the taking. In the central region of the ruins, this place was no longer the red desert or gravel pit of before, but a lush, verdant basin. In the heart of the basin, beside an empty well, stood a small tree half the height of a man. Its leaves were a deep gold, and from its branches hung 3 fruits the size of fists. The skins of the fruits were etched with intricate patterns, and one could vaguely hear the sound of metal clashing emanating from within. Golden core fruit. A single fruit could increase the chance of forming a core by 30%. With 3, even a pig could be pushed to the golden core stage. Yet, wherever heavenly treasures exist, there are always exotic beasts to guard them. Beside the small tree lay a gargantuan lion, its entire body covered in bristling violet fur. With every breath, its nostrils exhaled sparks of lightning. These sparks fell to the ground, leaving behind charred, blackened craters. A peak stage second-tier demonic beast, the violet lightning-frenzied lion. Though the beast was slumbering, its ferocious aura was so potent that Adai, hiding in the grass 100 paces away, could clearly sense it. Its strength was equivalent to the Great Circle of Foundation establishment. Furthermore, with its thick hide and innate lightning attribute supernatural powers, a direct confrontation would certainly be costly. A Ning sat on a tree branch, gripping a high-grade Dharma sword obtained from Zhu Yan, gauging the angle of attack. Lin Yi, hiding behind a boulder on the other side, calmly analyzed its weaknesses, the patch of white flesh beneath its throat and its eyes. This lion possessed a habit. Every 3 breaths, its tail would twitch once. That was the blind spot in its vigilance. How shall we strike? Adai asked. Lin Yi adjusted his non-existent spectacles, setting the old rules. Adai, you are to tank the damage. Anan, you will blind it. The rest of you charge forward. As long as it is not truly dead, grip its 4 limbs with everything you have. If that fails, detonate yourselves on the spot. There is no psychological burden for me. After all, by the next day, you can simply be resurrected. Even if it costs me my life, obtaining the golden core fruit is worth it. Attack! The moment the command was issued, Adai moved. Instead of charging headlong, he hoisted a boulder the size of a millstone from the ground, and with a surge of strength from his waist, he hurled it forward with reckless abandon. Whoosh! The sound of the stone cleaving the air startled the mad lion. It snapped its eyes open, purple lightning flickering within its pupils. It swiped its front paw. Crack! The boulder shattered like tofu, yet that was merely a diversion. As the stone debris scattered, Adai surged forward, his muscles bulging with raw power. The iron hammer in his grip was poised to strike. Roar! The mad lion erupted in fury, unleashing a bolt of purple lightning as thick as an arm from its maw. Adai did not dodge nor weave, he took the blow head on. The lightning slammed into his chest, tearing flesh and shredding skin, leaving behind a charred, blackened wound. His iron hammer slipped from his paralyzed fingers, but his momentum did not falter. He lunged forward, arms spreading wide to lock firmly onto one of the mad lion's hind legs. I have it locked. Adai let out a savage roar, veins bulging across his entire body as he exerted every ounce of his strength to pull the beast's hindquarters toward the ground. The mad lion whipped its head around to bite, but as it turned, a dark silhouette dropped from the trees above. Ayer, holding a pouch filled with a mixture of toxic powder, chili dust, and lime, cast it with precision directly into the mad lion's eyes. Look over here. The mad lion instinctively squeezed its eyes shut, only to feel a searing pain pierce its eyelids. While the spirit sword in Ayer's hand could not pierce the beast's skull, it was more than sufficient to puncture its eyelids. Roar! The mad lion went berserk. Lightning exploded across its body, instantly manifesting a localized thunderstorm. Ayer's body convulsed violently as he was struck by the electricity, his hair standing on end, yet he remained ruthless, shoving the remaining pouch of poison directly into the mad lion's maw. Enjoy this little treat. At that same moment, dozens of cultivators at the 7th layer of the Qi refining stage emerged from the brush like a marching army. They disregarded all forms of defense. Every one of them had a singular objective. Wherever there was a place on the beast to latch onto, clinging to its front legs, hind legs, tail, and even its mane. Lightning ravaged their bodies, but they refused to let go. A physical body at the 7th level of Qi refining cannot possibly withstand lightning at the peak of the 2nd rank. Some clones charged forward only to be scorched into charcoal by the electricity. Others were crushed into pulp by a single swipe from the mad lion. Yet for every one that fell, 2 more rushed into the fray. As long as possessed a single breath, even if only half their body remained, they would use their jaws to bite down firmly onto the mad lion's flesh. Such an assault, let alone for a demonic beast, even a golden core cultivator would feel their scalp go numb. Within 5 short breaths, the purple lighting mad lion was covered in hanging figures. Every time it thrashed, it had to drag the weight of several thousand jin. It was at this very moment that Lin Yi, who had been lurking at the edge of the battlefield, seized the opportunity. In his hands, he gripped a specialized armor-piercing crossbow, loaded with the final arrow coated in a lethal poison. He had used one against the Zuyan previously. This was his backup. Driven by agony and hindered by the obstacles clinging to its body, the mad lion roared furiously toward the sky, exposing a patch of soft white flesh beneath its throat. That was its only fatal weakness. Whoosh, the arrow left the bow with a soft thud. The bolt sank deep into the soft flesh. The massive frame of the mad lion suddenly went rigid. The purple lightning within its eyes rapidly faded. Finally, with a roar filled with unwillingness, it collapsed heavily to the ground. Ada released his hands, which were scorched black, and slumped onto the ground. The large hole in his chest from the lightning strike was still emitting smoke. Scattered across the surrounding earth was a circle of his clones' remains. More than 10 others, missing arms or legs, were attempting to staunch their own bleeding. The scene was as gruesome as a slaughterhouse. Lin Yi stepped forward quickly, withdrew a specialized jade box, carefully harvested the 3 golden core fruits from the tree, and applied a sealing talisman. What about this tree and the beast's carcass? Ayer asked, clutching his bleeding ribs. Pack it up and take it with us, Lin Yi said concisely. Adan nodded, spat out a mouthful of blood-tinged saliva. He gripped the trunk with both hands and let out a low roar, causing the very earth to tremble. The spirit root tree, having grown for untold years, was uprooted along with a massive clod of earth beneath it. The system initiated a total retrieval. Whoosh, a flash of white light erupted. Whether it was the living, the disabled, the corpses of the frenzied mad lions, or the uprooted fruit trees, all were pulled in by Adai. They vanished from the spot instantly, leaving behind only a chaotic battlefield and an exposed dry well. Within the subworld, I gazed upon the mountain of spoils before me, nodding in satisfaction. First I planted the tree, then I began to prepare the meat for the brothers to share. The brothers who were injured finished their meal and entered meditation to recover. We shall meet again tomorrow. Adai dug a pit in the area where the spiritual energy was most dense and planted the golden fruit tree. Although it had been removed from its original habitat, the spiritual energy within this subworld was sufficient to sustain its life. Furthermore, the Manual of Eternal Life left behind by the Elder contained secret techniques to accelerate the growth of spiritual plants. In the future, this would be my most reliable source of wealth. While Ayer prepared the fire to stew the next batch of meat, it was time for me to attend to more pressing matters. I sat cross-legged on the ground. Before me was the system interface. Now that I possessed the golden fruit tree, my only remaining weaknesses were my cultivation realm and my techniques. Although all my clones had reached the peak of the chi refining stage, and some had even reluctantly touched upon the foundation establishment stage, it was only through the pileup of resources. To truly form a high-quality golden core, or perhaps the legendary perfect golden core, relying on fruit alone was insufficient. I required a top-tier cultivation manual, system exchange for clone number 972. I took advantage of the fact that the spirit stones contributed by the Great Elder were still abundant, and added those who had not yet been revived, rounding them up to an impressive number. A dense, brilliant white light filled the subworld as over 900 clones of varying appearances emerged from the void. Looking at these clones, I felt the system gradually nearing perfection. After all, previous clones were like the walking dead. I even had to manually shape their appearances myself. Upgrade all of them to the perfect early stage of foundation establishment. This was a massive undertaking. A system upgrade is not a simple matter of addition and subtraction. It requires the consumption of vast quantities of resources. Fortunately, I had previously mined all the spirit stone deposits, and the Elder's personal savings were quite substantial. A total expenditure of 350,000 spirit stones confirmed the action? My hand trembled. That was 350,000. Just moments ago, I was a millionaire. With a single press of my finger, I was nearly back to square one. Confirmation was given, and as the command was executed, the spiritual energy within the subworld seemed to boil over. Countless rays of golden light descended. This was the power of the system's laws, bestowing enlightenment directly upon them. The aura of over 900 clones began to surge violently. First level of chi refining, fifth level of chi refining perfection, and finally foundation establishment. The spectacle was so magnificent it was breathtaking. Over 900 foundation establishment cultivators stood together, their combined pressure radiating outward. I fear even a golden core expert would be forced to take a detour upon witnessing such a sight. However, as I gazed at the system interface, watching my balance of 3.08 million spirit stones dwindle to 1.08 million for the sake of the small world, and now, because of these clones, it had plummeted to a mere 630,000, I truly felt my heart bleeding. I looked up at the sky, a sense of grim sorrow washing over me. In my past life, I toiled like an ox for mere pennies. In this life, even with a cultivation system, am I still destined to slave away for spirit stones? There is never enough to spend, yet despite my grievances, the work must go on. I withdrew 3 jade slips from my robes. One was the withered wood longevity technique from the Curse Weaver, one was the incomplete version of the evergreen technique that Asan obtained upon joining the sect, and the last was the 5 elements origin return art purchased from the Myriad Treasures Pavilion. Looking at this evergreen technique, I couldn't help but curse their stinginess. Asan has been in the sect for so long, yet they haven't issued a new cultivation manual. If not for the system, I fear I wouldn't have even entered the threshold of chi refining by now. But something is better than nothing. These 3 manuals. One leans toward health preservation and longevity, possessing strong defense but lacking in offensive power. One is balanced and orthodox, providing a firm foundation but progressing at a snail's pace. The final manual has no major flaws. Yet it is a pity that it can only be cultivated up to the 7th level of foundation establishment. None of them are top tier, but who said one must strictly follow the paths everyone else is already gorging themselves on? I stood up, my voice echoing throughout the small world. Not enough to share, one of the clones shouted. I felt a vein throb on my forehead. They were too impatient. With over 900 people trying to eat a single beast, it would be a miracle if there were enough for everyone. Forget it, I don't mind, so if you do, that is your own concern. All of you, listen to my command. All the foundation establishment clones looked toward me in unison. Their movements were perfectly synchronized. The scene was solemn and imposing. Excluding those who have yet to be revived, you all have but one mission now. I shared the contents of the 3 jade slips into the mind of each clone through the system. Combining these three cultivation techniques, each clone began to deduce new possibilities for me. I desire a new technique capable of forging a perfect golden core balanced in offense, defense, and speed. The wisdom of a single person is limited, but nearly 1,000 foundation establishment cultivators connecting their minds day and night without rest. What might they achieve by calculating together? This is my true cheat code. The first group acts as a supercomputer responsible for deconstructing the spiritual power circulation of the withered wood longevity technique. The second group is tasked with optimizing the spiritual energy absorption speed of the evergreen manual. They simulate spiritual power conflicts to search for the perfect point of fusion. The rest of the clones focus their efforts on trial and error. Following my command, the clones immediately sat cross-legged in their places. In an instant, spiritual energy within the small world surged. Some clones sprouted bark on their skin, a sign of a cultivation error. Others suddenly vomited blood, indicating that their meridians were flowing in reverse. But immediately the path of failure was shared. The other clones instantly avoided the wrong route and continued the deduction. I sat at the center watching this scene, and finally a smile touched my lips. Once the technique is successful, combined with the 3 golden fruits, my path to the golden core will be unprecedented in history. But before that, I glanced through the perspective of Asan. That is the only nail I have left embedded in the Qingyun sect. Asan, it is time for you to take the stage and perform. At the gates of the Qingyun sect, the twilight was as red as blood, and several crows shrieked atop the archway. The guarding disciples were yawning when they suddenly saw a man covered in blood crawling up from the distant mountain path. He was indeed crawling. His clothes were in tatters, and one leg dragged behind him at a grotesquely broken angle. Every step he crawled left a horrifying trail of blood on the stone steps, yet his hand gripped the broken half of a sword, and he muttered something unintelligible. The guarding disciple took a closer look and was so frightened he nearly tumbled off the steps. It is Senior Brother Fansan. Quickly, notify the law enforcement hall. An incensed stick of time later, the main hall of the law enforcement hall felt suffocatingly oppressive. The inner sect elders, who usually held themselves in high regard, sat at the head of the hall with grim, dark expressions. In the center of the hall, Asan lay on a stretcher, his breathing weak. A pillmaster had bandaged him, leaving him looking like a mummy. Are you awake? The head of the law enforcement hall asked in a stern voice. The voice resonated throughout the grand. Atam suddenly convulsed as if jolted awake from a nightmare. Opening his eyes to witness his familiar surroundings, he did not show relief. Instead, he burst into bitter tears. His weeping was so desolate that it stirred the hearts of the sectmaster and the gathered great elders. Great elder, he is dead, Atam sobbed, struggling to roll off the stretcher to kowtow. The expression of absolute loyalty and grief on his face was enough to soften even the most cold-hearted law enforcement disciples. What is the meaning of this panic? Speak clearly. The sectmaster slammed his hand against the table. The great elder was at the great perfection of the foundation establishment stage and possessed sect-protective artifacts. How could he possibly perish in an outer ruin? Atam wiped away his tears and snot, trembling as he pulled a charred, foul-smelling piece of black fabric from his robes. It was a fragment of Chuim's garment, stained with dried black blood. It was an ambush, a complete and total ambush. Atam's eyes widened, his pupils filled with a lingering, visceral fear. We had barely entered the ruins when we were tracked by a band of bandits calling themselves the Takthian Bang. They were no ordinary rogue cultivators. They were well-trained, perfectly coordinated, and even possessed a bizarre type of formation. Takthian Bang? The elders exchanged glances. The name sounded like a gathering of rabble, yet in this world of cultivation where dragons and snakes dwell together, there is no shortage of reclusive, fanatical forces. Continue, the sectmaster commanded. The great elder stayed behind to hold the line, protecting worthless disciples like us. Atam recounted with tragic flair, beginning his performance. Derated, redundant, the gorge was filled with traps and toxic gas. Though the great elder valiantly slew 7 or 8 of them, the enemy was truly despicable. They used their own companions as shields and employed a war of attrition strategy to exhaust the great elder's spiritual energy. Atam continued, weaving a tragic tale that never actually took place. In the end, to prevent us from being captured and humiliated, the great elder did not hesitate to burn his life essence, desperately breaking through their encirclement. Amidst the flames, he shouted for me to carry the news back to the sect. The Qingyun sect must not be disgraced. Reaching the climax of his story, Tam slammed his head against the ground with such force that a heavy thud echoed, and blood began to trickle from his forehead. This incompetent disciple could only watch in despair as the great elder was pierced by 1,000 arrows. His body, those beasts reduced his body to ash, leaving me with only this scrap of his robe. The great hall fell into a deathly silence, though the story seemed perhaps too perfect. Given Chu Yim's hot-tempered and overprotective nature toward his disciples, it was barely enough to provide a plausible explanation. More importantly, the cloth scrap that Atam brought back indeed bore the distinctive spiritual energy fluctuations of Chu Yim. It was the aura of death that lingers only after one burns their own essence blood. With the person dead, there would be no witness to uncover the truth. The head of the law enforcement hall frowned in deep thought. In reality, the truth of the matter was of little consequence to the sect compared to its reputation. If it were to spread that the great elder of the Qingyun sect was killed by a victim while attempting to commit murder and robbery within the ruins, then what face would the Qingyun sect have left? Who would dare to seek shelter under our banner in the future? However, if it were framed as him perishing together with an evil force to protect his disciples, that would be an entirely different story. This was to be a tragic shroud of deception. It seems Junior Brother Chu truly sacrificed himself for the sake of the sect. After a long silence, an inner sect elder sighed and set the conclusion in stone. The Exploding Heavens faction, a fine Exploding Heavens faction indeed. Murderous intent flickered in the eyes of the law enforcement hall head. Since the narrative was settled, this vendetta had to be pursued, if only to maintain appearances. Issue an order to place a bounty on the remnants of the Exploding Heavens faction. Anyone who provides information shall be rewarded with 1,000 spirit stones. With the administrative matter settled, everyone's gaze shifted toward the sole survivor. That this lad Atam managed to escape from that Shura field was due in part to luck. Yet such loyalty is even more precious. With the outer sect in a state of unrest, it is the perfect time to establish a role model. Atam, step forward. Atam replied weakly. You have brought back the relics of the Great Elder and delivered his final message. Though your cultivation base is meager, your loyalty is commendable. The law enforcement hall head pondered for a moment before tossing out a command token. It was a bronze token, with the character for enforcement engraved upon it. The Great Elder has passed. The Outer Sect cannot remain without leadership for even a single day. You are familiar with the affairs of the Outer Sect, so you shall temporarily assume the position of Outer Sect Warden. You will take over the procurement of supplies, a duty previously overseen by the Great Elder. The surrounding disciples gasped in shock. Procurement. That was the most lucrative position in the entire Outer Sect. Previously, Chuyum held it with an iron grip, refusing to let even the inner sect elders intervene, yet now it had fallen into the hands of an unknown lad. This disciple is of meager talent and limited learning. Atam feigned fear but was cut off. If it is given to you, then accept it. The hall head spoke with a hint of impatience. This is the reward for your loyalty. Furthermore, go to the treasury and claim 500 spirit stones. Tend to your wounds well and do not let the prestige of the sect be tarnished. Yes, I will serve the sect with my life, and I shall have no regrets even in death. Atam was trembling with agitation. His hand shook as he accepted the command medallion. Only I knew that his agitation was actually suppressed laughter, so intense he was nearly convulsing. As night fell, Atam was escorted back to his quarters by several Outer Sect disciples, all showing him great deference. The moment the door closed, the moaning Atam sat bolt upright. The look of agony vanished from his face, replaced by a cunning grin. Boss, how many points would you rate this performance in this small world? I looked at the screen and gave a thumbs up. 99 points. I'm withholding 1 point so you don't become arrogant. Now get to work, as you command. Atam did not bother to heal his injuries, instead reaching for the deacon's medallion he had just received. With Chuyan dead, the mess he left behind was truly a mountain of gold. That night, despite his heavy injuries, Atam secretly met with several of Chuyan's former associates. These included the largest herb merchant in Qingshan town, a black market smuggler, and several leaders of rogue cultivators who had done Chuyan's dirty work. Inside a gloomy secret chamber, the candlelight flickered weakly. Elder Chu is no more. And what of our previous ledgers? A rogue cultivator with a fleshy brutish face toyed with a dagger, casting an unkind glare at Atam. The implication was clear. With the man dead, the debt was void, and they had no intention of continuing their previous tribute payments. Atam sat in the presiding chair, calmly taking a sip of tea. He said nothing further, merely tapping his finger lightly against the table. Outside the door, a series of dull thuds echoed, followed by 2 beaten, bruised henchmen being tossed into the room, the very men who had been guarding the entrance. A hulking figure stepped forth from the shadows, wielding a massive hammer. It was Ada, whom I had temporarily assigned to him. Now let us recalculate the ledgers. Atam set his teacup down and offered a gentle, benevolent smile. Elder Chu is a matter of the past. From now on, the underground affairs of the Outer Sect fall under my, Phantam's jurisdiction. The rules remain unchanged. However, I shall only take 70%. The remaining 30% is for you gentlemen to enjoy as tea money. A classic strategy, the stick and the carrot. The leader looked at his subordinates on the floor and the blood-stained hammer. He swallowed hard, his expression instantly shifting into a wide, ingratiating smile. Deacon Fan is truly generous. From this day forth, we shall follow Deacon Fan's lead. That night, the underground network of the Qingyun sect's Outer Sect had quietly completed its transition of power. 3 days later, from within the small world, I watched the numbers on the system interface soar, a wide grin spreading across my face. My balance, which had plummeted due to the repairs of the small world and the upgrade of my avatar, had surged. With the private funds seized from Chuyam's black market operations combined with the immense profits Atom generated by exploiting mutant flora to acquire supplies, our current balance stands at 850 low-grade spirit stones. And this has only taken 3 days. Truly, nothing compares to the wealth of a monopoly. The path of open plunder cannot compete with the profit of commerce. I sighed, casually tossing a spirit fruit ripened just moments ago into my mouth. Yet I was not satisfied. While money was abundant and my strength temporarily stabilized thanks to my legion of clones, the true foundation, the profound cultivation techniques, esoteric formations, and the deeper secrets of this world cannot be purchased with mere wealth. Such treasures are sequestered in the most core locations of the sect. My gaze drifted toward the spot marked with an X on the map. Did you locate Atam? Boss, he just acquired a batch of spiritual herbs at an incredible price and is currently counting his spirit stones. Adam's voice rang out, sounding remarkably cheerful. Stop counting. We have a major task tonight, I said, rising to my feet. Behind me, the mist swirled as 999 clones, all at the 7th level of the Foundation establishment stage, stood in perfect formation. After days of cultivation and deduction, while they had yet to manifest the legendary golden core, their aura had become increasingly refined and concentrated. In particular, each of them wore a standard-issue spatial bag scavenged from the late Elder Chu's collection, making them look like a pack of starving wolves prepared for a long journey. Boss, are we really going through with this? Autumn's voice trembled slightly, a mix of excitement and trepidation clear in his tone. I offered a cold smile. The Qingyun sect has bestowed such a high position upon you. If we do not return the favor, would we not be unworthy of their cultivation? Every manual in the scripture pavilion, every jade slip on the shelves. I want them all. Even the scrap paper used to level a wobbly table. Tonight we shall strip the Qingyun sect bare. I've aimed our operation, the deacon's residence clearance. The night at Qingyun sect was tranquil and beautiful, with patrolling disciples idling as they gambled, just as they did every night. They were oblivious to the fact that a swarm of locusts known as the Zhadian gang had already begun its descent. The night was as dark as ink, and the scripture pavilion stood silently under the moonlight, the most vital stronghold of the sect. For years, this location had been guarded by 3 elders at the 7th level of Foundation establishment, reinforced by 2 layers of defensive formation so potent that even an ordinary insect attempting to enter would be shredded by the array. But what if the intruder is one of their own? Uncle Zhang, Uncle Li, you haven't rested yet? Adam approached the elders guarding the hall, carrying 2 jars of fine wine he had brought up from the mountain, his face beaming with a friendly smile. This is rare vintage I found among Elder Chu's possessions. I brought it to offer as a gesture of respect to warm you both. The 2 elders were also quite fond of their wine, and with Atam now a renowned figure in the Outer Sect, holding actual authority, there was no one who would not show him some level of respect. You have my thanks, Deacon Fan. The moment the 2 men tilted their heads back to drain the wine jars, the smile on Atam's face vanished instantly. His fingers formed a seal behind his back. sending out a subtle ripple of spiritual energy that silently severed the warning formations within the technique hall. At the same time, within the small world, I stared at the massive green light pulsating on the screen and swung my arm with force. Everyone, hear my command. Our target is the technique hall. Remember our motto. Take everything, seize everything, clear everything. The space surrounding the technique hall suddenly twisted violently. It was not one or two fractures, but thousands of spatial tears erupting simultaneously. No hesitation, no reconnaissance. 999 hulking figures clad in night-walking robes, their faces hidden behind demonic masks. They appeared in an instant, every single one of them at the perfection stage of foundation establishment. 999 waves of formidable aura converged, instantly crushing the hall-guarding elders who had just prepared to strike. The two men, who had barely begun to unleash their poison, had their expressions darken under this terrifying pressure. They could not even muster the will to retaliate. Each intruder wore a mask with a mocking grin, carrying the iconic sack of their trade, sealing off all four directions, allowing entry but no escape. Two teams coordinated the extraction with assembly line precision. Movements had to be swift and their composure absolute. The rest of you, follow me into the hall. Whether it be jade slips, ancient texts, or the paintings hanging upon the walls, even the table legs, rip them all out for me. The grand doors were kicked open with ruthless force. This was not mere looting, this was a systematic demolition. The technique hall, once solemn and majestic, was reduced to a chaotic marketplace in the blink of an eye. Ada strode forward with heavy steps to a row of bookshelves, not bothering to check if they held the blazing fire sword technique or the cold frost palm. He gripped them tight, uprooting both the shelves and the books entirely, and tossed them backward where clones waited to catch them, stuffing them directly into spatial bags. Once the spatial bags were full, everything was transferred into the largest spatial ring. On the other side, seeing that the night luminescent pearl could not be pried loose, they simply chopped off the entire pillar and took it with them. That cushion is woven from enlightenment grass, do not overlook it. Within half a cup of tea, the first floor had been completely scoured. Even the paper on the windows was scraped away. Ada looked around and noticed the blue tiles on the floor emitting a faint glow. They were inlaid with low-grade spiritual material, azure spirit stones, which is conducive to calming the spirit and stilling the breath. The Ayer brothers shouted at the top of their lungs, their voices echoing through the empty grand hall. The boss has spoken. We are to buy a house in the heavenly court. These floor tiles don't look half bad, pry them up for me. Immediately, the clattering sound of tiles being pried loose resonated throughout the heavens. A group of cultivators, instead of seeking the great Tao or contending for Dharma treasures, were using flying swords to dismantle the floor tiles. If the ancestral founders of the Immortal path were to witness such a scene, they would surely spin in their coffins. What madman dare to trespass upon my king insect? Just as the second floor was about to be cleared out, a thunderous roar finally erupted from the distance. Several streaks of light approached rapidly, led by none other than the King Yun sect master. Behind him followed the head of the law enforcement hall and several inner sect peak masters. Sensing the strange and towering aura emanating from the technique hall, their hearts burned with anxiety for the nearly 1,000 foundation establishment disciples. Which top-tier sect dares to openly wage war against the Qingyun sect? Block them, don't let them retreat. Ayer twitched his ears, tucked the final tile into his belt, and let out a sharp resonant whistle, signaling a retreat from the grand hall. The busy clones, showing no intention to engage in combat, even those two who were clutching half of a pillar, flashed with white light and vanished from the spot. In an instant, the once crowded hall was utterly desolate, leaving only bare walls, uneven ground, and empty doorframes. However, two figures still remained in the courtyard. Ada did not leave. He stood shirtless, his muscles rippling, wearing a fierce, malevolent Hanya mask, blocking the gate alone with a massive mace in his hand. Meanwhile, Asan was clutching Ada's thigh tightly, his face covered in blood, wailing wretchedly as if he had just been struck by foul blood. If you want to leave, you must first return the ancestors' treasures. Get lost, you insects. Ada, working in perfect coordination, delivered a heavy kick to Asan's chest. Asan let out a shriek as he was sent flying backward, slamming into the wall and spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. Yet he immediately lunged forward like a mad dog, sinking his teeth into Ada's ankle, shouting, "Men, the thieves are about to escape." This tragic spectacle-filled scene happened to fall into the eyes of the arriving sectmaster. "You insolent brats!" The sectmaster was so enraged that his hair stood on end, his late-stage goal. A massive hand, manifested from spiritual energy, descended from the heavens, striking down with overwhelming force. A trace of disdain flashed in Adai's eyes. He made no attempt to dodge, instead reversing the flow of his blood essence as his body instantly swelled and turned a deep bruised purple red. "Long live the blood-hidden sect," he roared, launching himself directly at the gargantuan hand. The violent explosion shook the cultivation pavilion, which was already on the verge of collapse, especially now that its structural pillars were gone. Adai had detonated his own core. The self-destruction of a cultivator at the perfection of the foundation establishment stage carries a power equivalent to a full-force strike from an early-stage golden core expert. Amidst the swirling dust and debris, the sectmaster swept his sleeves, dispersing the smoke. His complexion turned ghastly pale. Beyond a massive crater and scattered remains on the ground, nothing else remained, not even a chance for the soul to escape. Cough, cough, sectmaster. From the corner of the wreckage, Asan crawled out weakly, his hand tightly clutching a token that Adai had inadvertently dropped before his detonation. That was something I had intentionally forged, with a blood-colored skull carved upon it. "Fan San, how are you faring?" The head of the law enforcement hall rushed forward to support Asan. Seeing the wretched state of this child, an indescribable sense of guilt welled up in his heart. It was just like the last time the Grand Elder perished. It was this boy who risked his life to bring back the news. This time when the cultivation pavilion was robbed, it was again him who risked his life to stall the thief. What a virtuous child. This disciple is useless. Asan tremblingly raised the token. "I only managed to retrieve this. Everything else is gone." Gazing at the hollowed-out main hall, where even the floor tiles had been pried up clean, the sectmaster felt his vision darken as a metallic sweet taste rose in his throat. For a 1,000-year foundation to be reduced to this, how desperate and impoverished must these thieves be to resort to prying up the floor tiles? The sectmaster stared at the token, grinding his teeth, and hissed these three words through them. "Blood-hidden sect. If I do not avenge this insult, I am no longer fit to lead the Qingyun sect." Early the next morning, at the main hall of the Qingyun sect, the atmosphere was even more oppressive than when the news of the pavilion's plundering first broke. and though the incident had been sealed off, it could no longer be contained. To pacify the hearts of the disciples and set an example, the sect had to take action. A San was once again carried into the main hall. Fan San, the sect master's voice sounded slightly hoarse, appearing to have aged 10 years in just a single night. You are a disciple present here. The events of last night have brought shame upon the entire sect. Only your heart is as pure and bright as the sun and the moon. The sect master took a deep breath, his gaze sweeping across the entire assembly. After deliberation among the elders, it is decided that starting this month, Fan San shall be promoted to Deputy Hall Master of the Mission Hall, granted the debut of an intersect elder, and awarded 400,000 low-grade spirit stones along with an assortment of medicinal pills. No one in the world dared to object. Although a Deputy Hall Master at the early stage of Foundation establishment seemed somewhat unreasonable, at this moment no one dared to voice a protest, for he had, after all, traded his own life to earn this position. Asan lay on the stretcher, tears welling in his eyes as he thanked the sect master, swearing he would dedicate himself fully to the sect, while internally he was brimming with joy. The mission hall was the very place where sect missions were issued and resources distributed. This was no different than releasing a mouse into a grain silo. At the same time, in the Heaven Court minor world, I sat upon a throne constructed of books, holding a copy of the Qingyun secret records and reading it with great focus. All around me, my clones were busily working to pave the plaza of the Qingyun sect with stone tiles. The bookshelves that had been plundered were neatly arranged within the makeshift wooden dwelling. Air was directing several others as they hung the signboard, stripped from the entrance of the scripture hall above the latrine. Boss, the inventory is complete. Ling Yi approached, holding an abacus. 32 volumes of profound grade manuals, 400 volumes of yellow grade manuals, plus countless miscellaneous techniques, pill formulas, and formation diagrams. Although there are no high-end items of earth grade or above, they are more than sufficient to serve as the foundational curriculum for our Heaven Court. Not bad at all. I closed the book, a golden light flashing within my eyes. With these manuals combined with the system's powerful deductive capabilities, those 1,000 clones will soon be more than just a suicide squad relying on self-detonation. Yet having manuals alone is not enough. I stood up, my gaze seeming to pierce through the mists of the minor world, looking toward the distant main peak of the Qingyun sect. Asan had just sent word that he had discovered several interesting things within the ledgers of the mission hall. To prepare for the threat of the so-called blood-hidden sect, the Qingyun sect is recalling resources from secret outposts back to their headquarters. Furthermore, a copy of the restriction map for the sect's treasury appears to be hidden in a secret compartment within the mission hall. The corners of my mouth curled into a smile. The books have been secured, but the funds are still insufficient. Tell Asan to focus on recovering from his injuries for now. Once he has settled into his role as Deputy Hall Master, he must look out for the sect. Next time, we shall assist them in safeguarding their treasury. The Heaven Court minor world, once a desolate and gloomy wasteland, was now engulfed by a sea of literature. Books, scrolls, rubbings, and jade slips brought back from the Qingyun sect's scripture hall were piled into small mountains. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and ink, layered with an indescribable aura of illicit gains. I sat atop the highest mound of books, casually flipping through a thread-bound volume titled General History of the Continent. My brow furrowed deeper with every passing moment. Below 99 burly figures sat cross-legged. Each held a book. Some furrowed their brows in concentration, while others tugged at their hair in frustration, as if they wished to devour the knowledge within the pages whole. There were even those, like Adai, who had covered their faces with their books and were snoring loudly. Everyone, wake up! I rolled up the book in my hand and struck Adai on the head with a sharp thud. Adai startled awake, wiping away his drool. Boss, is it time to eat? Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. I pointed at the pile of books on the ground, feeling a mix of frustration and high expectations. This is knowledge. This is power. Even though we plundered these, only by internalizing them can they truly become our own. All hear my command. Clones stood up in perfect unison, their backs straight. Though their style was rugged, their discipline was impeccable. For the next 5 days, no one is to work, and certainly no one is to sleep. I held up 5 fingers. I want you to force every single character here into your minds. We are not merely to be bandits, we shall be civilized bandits. But boss, this task is far too difficult. Air looked distressed, holding a book titled Fundamentals of Formation Arrays. The twisted diagrams in here, when separated, I can recognize, but when combined, they are more inscrutable than heavenly scriptures. If you do not understand it, then memorize it. With 99 minds linked together, even stone can be carved into art. I am not joking, this is the terrifying nature of the mental resonance clone system. If one person does not understand, 100 people will discuss it until it is solved. When nearly 1,000 consciousnesses process information simultaneously, this computational power is enough to crush any genius. I saw mystical patterns manifesting upon the golden core, 2 9 paths in succession. Immediately after, the entire minor world trembled as the 10th pattern was carved into the core with the power of primordial chaos. The perfect golden core was formed, and an indescribable wave of energy rippled out from the center. The borders of the minor world began to expand frantically. A space that was once only 10 miles wide expanded to 20 miles in the blink of an eye. The arid ground cracked open and crystal-clear spiritual springs erupted, gathering into a river. Deep beneath the earth, a small spiritual vein began to condense, emitting an alluring pulse of spiritual energy. The concentration of spiritual energy surged instantly, tripling and quadrupling compared to the outside world, finally settling at 10 times the density. I took a deep breath, feeling my entire body invigorated when the faint voice of the little demoness echoed, "Look at your balance." Stunned, I opened the control panel. My current balance was 4.5 million low-grade spirit stones. Damn it, I leaped to my feet. Where did my 20 million go? In the blink of an eye, over 20 million had vanished. Isn't it supposed to be that you get what you pay for? The little demoness with a sharp tongue drifted a bit further away. 900 Foundation Establishment Perfection Cultivators. Do you think they are just cabals of cabbage? And there is the expansion of the small world, the formation of spirit veins, that is stealing the very creation of heaven and earth. If this spirit vein were left in the outside world, even a first-rate sect would fight until their heads were split and they were clutching their chests, feeling their hearts bleeding. All that hard work spent plundering for half a year, and in an instant we are back to square one with 4.5 million. It sounds like a lot, but with the nature of this system, I fear it won't even cause a ripple. Greedy merchant, you are surely a greedy merchant, I gritted my teeth. Master, broaden your horizons. The little demoness pointed to the demon spy kneeling on the ground. We are now a force to be reckoned with. Though we have no money, does this not mean we have a walking treasury before us? I followed the direction of her finger. The spy was trembling violently, staring at the 10,000 burly men at the Foundation establishment stage surrounding him, feeling as though he had fallen into the lair of giants. That's right, I drew a deep breath, my gaze sharpening. If we are out of money, then we shall plunder. Since the demon realm dared to provoke me, do not blame me for raiding their lairs and implementing a policy of total confiscation. I turned my head to look at Air and issued the order. Apart from the essential alchemy and artifact refining teams, have everyone assemble. This time we will no longer pretend to be righteous gentlemen. Within a radius of 100,000 miles, every stronghold of the evil and demonic cultivators shall be thoroughly razed. That is the order. Even a dog passing by must leave behind 2 spirit stones for me. We must gather enough travel expenses to enter the demon realm as wealthy patrons. Aer shouldered his great blade and beamed. Very well, boss. We brothers love nothing more than this act of delivering justice on behalf of heaven. 10,000 men cheered within the small world. A destructive assault aimed at the dark forces in the region began from this very moment. Meanwhile, that old ancestor of the Kingyun sect was still arduously fortifying his defensive lines. Little did they know that the true danger was never the demons that had yet to descend, but rather this desperate marauding heavenly court gang. Within a 500-mile radius outside the Qingyun sect, the Black Wind stronghold reigned as an undisputed hegemon. The stronghold master was a formidable character at the half-step golden core stage, wielding a ghost-head saber said to be stained with the blood of thousands. It was often said that only they were the ones to plunder others. Even the patrol squads of the Qingyun sect would take a detour upon encountering them. Yet today the main gates of the Black Wind stronghold had been kicked to pieces, not shattered by mystical arts but pulverized under the weight of 1,000 pairs of boots. The bandits were lined up, men on the left, women on the right, and those of ambiguous gender in the middle. Aer carried his iconic top-grade magical broadsword, sitting insolently upon the stronghold master's throne. The smiling mask on his face appeared all the more chilling under the flickering torchlight. Below, 1,000 burly men in black, all wearing masks, were diligently scouring the bandits' lair like a swarm of industrious bees. The Black Wind stronghold master knelt on the ground, his face bruised and swollen, his renowned ghost-head saber already snapped into 3 fragments, as he trembled, staring at these uninvited guests. Respected heroes, surely there is some misunderstanding. Our stronghold has powerful backers. If we can resolve this, that would be for the best. Ignoring the plea, Aer crossed his legs and pulled something from his robe. Enough nonsense. Hand over the key to the treasury. And furthermore, I heard the hairpin worn by your 7th wife is a magical artifact. Take it off. Yes. The stronghold master's heart bled. That was a token of their betrothal, but even if it were a gold-plated urn of his own mother's ashes, he would pry it loose for them. Aer waved his hand, and 2 clones immediately lunged forward, skillfully stripping the stronghold master of his belongings, leaving not even his undergarments behind. Not far away, another clone pinned down the spirit hound guarding the gate, wielding shears and cutting frantically, shaving every bit of spirit fur from the beast's body. The boss said that even a dog passing by must leave behind its fur to be stuffed into the storage bag, he said, patting the spirit hound, which had begun to question its very existence as a dog. For the next half-month, scenes like this played out crazily within a 100,000-mile radius of the Qingyun sect. Whether they were bandits ruling their mountains, evil cultivators hiding in dark caves, or cultivation families known for preying on the weak, all faced devastating attacks. Orthodox forces had it slightly better. As long as they obediently paid tribute, this heavenly court tax bureau would not harm their lives, at most prying away a few tiles from their floors. But for those evil factions with blood-stained hands, it was a true apocalypse. They were uprooted completely, their bodies destroyed, their souls obliterated, their vaults emptied, and even their houses dismantled for firewood. In an instant, the entire 100,000-mile region was in a state of constant terror, and rumors even spread of a mysterious army descending from the heavens. Once those masked warriors were sighted, even the high and mighty Golden Core ancestors of the day would be struck with fear, packing up their entire households to flee. Everyone, that is, except for the nascent soul-old monsters. Who could witness this scene without shuddering, or seeing 1,000 Foundation establishment cultivators charging forward with their lives on the line? Even if your body were forged from copper and iron, you would surely be melted down by their sheer numbers. While the world outside had descended into utter chaos, the Heavenly Court's subdimension told a completely different story. Here the seasons were eternal spring, and the spiritual energy was so dense it refused to dissipate. I lay within the courtyard of the simplified Heavenly Palace, my entire body submerged in a massive pool of spiritual spring water. It was so comfortable that I could only lament the fact that the so-called Heavenly Palace was nothing more than a simple 3-section quadrangle courtyard. Though I had just profited immensely, this subdimension and my own clones were bottomless pits of consumption. One must save where one can, this is the essence of life. I reached to the side of the pool, picked up a freshly plucked spirit fruit, and took a bite. All the menial and exhausting labor was handled by my clones. My clones handled the cultivation, and my clones stood at the vanguard of every battle. As the main body, I only needed to enjoy the fruits of victory and guide the grand direction of our path. I would not trade this life, not even to be a celestial immortal. I fell into a sleep so deep it felt as though the heavens and earth had gone dark. By the time I opened my eyes again, half a month had already passed. Sleeping in the spirit spring has its distinct advantages. Not only does one's skin remain unwrinkled, but the spiritual power circulates automatically even in dreams, refining the body and rendering it increasingly pure. I stretched, climbed out of the pool, donned a dry blue robe, and strolled leisurely toward the alchemy district. I recalled that before my seclusion, I had ordered my 3 clones to exhaust all efforts in mastering the 3 paths of alchemy, formation, and weaponry to prepare for our next grand operation. As I approached the alchemy district, a pungent aroma of medicinal herbs mixed with a scent of burnt rice assaulted my senses. Who on earth is cooking? I turned around in bewilderment. The scene before me almost made me think I had transmigrated once again. Before me, arranged neatly across the vast plaza, were 100 large iron pots. Indeed, they were exactly the type of black iron pots used in rural villages for stir-frying vegetables. Beneath them, fueled by spiritual coal gathered from who knows where, The flames roared toward the sky, and bustling before the pots were 100 clones wearing tall white chef hats and double-breasted kitchen uniforms. In their hands they held neither spirit whisks nor alchemy techniques, but long-handled iron spatulas, stirring rapidly as they added alchemical herbs. A clone who appeared to be the commander shouted, and the 100 clones simultaneously slammed the lids onto the pots. The lids, resembling those of pressure cookers, were pressed down firmly by violent surges of spiritual energy. The sound of 100 steam valves hissing and spinning. A moment later, 100 pot lids were lifted simultaneously. Amidst the rising white smoke, each pot contained over 10 round, plump medicinal pills, all of which were of the profound grade mid-tier. Damn it, I rubbed my eyes in disbelief. I simply cannot believe whether this is alchemy or simply stir-frying peanuts. I went over to the nearby artifact refining and array formation zones to investigate. Heavens, the artifact refining zone was even more preposterous. Dozens of clones were lined up in a single row. Before them lay a massive conveyor belt, crafted from the tendons of some unknown beast. The first person placed a block of iron down, the second struck it with a heavy hammer, the third carved runes, and the fourth tempered the metal. This was clearly an assembly line factory. Over in the array formation zone, large iron golems resembling robots sat at tables, their hands wielding carving knives, frantically etching empty array boards. Meanwhile, the array master sat leisurely nearby drinking tea, as one only needed to insert spirit stones into the golems' backs for them to work tirelessly. "Boss, you are awake?" The voice of Ada sounded from behind me. I turned around and pointed at the chaotic scene before me, the corner of my mouth twitching. "Who told you to do it this way?" "Ayer, sir." Ada scratched his head. Data omitted for flow. He claimed that since the essence of alchemy is fusion and refinement, a pot with a high heat-resistant surface area, coupled with pressure cooker mechanics to retain medicinal potency, would yield higher efficiency than the current assembly line, provided the flames were well controlled. He called this the wisdom of the revolution. Each person is only responsible for one task, minimizing errors while allowing for mass production. I was left stunned, pulling aside a clone wearing spectacles who was holding a caliper to measure a flying sword. "Where did you get those glasses?" Ayer made them, saying one must look refined. Since we are conducting research, we must have the appearance of researchers. The clone pushed the spectacles up the bridge of his nose, his expression grave. "Eldest brother, according to my calculations, the aerodynamic shape of this flying sword needs optimization. The wind resistance is far too high." I was so incensed I couldn't help but laugh. "You all share the same memories, why not just view them directly from Ayer's mind? Why must you wait for him to teach you?" The clone pouted indignantly. "That rascal Ayer is far too cunning. He has restricted access to that particular portion of his memory. It insisted on the importance of intellectual property rights. If I wanted to learn, I had to provide food. It left me speechless, staring at the heavens. Although these are all clones, the system has imbued each with a different personality. Gathering them all in one place is no different than being surrounded by a group of eccentric madmen. Very well, although they are somewhat of an eyesore, their efficiency is truly beyond reproach." I casually grabbed a handful of rejuvenation elixirs I had just refined. I popped them into my mouth as if they were nothing more than candy. "How far have you progressed with the deduction of the cultivation manual?" Upon hearing this, the expressions of the several spectacled clones standing nearby darkened instantly. "Big brother, we are stuck." "Stuck where?" "At the golden core perfection stage." The clone sighed, pointing toward the mountain of ancient scrolls piled up in the distance. "The manuals we have plundered are numerous, but the vast majority are of inferior quality. As for the secret of how to shatter the core and form the nascent soul, a process tied to the sublimation of the soul, the available data is pathetically scarce." At this moment, the little demoness appeared from out of nowhere, still clutching a piece of demonic crystal she had half gnawed away. "Stop wasting your efforts in vain." She hovered in midair, swinging her small legs back and forth. "The inheritance of this world has suffered too severe a fracture. The great war between immortals and demons has stripped away everything of value. What remains is nothing more than broken fragments. Based on your current methods of deduction, even if you were to force a breakthrough to form a nascent soul, it would only be a pseudo-soul. That is precisely the path of the loose immortal that people so often speak of. Eventually, every subsequent heavenly tribulation will be 10 times stronger than the last. Sooner or later, you will be reduced to ashes." I furrowed my brow. "A pseudo-soul? What I seek is the path to supreme dominance, not to become an old relic destined to live for only a few thousand years." "Are you saying we lack the data?" "You lack the core data regarding the soul-level transition." The little demoness swallowed the last bit of the demonic crystal. "This type of high-level information has long been lost among the righteous sects here. Conversely, the demon realm once plundered a significant amount of it. It has been preserved quite completely." I narrowed my eyes. "It seems that a journey to the demon realm is inevitable." I took a deep breath. "If the path is blocked, then I shall shatter the walls and carve my own way forward. A golden core at perfection is finally qualified to enter the demon realm. System, transfer Ling Yi over to me." The next instant, a white light flashed and Ling Yi appeared before me in her pristine white robes, her cool and refined temperament appearing after a brief moment of silence. The aura surrounding her had become even more refined and dense, much like a peerless sword still sheathed. "Big brother." Ling Yi bowed slightly. I wasted no words, immediately ordering all clones to cease whatever they were doing. Whether they were refining elixirs or occupied with other matters, they were to stop at once. Everyone sat in a meditative posture, their consciousnesses beginning to link. The entire small world immediately fell silent. Even the clones on the production lines dropped their tools and sat cross-legged on the spot. In that moment, the collective consciousness wove together into a massive interconnected web. Ling Yi entered the spirit pond. Without a second thought, she walked directly into the pool of liquid spiritual energy and sat down to cultivate. "I want you all to channel every bit of your insight and spiritual power toward Ling Yi. Even if we have to force it, we will stack this power until she reaches a true absolute limit." This was an incredibly extravagant method of cultivation. To use 10,000 foundation establishment cultivators at perfection as a foundation to nourish a single individual. In a flash, the winds and clouds in the small world shifted, and a vortex of spiritual energy, visible to the naked eye, formed above Ling Yi's head. It poured relentlessly into her body. After the span of one incense stick, a crisp cracking sound resonated from within Ling Yi's body, and her aura instantly shattered the thin barrier before her. She had stepped into the middle stage of the golden core realm. After 3 incense sticks, she reached the late stage of the golden core realm. The golden core, which was originally the size of a pigeon egg, had now swelled to the size of a fist. 9 distinct spirit patterns were clearly etched upon it, with a vague 10th line flickering faintly as the hours passed. A wave of pressure that caused the heavens and earth to tremble erupted from Ling Yi. It was not the aura of an ordinary golden core cultivator. That oppressive weight surpassed even that of a typical early-stage nascent soul cultivator, despite her being at the perfection of the golden core realm. Ling Yi slowly opened her eyes, in which the sun, moon, and stars seemed to revolve. Success. Watching the near-perfect undulations of Ling Yi's spiritual energy, my heart finally eased. With this level of combat power, she could face an old monster of the mid-nascent soul stage head-on. Little demoness, how does one? Forcing our way into the rift would undoubtedly lead to discovery by the powerful entities of the demon realm. The little demoness smiled slyly, pointing at the demon scout cast aside in the corner, whose face had turned ghastly pale with terror. Charging in recklessly is not an option, we must be tactical. Since that scout intends to open the rift to lead an army, we shall simply let him lead the way. Furthermore, the little demoness licked her lips. I can extract the primal demon blood within his body. Once refined by the system, it can create a clone for you with a pure demon realm lineage. By then, you will no longer be an intruder. You will be a long-lost royal descendant of the demon realm returning to claim your inheritance. As I looked at the scout, who was nearly frightened to death, a devilish smile crept across my face. An excellent plan, I said, while Ling Yi grabbed the captive by his collar. We will not hold back at Luohun Yuan this time. If we encounter male demons, we kill them for their essence blood. As for females, we shall judge the situation, but the priority is to open a path to the demon realm for me. Under the cover of darkness, the figures quietly departed the minor world, heading toward Luohun Yuan 800 miles away. A counter-invasion against the demon realm had officially begun. Luohun Yuan. This was a notorious forbidden zone in the southern region, shrouded in gray-black miasma year-round, with violent gales howling in its depths. An average cultivator falling into those winds would be flayed into white bone by the razor-sharp blades of air in less than half a quarter hour. Crouched behind a massive boulder by the abyss, my eyes were fixed on the churning mist below. Down there I lowered my voice and gave the cowering demon scout beside me a kick. The scout no longer possessed his former arrogance. His face was drained of color as he nodded frantically. Yes, that is correct. According to our appointment at noon today, all the associates hidden in the southern region will gather here. They will use a blood sacrifice array to weaken the seal and usher in the demon realm army. I looked up at the sky. Noon was approaching. A Ling Yi prepared to move. The miasma below suddenly churned violently as a dozen shadowy figures emerged, gathering on a relatively flat stone platform. These individuals were draped in black robes designed to isolate divine sense, swiftly carving a crimson formation script into the ground. The air filled with a thick, nauseating stench of fresh blood. Hurry! If we miss the hour and the demon commander holds us responsible, we will all have our souls extracted and refined. The leader in the black robe barked a command, grabbing several young boys and girls captured from the mortal realm. Just as they were about to draw blood, a faint sound echoed, interrupting the leader's actions as he looked down at the blade protruding through his chest, their eyes filled with bewilderment. Immediately after, the silence of the cliff was shattered. There were no unnecessary words, nor the classic prelude of "Who are you?" Nearly 10,000 Great Han Foundation establishment cultivators descended like a hailstorm, surging into the crowd with overwhelming density. This was my strategy. Total suppression. Even though there were 2 golden core early-stage cultivators among the dozen below, they could not create even a ripple before these 10,000 men who disregarded their own lives, and even their cries of agony were drowned out in the sea of people. After only 3 breaths, the stone platform returned to its state of stillness, with only a dozen corpses left on the ground stripped completely clean. Even the young boys and girls who had no idea what was happening were tossed into the safe zone by Li Yi. Clearing the area into the small world, I waved my hand and the corpses littering the ground vanished instantly. Inside the heavenly court small world, the little demoness paced around the dozen demon race corpses, holding an artifact resembling a syringe, drawing blood from them. The first scout knelt to the side, watching his companions' bodies wither into dried husks, terrified to the point of near collapse. Tut, the purity is not satisfactory. The little demoness grumbled, shaking the tube in her hand, which contained a small amount of viscous dark red liquid. The bloodlines of these low-level demon race members are far too impure. They are all just scrap. What about the leader? I pointed to the golden core early-stage corpse. That one is passable. It can barely be put to use. The little demoness pouted and plunged the needle in again, but quantity would eventually lead to a change in quality. These dozen, combined with the heart blood of the one still living, should be enough to forge a high-level clone. The survivor is also needed. The scout suddenly looked up, his eyes filled with despair. Rest assured, I do not want your life, only half a bottle of your essence blood. A moment later, the little demoness held a mass of blood the size of a fist, radiating a dark purple light. Within that blood, countless vengeful spirits seemed to be wailing, emitting an aura that was incredibly noble and overbearing. It has been refined. If we only create one clone, this bloodline concentration is sufficient to reach the imperial level of the demon race, which is what people commonly refer to as a royal bloodline. If we spread it out, they would all be mere grunts. I rubbed my chin, looking at the blood mass. 1 king and 4 soldiers. The remaining excess can create 4 ordinary demon race members, just enough to have people to run errands for me. The little demoness tapped her finger lightly, and the system interface glowed brilliantly, beginning the creation of the clones. Infusing the demonic bloodline template, reconstructing the physical form as the blood pool churned violently. With killing intent soaring to the heavens, a towering figure slowly rose from the depths of the blood pool. Standing over 2 meters tall, his bare torso was covered in bizarre purple-black demonic runes. His long hair, as vibrant as burning fire, flowed freely around him. 2 curved jet-black demonic horns protruded from his forehead. His eyes lacked the clear whites and pupils of a human. They were a blood-red hue, devoid of any emotion. His mere appearance exuded an aura of supreme dominance. The young demoness inquired. As I gazed upon this visually overwhelming avatar, an iconic image from my past life immediately flashed through my mind. Since he is destined to rule as a king in the demon realm, I shall call him Chong Lu. As for the remaining 4, I glanced at the 4 ordinary cunning demonic clones following behind. We shall deal with them later. Chong Lu, how do you feel? I attempted to take control of this vessel. The sensation was marvelous. The physical body was unimaginably powerful. Even without circulating spiritual energy, relying solely on raw muscular strength could shatter a low-grade magic artifact with a single punch, yet the interior felt hollow. The innate spiritual energy within this body moved with extreme sluggishness. It was clear the attributes were incompatible, which was rather troublesome. Possessing only the shell without a demonic source, I frowned. It felt like a Ferrari with no fuel. That is precisely why we must reach the demon realm. The young demoness pointed out that once there, absorbing and converting demonic energy would provide the necessary fuel. At the bottom of the abyss of lost souls, protected by the spatial barrier of the small world, I led my clones as if walking on flat ground. Before us lay a colossal black vortex, the surrounding space riddled with fissures, occasionally erupting with streaks of violet lightning. This was the rift of the demon realm seal. This seal was far too resilient, even I could not pass through it. I commanded Chonglu to reach out and touch the transparent barrier, only to be instantly repelled. "Pry it open for me," I commanded. 9,009 clones acted in unison. This was not an attack, but rather the systematic use of a formation to pry the barrier apart. It was akin to forcing open an elevator door. Countless Dharma seals acted as crowbars wedged into the gaps of the seal, while spiritual energy was poured out without restraint. A piercing, grating sound of friction echoed through the air. The once impenetrable seal, under the combined force of nearly 10,000 cultivators at the peak of the Foundation establishment stage, was torn open. Zhonglu's figure flickered, darting inside in the blink of an eye with his 4 subordinates in tow, after which I immediately commanded the clones to retreat. The seal slammed shut abruptly, casting those nearly 10,000 clones back. The sky of the demon realm here was a dark crimson. There was no sun, only 2 colossal blood-colored, hanging high above. The air was saturated with a violent, chaotic aura. If an ordinary immortal path cultivator were to inhale even a single breath, they would likely succumb to cultivation deviation on the spot, yet Zhonglu took a deep breath and felt a sense of exhilaration wash over his entire body. Every cell in his physique was cheering, greedily consuming the demonic energy that permeated the surroundings. This is the demon realm. Zhonglu stood upon a desolate, crimson wasteland, with 4 crafty underlings trailing behind him. The clones designated as Jia, Bing, and Ding stood before a fortress. The demonic clone, Jia, pointed toward a pitch-black city on the distant horizon and spoke. That city was incredibly primitive, with walls standing 100 jang high, built entirely from massive obsidian block, upon which ancient formations faintly pulsed. We shall head there to seek information and cultivation manuals first. Zhonglu strode forward, but no sooner had he reached the city gates than he was intercepted by 2 demonic guards, each 3 meters tall, who brandished spiked maces and barked, "Halt! The entry fee is 10 demon stones." The guard lowered his head to look at Zhonglu. Although this youth appeared somewhat menacing, and his aura was not weak, in the demon realm, those with strange appearances were a dozen, and he had no money. Zhonglu spoke with poise. "It is true that I have no money. The spirit stones I plundered in the mortal realm are nothing but gravel here." The guard gave a cold, dismissive laugh and raised his mace. "No money? Then pay with your life." Before he could finish his sentence, the guard was sent flying, embedding himself deep into the city wall, unable to pull himself free. Zhonglu retracted his fist, his expression icy. "Since we are in the demon realm, we shall abide by the laws of the demon realm. Might makes right." The remaining guard stood stunned, glancing from his comrade on the wall to Zhonglu before suddenly bowing 90 degrees. "My lord, please enter." Once inside, the city was far more prosperous than imagined, yet far more chaotic as well. Demon clansmen lined the streets, peddling all manner of bloody viscera from unidentifiable creatures, and even low-level demonic beasts were kept trapped in cages. Brawls could be seen everywhere. As long as there were no fatalities, no one cared in the slightest. "You lot, go scout and determine where the strongest power resides here." I issued the command through our mental connection. At this, the 4 subordinates, who had been gawking at their surroundings, immediately dispersed to gather intelligence upon hearing the order. "Big brother, we have found it." The subordinate designated as Jia scurried back, pointing toward the city lord's mansion located in the very center. It is said that the city lord is a grand demon at the late stage of the nascent soul realm, harboring within his estate countless spoils of war plundered from the immortal realm battlefield, including ancient manuals belonging to a late-stage nascent soul practitioner of the human race, Zhonglu. His footsteps faltered. Though this body is robust, it has yet to cultivate any demonic arts, possessing only the foundation of the Foundation establishment stage. A direct confrontation with a late-stage nascent soul expert is undoubtedly out of the question, but we have the advantage of numbers. The voice of the little demoness echoed in his mind. "Host, have you forgotten? Your system space allows for interdimensional summoning without any restrictions." Zhonglu's lips curled into a cruel smile. Half an hour later, the city lord's estate stood before him, a massive black palace guarded by 2 ferocious statues of demon gods at its gate. The demon city lord Matu was sitting in the great hall as usual, savoring fresh blood food, with 2 alluring succubi held in his embrace. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from outside. Who dares to trespass into the city lord's estate? The massive gates were kicked off their hinges, crashing violently onto Matu's banquet table. Wine splashed in every direction. He flew into a rage, shoving the succubi aside and rising to his feet. "Which damn cur is tired of living?" His voice choked in his throat, for the one stepping through the door was not a single person but an entire army. Nearly 10,000 human cultivators, though dressed in varied attire, most wearing the simple garments of the mortal realm. Each one emanated the aura of a peak Foundation establishment cultivator, surging like a black tide that instantly flooded the courtyard, even scaling the very walls. Human cultivators? Matu's eyes nearly bulged from their sockets. This was the heart of the demon realm. How could so many humans appear here? Kill R, standing at the forefront, gave him no time to think, swinging his great blade and overwhelming the foe with numbers. The battle that followed was unimaginably brutal and utterly absurd. Matu was undeniably powerful, his late-stage nascent soul strength erupting with force, capable of shattering dozens of opponents with a single casual strike. But to what end? As soon as one fell, another immediately stepped forward to take their place. Before the man in front could hit the ground, the man behind him was already trampling over the corpse to charge ahead. All manner of spells, array flags, disposable magical artifacts, and even quick climb and chili powder rained down upon his face like a heavenly judgment. "Damn it, get out. All of you, get out of my sight." The demon lord was descending into madness, his demonic energy was depleting rapidly, and his protective demonic light was being worn down bit by bit. These 10,000 men were like a legion of ants marching with tireless, relentless resolve. Fearless in the face of life and death, he continued to gnaw away at the mammoth beast bit by bit, until finally, after the span of an incense stick, accompanied by a roar of pure indignation, the colossal body of the blood-hand demon butcher collapsed with a thunderous crash, its frame left without a single patch of intact flesh. As for the original army of nearly 10,000, only 2,000 remained. Retreat. I did not hesitate for a moment, immediately recalling my fallen clones back to the system's resurrection space, returning to the minor world, leaving only Shanglu and 4 subordinates standing atop the ruins and the sea of blood. Quickly, gather the spoils. Ayer kicked open the city lord's treasure vault, leading the 2,000 remaining clones to storm the sanctum. They seized the ancient manuals first, then began piling up the demon stones. Although the demonic chi was unusable, it could be refined later. Within half a quarter of the city lord's manor, which had ruled for 1,000 miles, was left uncleaner than the looted Black Wind stronghold. In a desolate, abandoned stone house, Chenglu leaned against the wall, panting heavily. They had struck it rich. This time they had hit the jackpot. On the system interface, the process of scanning the ancient text regarding soul cultivation was progressing rapidly. In the corner of the room, the mountain of demon stones emitted a seductive glow, but with such wealth came inevitable danger. Big brother, it seems someone is tracking us. The subordinate peering through a crack in the wall whispered, his voice trembling. The news of the city lord's manor being razed had spread too quickly. Although no one knew where that mysterious human army had vanished to, everyone had seen 5 members of the demon race exit the manor at the end, departing in broad daylight. Now these 5 individuals, appearing like wealthy parvenus, had become the target of every greedy gaze in the region. What is there to fear? Shanglu stood up resolutely. I possess a royal-grade bloodline. My mere presence is enough to frighten them to death. I adjusted my opulent black robe, which I had taken from the city lord's manor, and pushed the door open to step outside. The moment I stepped out, more than a dozen malevolent gazes locked onto me. They were over a dozen sturdy demon warriors with bullhorns, brandishing heavy axes, their leader possessing a cultivation base at the mid-stage of the Golden Core realm. Boy, I hear you snatched quite a fortune from the city lord's manor. The horned demon leader exhaled a putrid, heated breath, dragging his massive axe across the ground, sending sparks flying. If you are wise, hand it over and I will leave your corpse intact. Though Shanglu was inwardly terrified, his expression remained stoic. He cast a glance of utter contempt at his opponent, clasping his hands behind his back while intentionally releasing the noble aura of a royal bloodline. The single icy word caused the demon leader to falter, momentarily suppressed by that bloodline pressure. A royal-grade demon, this was a significant figure, yet he sensed something amiss after a moment of careful observation. Why did this boy possess no fluctuation of demonic essence, only the pressure of his bloodline? Forget the Golden Core stage, he could not even sense the demonic energy of a chi-refining practitioner. Haha, so it turns out to be an empty shell, like a demon that has lost its mind. He sneered, either you are suffering from unhealed wounds, or you are a mongrel who stole the royal bloodline. Brothers, move in. If we refine that royal bloodline, we can change our destinies forever. Damn it. The expression on Changlu's face shifted slightly. His current dilemma was that his physical body and human consciousness were accustomed to orthodox techniques like the heaven and earth art. In this abyss of demonic energy, once he channeled his immortal spiritual power, he would be like a lamp in the dead of night, inviting death. Yet, without channeling his spiritual power, relying solely on his physical body, he could not hope to defeat this group of Golden Core stage Minotaur demons. Determined to risk it all, Changlu secretly gritted his teeth, preparing to summon his swarm tactics once more. Although doing so would completely expose him and attract powerful masters of the demon realm to hunt him down, it was better than being hacked to death by these small-time thugs. Just as that massive hammer was about to descend upon his head, Changlu, stop, a lazy yet magnetic voice suddenly rang out. Immediately afterward, a cloud of pink, fragrant mist appeared out of thin air. The formidable power of that hammer vanished instantly, as if it had struck soft cotton. The eyes of the Minotaur demon turned hazy, and he began to stagger as if intoxicated. A demon woman dressed in purple silk with an alluring, curvaceous figure stepped barefoot through the void toward them. Trailing behind her was a long scorpion tail, and her violet eyes shimmered with a captivating, intoxicating light. This young master looks quite unfamiliar. The woman ignored the Minotaur demons lost in their illusions, walking straight up to Changlu, where she extended a slender finger, lifting Changlu's chin to possess royal blood and yet not know how to utilize it. Which noble house's young master has run away from home? Changlu looked at the exquisite face inches from his own, sensing the icy chill radiating from her finger, and his mind went blank for a moment. Is this the legendary sugar mommy coming to the rescue? That cold finger, carrying a trace of imperceptible numbing toxin, suddenly slid from his chin down to his throat. Changlu lowered his eyes to look at the woman, who was nearly draped over him. The thin purple silk was so sheer that the skin beneath was almost entirely visible. The scorpion tail, covered in barbed thorns, moved restlessly against his waist. This was no ordinary beauty. It was clearly a highly venomous snake woman. The Minotaur demons, who had been screaming for blood just moments ago, were now as obedient as quails. The leader even knelt down and buried his face in the dirt. So it is someone Lady Uji has taken an interest in. This lowly one has eyes but failed to recognize greatness. We shall withdraw at once. Please forgive us. Before Yuji could even speak, the group fled in a panic, terrified that if they were one step too slow, that tail would pierce them until their hearts turned cold. Many thanks, Changlu said, taking a half step back to avoid her finger, which was still tracing downward. Her voice was cold, though her heart was filled with panic. Yet the pride of a fallen royal could not be cast aside. At this moment, appearing arrogant and resisting was the only way to assert her status. To nod and bow now would be to admit she was nothing more than a spineless, parasitic youth. Uji withdrew her hand, placing it to her nose to take a faint sniff. Her violet pupils constricted slightly. Although there was not a trace of demonic energy, the bloodline aura hidden deep within the flesh still struck terror into her heart. It was the suppression of a superior, an abyss of class hierarchy carved into the very bones of those who discover such a treasure. Kamorn Tishamche covered her mouth and chuckled softly, her expression brimming with seduction. Judging by your attire, young master, you have surely just survived a great disaster. You possess a royal-grade bloodline, yet your spirit power is completely exhausted. In this state, wandering through the demon realm will only lead to you being captured and refined into a medicinal pill. She turned around with a charming grace, leaving Shanglu with a lingering silhouette. My Suishian pavilion happens to be in need of a caretaker. If the young master has nowhere else to go, why not come to my place to rest? Even a fallen phoenix must have a nest after all. Chonglu remained motionless, but the 4 attendant clones behind him were frantically swallowing their saliva, screaming in their minds. Boss, agree to it. This is a powerful patron. We have nowhere else to stay. I rolled my eyes within my consciousness. These clones may be created by the system, but who did they learn this useless behavior from? Lead the way. Chonglu glanced over. The curve of Wuji's lips deepened. 5 days passed in the blink of an eye. To the outside world, it was but a snap of the fingers, but for the clones within the Heavenly Court subworld, these 5 days were truly like a living hell. When the final travelogue was tossed by Ayer into the pile of books, I felt as if an entire universe had been crammed into my mind. A massive torrent of information erupted within my consciousness, only to settle and organize itself thereafter. I closed my eyes, rubbing my aching temples, and let out a long breath. So that is how it is. I opened my eyes, a flash of astonishment surfacing in their depths. Only today have I truly seen this world for what it is. The land beneath my feet is called the Tianwu continent, vast and boundless, divided into 5 great regions, east, south, west, north, and central. And the southern region, where I currently stand, is merely the most barren fragment of them all. As for the area where the Qingyun sect is located, it is not even worth a speck on the map, merely a desolate hidden corner on the border of the southern region. What weighs upon me even more is the brutal hierarchical pyramid of cultivation. Sects are divided into 9 ranks. The first rank is the strongest and the 9th is the weakest. A first-rank sect must have a scattered immortal monster guarding it. Such beings truly stand at the pinnacle of the mortal world. With a single stomp, they can shatter mountains and collapse rivers. As for the Qingyun sect, it is a 9th-rank sect, and even among those, it sits at the very bottom. The strongest supreme elder in the sect is only at the perfection of the golden core stage, and he usually hides in the back mountains, fearing that his lifespan will wither away. Are we merely scavenging for items in the newbie village? I shook my head with a bitter smile. According to the records in the books, the central region is the true paradise for cultivators, a place where spiritual energy is as thick as bone marrow, with resources everywhere. Even a third-rank sect that wishes to establish a foothold in the central region must at the very least possess a cultivator at the great vehicle stage. The most powerful hegemon in the southern region is rumored to be a 4th-rank sect with a sect master at the peak of the body integration stage. I repeated the term over and over. It is a terrifying realm that transcends the nascent soul, spirit severing, and void refinement stages. Even if I were to charge forward now with 1,000 Foundation Establishment clones, I fear it would not be enough for them to extinguish us with a single breath. Boss, what is there to fear? Ada had approached at some point, still clutching a book on formations he could not understand, his expression entirely unconcerned. Everything written in these books is merely to intimidate the faint of heart. The strict hierarchy exists only because they are afraid of death. He gestured toward the dense crowd of dark-clothed clone brothers behind us. We are different. If we die today, we can return to life tomorrow. So what if they are a first-rank sect? As long as we have enough brothers, we can grind them into dust. It is called. Ada scratched his head, struggling for the word. Looking toward Ling Yi beside him, Ling Yi adjusted his spectacles and calmly uttered 4 words. Quantitative change leads to qualitative change, that is precisely it. Ayer slapped his thigh. Boss, as long as we have enough time, sooner or later, their names will be ours. I looked at these carefree fellows. The gloom in my heart vanished in an instant. That is right, social classes are for mortals. Those who cheat. Enough, stop wasting breath with empty words. I stood up and brushed the dust from my robes. Since I now see the world clearly, it is time to set to work. Our objective is clear, hide ourselves and develop. I waved my hand and a simple map manifested in the air. This is the entire map of the southern border, pieced together from every map I have studied over the past few days. We are currently destitute. I pointed to the remaining spirit stone balance, which had dwindled to mere tens of thousands on the system interface. My tone was grave, reflecting our poverty. Providing for 1,000 mouths is more costly than feeding livestock. Therefore, we must expand our revenue stream. I began to lay out our battle plans. The first team of 100 taking Qingyang Town as your center. Expand outward. I drew a circle on the map with my finger. Do not plunder the innocent. That is the absolute limit. However, my voice turned cold. As for demonic cultivators, evil practitioners, and bandits who occupy the mountains and terrorize the populace, not a single one shall be spared. You will seek them out, and I will use the system's teleportation coordinates. I want you to root them out entirely. Is this what one would call leveraging one's assets? Understood. The 100 clones shouted in unison, their eyes flashing with a cold green light. This arrangement was to their liking. Ada, who favors the second team of 100, was ready to receive orders. I continued, whenever a side encounters a formidable opponent, teleport there immediately to provide reinforcements. Remember, always outnumber the enemy. Never fight alone. As for the third team of 300, I pointed to the pile of manuals regarding alchemy, weapon forging, and arrays. Your task is the heaviest. You are to master these 3 disciplines at all costs. Whether or not we can utilize supreme-grade elixirs in the future, or if every member can wield their own magical flying sword, depends entirely on you. The first team will seize the raw materials for you, refine them until you drop. It matters not if the furnaces explode. After all, we are. The 300 clones looked at one another. Though they felt the burden, they could only nod. As for the rest, my gaze swept across the majority of those present. They were the 599 main forces who would remain in seclusion with me. Everyone looked on in confusion. The cultivation techniques of the Qingyun sect were simply too inferior. I picked up the Qingyun manual, once considered a priceless treasure, and tossed it onto the ground. A manual of this caliber leads only to the nascent soul stage at best. Since we have embarked on this path, we must walk the greatest one. I intend to gather the collective wisdom of everyone here. Combining these thousands of cultivation manuals and secret scripts, we shall deduce a peerless technique that belongs solely to us. Our goal, the perfect golden core. In the following days, the Heavenly Court small world was in a constant state of activity, while outside, tempests began to stir. The dark cultivation factions within a radius of several hundred miles around Qingyang town were struck by calamity. Today, word spread that the Black Wind stronghold had been annihilated by a mysterious group who even unearthed the personal savings the leader had hidden beneath the lake. Tomorrow, news arrived that the lair of a certain soul-cultivating dark practitioner had been razed to the ground. That dark practitioner was subjected to hundreds of burly men taking turns whittling his feet with flying swords. The sound of his miserable wails echoed for 10 miles. These mysterious individuals arrived like shadows, departing without a trace. No one knew their true identities, only that they called themselves the Tishan Gang, and their modus operandi was one of extreme frugality and meticulous collection. Even a dog passing by would be plucked of its fur, while inside the small world an entirely different scene was unfolding. The pill refining area was filled with the sound of constant explosions, with black smoke billowing everywhere as the soot-covered clones continued to gleefully toss all manner of peculiar materials into the furnace. The fire's too strong, the fire's too strong. Forget what the ancient scrolls say about fire creating miracles. The furnace lid blew into the sky, and several charred useless pills rolled out. It was another failed attempt, only to begin again. Elsewhere, the array and weapon refining zones were equally bustling. At the very center, 509 clones sat cross-legged, motionless as statues with countless streams of information pulsing between them. A collision in the circulation path of the bone-melting technique will damage the meridians, then add a touch of icy chi to neutralize it. Rubbish, that is water and fire. If you want to blow yourself up, be my guest. But what if we use the wood attribute spiritual energy from the withered wood longevity technique as a buffer? The 5-element cycle, wood generates fire? That is worth a try. I sat at the center like a super processor, continuously receiving feedback from all directions, error, correction, another error, and further correction. This was a war without the smoke of battle. I was contending for a sliver of life against the heavenly Tao, searching for the only path to the heavens among billions of possibilities. Time flowed like a shuttle, and within the small world there were no seasons. But outside, 3 months had already passed. That day the simulation zone, which had been silent as death, suddenly erupted with a terrifying aura. All the clones opened their eyes simultaneously. In that instant, it seemed as if countless flashes of lightning crackled through the air. I stood up, my robes billowing despite the lack of wind, and my aura did not explode outward. Instead, it became introspective and deep, like an ancient bottomless well. The spiritual energy flowing within my body had undergone a qualitative transformation, the once heterogeneous spiritual energy having completely converted into a liquid state, each drop pure and profound, shimmering with a faint golden light. It is a success, I murmured, extending my palm. Within the palm of my hand, a spiritual rune of extreme complexity began to emerge. It was the crystallization of hundreds of schools of thought, the culmination of 3 months of labor from nearly 1,000 minds. The system notifications congratulated the host on successfully creating a new cultivation technique and is currently analyzing its rank, Earth grade low tier. It possesses growth potential, a spirit energy storage capacity 10 times that of its peers, an incredibly high recovery rate, and is perfectly compatible with the true 5 elements law. Furthermore, it exerts a potent nourishing effect on the physical body. It is judged as a necessary path to achieving a perfect golden core. I am requested to name this Earth grade technique in the southern region, where even mysterious grade manuals are considered prized treasures of a sect. An Earth grade technique is a core legacy that, according to legend, can only be possessed by sects of the 4th rank or higher. Moreover, this one is capable of growth. A name, you ask? I stroked my chin, preparing to choose something humble, such as the longevity formula perhaps. Just then, R rushed over from the refining district, holding a top-tier magic long blade that had just come off the forge. Although its appearance was somewhat reminiscent of a butcher's knife, its cold light was chilling. Since the technique is already so formidable, the name must be equally resounding. Otherwise, how could it match the prestige of our Zhatian Bong? Then tell me, what should we call it? How about the wild, dominating, cool, dazzling, overbearing Zhatian divine art? Get lost. I rolled my eyes and pondered for a moment, my gaze fixed upon the gray yet infinitely promising sky above. We have established our own heavenly court, so I shall be the heaven and earth. This technique shall be named the Heaven and Earth Formula. As soon as the words left my lips, the sound of the great Tao's thunder seemed to echo throughout the small world. At the same time, the accompanying martial techniques manifested within the minds of all my clones. The Heaven and Earth finger for agility, the Heaven and Earth fist for overwhelming power, and the Heaven and Earth sword art with its myriad transformations. Added to that was the Heaven patrolling step, which fused the essence of countless movement techniques. In this moment, I felt that I truly possessed the qualifications to stand firmly in this world. Congratulations, boss. Congratulations, boss. Aher led the group of clones in timely flattery. Enough, stop the bootlicking. I reviewed the system panel once more. Over the past 3 months, Team 1 had gathered quite a few resources, yet it was not enough to compensate for the cost of such large-scale research, as they are truly golden-grade spirit beasts. The current balance is 12.0 low-grade spirit stones. Looking at that pitiful sum, my smile froze. I had gone bankrupt the moment I left secluded cultivation. Is this the reality of the resources, methods, companions, and location required for cultivation? I clutched my chest, the joy of having just created a divine technique immediately extinguished by the onset of poverty. Boss, we're out of money, Ayer asked cautiously. The bandits in the vicinity have all been thoroughly plundered by us. Those villains now treat us better than their own fathers. Even when they voluntarily hand over protection money, I cannot bring myself to strike. I turned my head, my gaze fixed intently upon a familiar circle on the map. That location is the main peak of the Qingyun sect. Since the small-time bandits are gone, we shall go find the biggest bandit of them all. The corners of my mouth curled into a dangerous smile. What lies within the treasure vault of the Qingyun sect? Asan has already secured the map and the techniques are prepared. It is time we verify the fruits of our past 3 months of training. Issue the order, prepare the entire force. Tonight we head out to help the Qingyun sect take inventory of their storehouse. As usual, leave nothing behind. Do not even leave a speck of spirit stone dust in the rat holes for me. Understood. Or replied hastily, though I could not be bothered to pay him any mind. Aside from the cultivation techniques that reached great success over the past 3 months, my 300 auxiliary clones also brought good news. Alchemy, artifact refining, and formation arrays. The 3 paths rely entirely on burning money and blowing up furnaces. All have reached the profound grade low tier. Although still inferior to masters who have operated for hundreds of years, it is more than enough to establish a sect in a place like the southern region. Prosperity is at our doorstep, we must celebrate. My gaze turned toward the distance as my lips curled at the right moment. Our purse is empty, so it is time to collect our payment. All my clones moved in unison, a green light flickering within their eyes. A message arrived from Asan. Because their technique hall was raided last time, the Qingyun sect has tightened their security. Now there are sentries every 5 paces within the sect, and guards every 10 paces. Breaking in is possible, but it would be far too strenuous. I gestured toward the pile of formation discs I had just refined on the ground. The formation division has not been idle these past few days. If we are going to rob them, we must at least be professional about it. These 999 formation discs are a hybrid version of the lesser 5 elements confusion formation and the gravity mudclaw formation. Although their grade is not high, merely of the yellow tier, they make up for it in sheer quantity. Even a great Luo Golden Immortal, should they step into these 1,000 mousetraps, would be forced to hop around for half a day. Listen closely, my voice lowered in tone. This time we are here only to loot, not to kill. Enter the show. These formation discs are the welcoming gift prepared for those old fools. Air, you are ordered to lead the team. Ayer tucked his folding fan behind his back and reached for his familiar burlap sack. Brothers, we have work to do. Remember the boss's words, leave them nothing but the mice. Deep in the night at the Qingyun sect, a pitch-black, windy night is the perfect time for murder and arson. Ever since the scripture library was swept clean, the atmosphere within the Qingyun sect has remained perpetually tense, with the number of patrolling disciples tripled. Even a mosquito flying into the inner sect is subjected to registration checks. Fan San, the deputy hall master of the mission hall, was currently swaggering along the mountain path leading to the central region. Hallmaster Fan working late as usual? A Foundation establishment disciple on patrol greeted him respectfully. There is no other way. The sect master ordered me to inspect the supplies. I must report by tomorrow morning, so I had to come to the outer treasury to examine them myself. Feigning the look of one burdened by labor, Asan waved his ledger while acting anxious. The disciple looked on with admiration. Hallmaster Fan, you are truly our role model, taking on such tiring tasks personally. Asan waved his hand, feigning devotion to the sect as his duty, and slowly proceeded to the foot of the rear mountain where the treasury was located. This location was guarded by 2 early-stage Golden Core elders, and the defensive formations were running at full capacity. Asan dared not approach too closely, stopping instead at a rockery 100 yards from the treasury entrance. The next second, space rippled and Asan vanished instantly without leaving a single trace. 999 figures emerged from the void like ghosts, and almost the moment they touched the ground, all the clones performed the same action, pulling the formation discs from their chests and slamming them into the earth, instantly activating their spiritual energy. Who goes there? The 2 Golden Core elders guarding the treasury entrance reacted with extreme speed. Sensing the spatial fluctuations, they immediately summoned their magic treasures, but as fast as they were, someone else was faster with their hidden weapons. Ayer shouted loudly, waving his arm to hurl 2 pitch-black objects forward. Instinctively, the 2 elders raised their spirit energy shields to intercept the objects. Both spheres detonated upon impact. They were neither lightning fire beads nor toxic gas, but 2 bags filled with specially refined lime powder mixed with chili dust. Taking advantage of their obscured vision and disrupted divine sense, dozens of clones assigned to the formation rushed toward the vault entrance. The Tri-Talent Break Seal formation was activated, bypassing the need for a forced entry. Atam had long since obtained the map of the vault's defensive formations. With dozens of men working in unison, it was as if they possessed the key to the vault. The heavy bronze doors groaned and cracked open. Move fast, and he kicked the heavy doors wide open, leading hundreds of men surging inside like starving wolves. The remaining hundreds stayed outside, casting formation plates in every direction as if they were worthless trinkets. In an instant, the open ground before the vault entrance was blanketed by dense, intricate formation runes. The faint, flickering light emitted from them was enough to make one's scalp crawl. At this moment, a powerful surge of aura erupted from the direction of the Qingyun sect's main peak, soaring into the heavens. Audacious vermin, a thunderous roar echoed through the clouds. Even before arriving, the sect master struck out, tearing through space to descend upon them. Following him were the hall master of the law enforcement hall and several peak masters. Their killing intent was suffocating. Not long had passed since the robbery of the scripture pavilion, and yet now these thieves dared to lay hands on the treasury. Did they truly mistake the Qingyun sect for a common latrine, thinking they could come and go as they pleased? Wretches, do not think of fleeing. Before the sect master could even land, a massive heaven-suppressing seal descended from above. The overwhelming pressure of the late Golden Core stage bore down without the slightest restraint. Just as the seal was about to strike, an eerie mist suddenly rose from the ground. The once solid earth instantly transformed into a treacherous mire. Countless vines erupted from beneath, frantically ensnaring everyone in the air. The sect master swiped his hand, clearing a path through the obstacles. The sect master let out a cold snort as his seal blazed with golden light, instantly pulverizing the vines. Yet a moment later, his expression shifted. This was not merely a single formation, but a countless array of formations layered upon one another. Crushing the vines triggered a toxic mist. Dispersing the mist activated an illusion. Shattering the illusion caused the ground beneath his feet to exert crushing gravity. None of these formations could truly wound him, yet each one was designed to be insufferably vexing. The traps continued to stall him. 999 trapping, illusionary, and labyrinthine formations were stacked in. Even a nascent soul ancestor would be left in utter bewilderment for a long time. Who on earth could have devised such a formation? There is neither rhyme nor reason to it. An elder renowned for his mastery of formations was so enraged that his mustache trembled. No sooner had he dismantled a 5 elements formation than he triggered a self-destruct mechanism. The explosion charred him black, a truly violent way to break a formation. The sect master roared, realizing that if this continued, even the rats in the treasury would pack up and leave. The high-ranking members of the Qingyun sect launched frantic attacks upon the arrays below. Meanwhile, inside the treasury, they scrambled, not bothering to choose. When their storage bags were filled to the brim, they shoved the rest into their robes. Ayer commanded the situation with organized precision. He poured bucket after bucket of spirit stones into his large-capacity storage ring. Only after emptying the chest did he realize it was crafted from precious gold and silk Nanmu wood. That too could be sold for a high price. He did not forget to claim the chest that had held the spirit stones. The accumulation of a millennium by the Qingyun sect was indeed no small matter. Low-grade spirit stones were piled like mountains, and there were several large chests of medium-grade spirit stones as well. There were even rare refining materials and century-old medicinal herbs. The clones swarmed through like a plague of locusts. Wherever they passed, not only were treasures looted, but even the night-luminescent pearls embedded in the walls were pried loose. From a deep dark compartment, one clone discovered a jade box covered in sealing talismans. Ayer, my consciousness descends. Upon inspecting the item, the system interface immediately displayed a line of red text. High-level energy fluctuations detected. Lacking the time for a thorough examination, Ayer tucked it directly into his chest. It was nearly time. Feeling the external formations on the verge of collapse, Ayer knew the old men outside were about to lose their minds. He decided to withdraw immediately. This time there were no self-destruct arrays left behind. Just as the sect master finally shattered the final illusion array and stormed into the treasury, he happened to see the last clone tightening his belt. Ayer stood in the center of the empty treasury, a place so barren that not even a snake remained. He watched the furious sect master charge in, and instead of fleeing, he elegantly adjusted his collar and cupped his hands in a salute. Many thanks to our brothers of the Qingyun sect for providing these supplies. This harvest is truly bountiful, and we are very satisfied. The sect master was so enraged that his entire body trembled. His finger pointed at Ayer, shaking uncontrollably. The green mountains will not change, and the emerald waters will flow on. Next time you have good items, remember to restock. We shall return. Bared his teeth in a grin, revealing a set of gleaming white teeth as he tossed a bag of casting powder into the air. A flash of white light erupted, and their figures vanished into thin air. The sect master stared at a treasury that was now cleaner than his own face. The empty ground seemed to mock his utter incompetence. Rage surged within him, a bitter taste rising in his throat, and a mouthful of fresh blood sprayed 3 feet forward. He stumbled, nearly collapsing onto the floor. Deception. This is nothing but pure deception. The Qingxun main hall was ablaze with light. This time, not only the high-ranking officials but even 2 supreme elders who had been in deep seclusion were roused. The treasury had been wiped clean. This was no longer merely a matter of losing face. This was a calculated strike intended to sever the foundation of the Qingyun sect. A thorough investigation was mandatory. The expression of the hallmaster of the law enforcement hall was so dark it seemed as if water could drip from his face. The treasury was protected by a forbidden air formation. Without the specific teleportation arrays, it was fundamentally impossible to manifest inside out of thin air. What did this imply? The elders exchanged glances, a terrifying speculation dawning upon them, an inside agent. The supreme elder spoke with a voice as hoarse as a night owl. Only one of our own could have tampered with the forbidden air formation. Furthermore, this person's status must be immensely high, and they must know the sect's formations like the back of their hand. Seal the entire sect. From this day forth, no one is permitted to leave. The storage rings of every disciple must be inspected. The sect master's face was ashen, his eyes bloodshot. Whether it be an elder or a deacon, anyone who dares to act suspiciously at this time shall be executed without mercy. Standing in the corner, having just rushed over upon hearing the news, Asan wore an expression of shock and sorrow, though he lowered his head to hide the glimmer of triumph dancing in his eyes. The waters had been stirred into a complete mire. The Heavenly Court minor world has struck it rich. Even I, who have always remained as steady as an old hound, looking at the mountain of spoils before me, could not help but find my breathing quickening. A full 500,000 mid-grade spirit stones, Ling Yi said, his hands trembling as he held the ledger. 500,000 mid-grade spirit stones, when converted to low-grade, amounts to 50 million. For me, who has always been meticulous with every calculation, this is truly wealth acquired overnight. And these are pointed to the pile of vibrant ores and spiritual herbs beside him. 3,000 caddies of profound iron and essence gold, 50 centennial vermilion fruits, along with all manner of rare materials. Our refiners and alchemists will have no shortage of supplies to hone their craft for the next half year, but perhaps the most valuable treasure of all is this. I gestured with my hand, and the jade box retrieved from the dark compartment flew into my grasp. As I opened the casing, an ancient aura rushed forth from within the box to greet me. It was neither a magical artifact nor a medicinal pill, but a palm-sized azure shard. It resembled the fragment of an antique mirror or perhaps a jade slip. It appeared weathered and worn, yet a faint ethereal immortal energy shimmered across its surface. Immortal energy fragment detected, containing a faint essence of the immortal Tao. Will you absorb it? The system's notification chime suddenly echoed in my mind. Absorb, I commanded without hesitation. The very next moment, the shard transformed into a stream of light and surged directly into the center of my forehead. The entire small world began to tremble violently. The previously gloomy sky suddenly split open, and a stream of purple energy descended from the rift, merging into the earth. The boundaries of the small world began to expand frantically. The concentration of spiritual energy soared, jumping from twice the level of the outside world to 5 times that amount. However, the most astonishing change occurred on the system interface. The cold, rigid interface suddenly warped, and countless specks of light converged. They coalesced before me into a young girl as exquisite as fine jade. She appeared to be about 7 or 8 years old, with her hair styled in 2 buns, wearing a black Lolita-style dress and a pair of small, fluttering demonic wings on her back. The moment she appeared, she hovered in mid-air, hands on her hips, looking around with a gaze of utter disdain. So this is my host? How wretchedly poor you look. Her voice was clear and melodious, yet carried a tone of profound maturity. I was momentarily stunned, but immediately composed myself. The system spirit shall call me Great Queen, she declared. Or Little Demoness. She rolled her eyes, descended onto the pile of middle-grade spirit stones, and casually picked one up, biting into it as if it were a crisp piece of candy. The quality of these spirit stones is abysmal. They're hard on my teeth. My eyelid twitched. Those are middle-grade spirit stones. You manifested from that piece of immortal debris. Do you really think you're worthy of being so haughty? The little demoness pouted. I, the queen, have existed for a long time. It was simply that you were too poor and the system energy was insufficient for me to manifest. The fragment from earlier possessed just enough. Having spoken, the young girl waved her small hand, and the system dashboard, which initially displayed a balance of 50 million low-grade spirit stones, began to plummet instantaneously. 50 million, 40 million, 30 million. Wait a moment. What are you doing? I was horrified, lunging forward in an attempt to protect my hard-earned wealth. Why are you screaming? The little demoness shot me a glance of utter disdain. Do you think upgrading a small world comes for free? Do you think increasing the density of spiritual energy doesn't cost anything? Cleansing the marrow and forging the meridians for those who cannot cultivate requires resources. I risked my life to plunder these riches. Such narrow vision. The little demoness licked the remaining spirit energy from her fingers, adding, if you want the horse to run, you must feed it grass. Furthermore, you have yet to unlock the true formidable capabilities of this system. Without my coordination, you are nothing more than a foreman leading a group of laborers. As she finished speaking, the balance finally stopped ticking, leaving only 5 million. 9/10 of my fortune had withered away overnight. I stared at the figure, feeling as though my heart were being pierced by the agony of financial ruin. I collapsed to the ground, watching my clones cheer as the spiritual energy surged, wanting to weep yet finding no tears. This wasn't raising clones, this was sustaining a pack of gold-devouring beasts, and now I had added an ancestor who consumes wealth without leaving a scrap behind. Stop wailing, the little demoness said, drifting before me and patting my shoulder. If the old does not depart, the new cannot arrive. Why fret over such a trifle? When you ascend in the future, this meager amount of spirit stones won't even suffice to buy footwear for the immortals. She suddenly revealed a cunning smile, adding, while upgrading just now, I happened to scan the location of Asan. Qingyun sect is currently conducting an internal investigation, and I have discovered something quite intriguing. What is it? I asked with a lethargic tone. Within an abandoned well in the Qingyun sect's outer sect, a trace of demonic energy is hidden. The little demoness's large eyes sparkled with excitement. The demonic aura is remarkably pure. It is likely a scout from the demon realm. My gaze sharpened, and I abruptly sat upright. A member of the demon race, if we could capture him. The little demoness chuckled. Might we be able to take a stroll through the demon realm? I hear there is an abundance of wealth to be found there. You foolish child, I thought, staring at the girl who had just mocked my poverty, yet was already plotting our next grand heist. Suddenly, I felt that this system's personality resonated with my own. You are right. I stood up and brushed the dust from my robes. A renewed fighting spirit ignited within my eyes. If the resources of the righteous path are insufficient, then I shall plunder the demonic sect. After all, it is merely a case of villain against villain. That is where I excel. Asan, I called out in my mind. I was nearly frightened out of my wits by the enforcement hall earlier. Fortunately, my acting skills were impeccable. Enough acting, we have urgent work to attend to, I said, licking my lips. My gaze grew profound as I neared the abandoned well in the outer sect. Drag that demon clan rat out for me. Our mission scope is about to expand. In the Qingyun sect's outer court, there lies a long-abandoned servant quarters filled with dried brushwood, alongside a dried-up well surrounded by wild weeds that reach waist height. Carrying a tattered lantern, Asan feigned a patrol, humming an unrecognizable tune. Upon reaching the well, his footsteps faltered, his eyes darting through the darkness with a sharp glint. Come out. Stop hiding. Asan addressed the pitch-black mouth of the well. I know you are down there. The stench radiating from you is fouler than the stones in a latrine. The well remained deathly silent. Even the chirping of insects was clearly audible. Not coming out very well. It just so happens I need to relieve myself. Asan pretended to loosen his belt. Whoosh! A dark shadow suddenly vaulted from the bottom of the well with blinding speed, wielding a pallid bone spike and lunging directly for Asan's throat. The cold, bloodthirsty aura it emitted was certainly not that of a righteous cultivator, courting death. The shadow rasped. Asan did not even attempt to dodge. He merely rolled his eyes, and without warning, the space around him distorted. In the next moment, 10 brawny men materialized out of thin air around the dry well. 10 massive palms, surging with formidable spiritual power, descended simultaneously upon the shadow midair. There was no suspense. It was like 10 full-grown men pinning down a helpless chick. Despite the shadow possessing a foundation establishment late-stage cultivation, it could not even let out a scream, and was crushed firmly into the earth, pinned face down in a spread-eagled position. The bone spike shattered, and its mouth filled with mud. The force had been controlled perfectly, enough to subdue but not to kill. My figure emerged from the shadows behind Asan, my hands idly turning to walnuts. I looked down at the captive on the ground. His skin was sallow, and a strange black mark adorned his forehead. A member of the demon race, I crouched down. Although the demon scout was restrained, his eyes remained fierce and defiant. You lowly earth realm vermin, kill me if you wish. The great demon god will level everything in his path. Crack. With an expressionless face, I crushed one of his fingers. Is there a need to follow the standard procedure? I asked. Soul searching is relatively quick, though it often leaves the target an imbecile. The demon scout broke into a cold sweat from the agony, yet he remained silent. I waved toward my clone, Li Yi, waiting behind me. Li Yi stepped forward, a cyan lotus-shaped light manifesting in his palm, prepared to strike the crown of the demon's head. I will speak. I will speak. Sensing a tremor deep within his very soul, the scout was immediately overcome by terror. The demon race may be savage, but that does not mean they do not fear death, especially a death as meaningless as this. After the time it takes to burn an incense stick, I stood up, my expression unusually grave. This is a significant escalation. He is not merely a scout, he is a courier of intelligence sent from the central region. The demon realm has officially declared total war upon the Tianwu continent. The battle in the central region is shaking the very foundations of the heavens, yet these fringe demon forces have not been idle. They are attempting to shatter the spatial seals of the east, west, south, and north regions to launch a coordinated four-pronged invasion. The seal of the southern region, located beneath the soul-falling abyss, lies a mere 800 miles from the Qingyun sect. Do they truly view us as soft persimmons to be crushed at will? I toyed with a walnut and sent the prisoner into my pocket dimension. Do not let him die. Keep him alive for now, we have greater matters to attend to. I then turned my gaze toward Asen. It is your turn to perform. Half an hour later inside the main hall, the sectmaster of Qingyun Feng had just lost his composure. The sectmaster had not yet recovered from the shock when the news brought by Asan sent him leaping from his seat. What did you say? The demon race? Asan knelt on the ground, his clothes tattered and torn, his face wearing a calculated look of terror. Sectmaster, it is absolute truth. The patrol disciples discovered strange activity at the desolate well. Upon investigation, they realized the individual was a demon spy. He further claimed that the demon army is about to descend upon the southern region. The chief of the law hall shouted in disbelief, yet the tremor in his voice betrayed his internal dread. The seal of the southern region has been impenetrable for thousands of years. How could it possibly falter? An inner sect disciple scrambled into the main hall. Sectmaster, just moments ago, the mountain protection array captured an intruder. He detonated himself and the lingering demonic aura. A deathly silence descended upon the grand hall. It was inevitable. The elders exchanged glances, their faces as pale as sheets of parchment. Though the Qingyun sect was considered a blessed land of immortals in the eyes of mortals, they knew the truth of their own house. They were merely a 9th grade sect. They did not even possess a single nascent soul cultivator. To put it bluntly, let alone the grand army of the demon realm, even a single elite squad of demonkind could slaughter the entire Qingyun sect without breaking a sweat. It is over. Everything is truly over. A cowardly elder collapsed into his chair, his eyes reflecting the terror that perhaps even the central plains could not stem the tide. With what are we supposed to defend ourselves? Flee, sectmaster, dissolve the sect and let the disciples scatter. Panic like a plague spread instantly among these cultivators who were usually held in such high regard. This is the reality of the cultivation world. When the winds are favorable, they act with arrogance and power, but when the tide turns, they possess not an ounce of fighting spirit. Flee to where? The sectmaster offered a miserable, bitter laugh. Wherever the demon race treads, not a blade of grass grows. This was a war of extinction, and the stifling air of despair made it impossible to breathe. Just then, from the direction of the back mountain, a powerful aura erupted. It was the pressure belonging to the nascent soul stage. Though somewhat aged and waning, it acted as a stabilizing pillar, instantly grounding the crumbling morale within the hall. A withered figure appeared in the center of the hall, his hair and beard snow-white, his cloudy eyes sharp and piercing. The old sectmaster and the elders knelt in unison, tears of relief streaming down their faces. The Qingyun ancestor, a living fossil of 800 years, had actually emerged from seclusion at this critical juncture. A bunch of useless fools, the ancestor let out a cold snort. His voice boomed like a great bell. You haven't even caught sight of the demon race yet, and you have already thrown yourselves into chaos. If outsiders were to see this, would they not laugh until their teeth fell out? His gaze swept over the crowd, eventually resting upon Esan, a flash of approval flickering in his eyes. On the contrary, this little one has some courage. All of you rise. If the demon race truly wishes to come, then we shall prepare. The Qingyun sect has stood for thousands of years. We are not so easily slaughtered by others. Immediately activate the sect protection array and recall all disciples currently stationed outside. With the ancestor serving as the backbone, the atmosphere in the hall finally grew a fraction more composed. Although it remained heavy, they were, at the very least, no longer a disorganized rabble. In the corner, Asan kept his head bowed, appearing respectful on the surface, while in truth he was cursing wildly in his heart. This old man is merely in the foundation establishment stage. In a true battle, he would not even be a worthy opponent. However, the boost to morale he provides is not entirely useless. It may allow this to drag on a little longer. In the heavenly court small world, the storms outside do not affect the bustle within. These demonic creatures intend to tear open a rift. The little demoness hovers in mid-air, crunching on a demonic crystal she seized from the scout earlier. How fortunate, this is not an invasion, but rather a treasure trove presenting itself at our doorstep. As I stare at the map, isn't that scout hoping to open a rift? Let us turn his own strategy against him. The little demoness rolls her eyes, her face full of mischief. We need only employ a few tricks during the process. By extracting some demonic blood, I can create a demonic avatar for you with royal lineage. When that avatar eventually enters the demon realm, it will be a genuine scion of the demonic nobility. Resources, techniques, demonesses, with demonic stones. My eyes begin to gleam. The idea of a counter-invasion of the demon realm is truly brilliant. But there is a prerequisite. The little demoness points to the interior of the spatial rift, which is filled with chaotic gale winds. Anyone at the foundation establishment stage who enters will be ground into meat paste. One must be at least at the perfected golden core stage, possessing a profound foundation and a flawless core, coupled with the system's spatial protection, to barely make the crossing. Money is not an issue. I wave my hand with overwhelming momentum. Having just emptied the treasury of the Qingyun sect, I exchange 500,000 mid-grade spirit stones into my account. The current balance is truly an astronomical figure. System, deduct the cost. Very well, boss. The little demoness rubs her hands in excitement, consuming 20 million spirit stones to summon 9,000 avatars at the 7th level of the foundation establishment stage, and simultaneously upgrades them all to the perfected foundation establishment stage. Rumbles echo as the ground of the small world begins to tremble. Across the vast plaza, white light converges into a single blinding surface. The 9,000 newly manifested avatars stand in rows as orderly as an army. Though clad in simple linen robes, the convergence of 9,000 perfected foundation establishment auras is enough to change the very color of the heavens and earth. It is still not enough. I look toward Li Yi. That was my very first cultivation clone, and currently it is my most powerful. Bring out the 3 golden result fruits. These were spoils of war seized from the ancient Immortal ruins some time ago. They are rare treasures, and as I sat cross-legged in the spirit pool, I held them ready. The 3 golden fruits melted the moment they touched my tongue, releasing a torrential surge of medicinal power. Every one of my clones, nearly 10,000 in total, sat in meditation, their thoughts connected. It was not merely a transfer of spiritual energy, but a frantic accumulation of insights into the great Tao. The heaven and earth art circulated wildly within Li's body. The sea of spiritual energy, once vast and chaotic, began to collapse, compressing and compressing again. A golden sphere slowly began to take form within the Dantian. The golden cores of ordinary cultivators are mostly of the lower 3 grades, filled with impurities and lacking potential. Genius cultivators might achieve the middle 3 grades. However, the elites in the heavenly court now strive for the legendary 9-pattern golden core. Know the 10-pattern golden core, the great Tao itself is being perfected. In the sky above this small world, there were no dark clouds gathering to descend as a lightning tribulation like in the outside world. This is because this world belongs to me. The rules are mine to define. The Suishan Pavilion is not a place for mortals. It is the largest den of iniquity in this chaotic demonic city. Here they sell wine, meat, and lives. As soon as I entered the main gate, the cacophony of noise washed over me. The first floor was a colossal coliseum. Two demonic clansmen standing 3 meters tall were tearing at each other. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, inciting the spectators to howl in a gambling frenzy. The enchantress led Zhonglu straight to the most luxurious suite on the highest floor. As the door closed, the noise from outside was instantly silenced. Speak, what is it that you want? Zhonglu sat down, sprawling across the spacious, beast fur-lined chair with an air of defiance. He was blunt and did not stand on ceremony. The enchantress, too, dropped her facade. She poured herself a glass of red wine. I have taken a fancy to your lineage. The four subordinates squatting by the door. Zhonglao's expression remained indifferent, yet his heart skipped a beat. Are all the women of the demon realm this forward? Do not misunderstand. The enchantress swirled her wineglass, her gaze brimming with flirtatious intent. I am a merchant, and the bloodline flowing within you is incredibly pure. Though I do not know which fallen branch of the royal family you were cast out from, as long as you can restore your strength, you are a walking treasure trove. I can provide you with resources, grant you protection, and even, she licked her lips, offer you myself. My condition is simple. Once you regain your power, you must help me eliminate someone. Furthermore, should you rise to reclaim your authority, I wish to be the sole supplier of resources within this demon domain. This is a high-stakes investment. I quickly calculated the odds in my mind. This woman is truly confident. She is gambling that a disgraced prince like me can rise from the ashes. It is a pity she does not know she is dealing with a human soul masquerading in a demonic shell. Agreed. Zhongluo reached out his hand. I require the finest demonic cultivation manual and as many demon stones as possible. The enchantress produced a black jade slip and a heavy pouch from her spatial ring. This is the Asura Blood Devouring Manual, a profound grade top-tier technique. In this region, it is considered supreme. The pouch contains 1,000 low-grade demon stones, sufficient for you to guide the energy into your body. Zhongluo accepted the items, not even sparing a glance at the woman as he turned away. I intend to cultivate. The enchantress was stunned for a moment before she laughed in exasperation, eating her food, staying in her abode. This temperament is truly that of a spoiled young master. Very well, I shall be in the adjacent. I hope your capabilities are at least half as great as your arrogance. As the door slammed shut, Zhongluo's cold facade immediately crumbled. Hurry, hurry, pour out all the demon stones. His four subordinates immediately gathered around, spilling the pouch of demon stones onto the table. The pitch-black stones radiated an energy that was chaotic and violent. To a righteous cultivator, this would be poison, but to Zhongluo, this was his lifeblood. The system's cultivation scanner analyzed the Asura Blood Devouring Manual, declaring it trash, crude construction with severe side effects. After practicing this, one becomes prone to irritability, bloodlust, and your potential is permanently capped at the golden core stage. The image of the little demoness flickered into the air, her face twisted in disdain. To think they call this scrap a profound top-tier technique. The cultural standards of the demon realm are truly concerning. Can it be improved? Zhongluo asked. Is it a minor task? The little demoness snapped her fingers. I have synthesized every immortal and demonic technique currently in our collection, integrating them with the royal tier bloodline of your current physical vessel. Once the deductions were complete, he obtained the refined version of the indestructible heavenly demon body. Using the physical form as a furnace to devour all things. Bypassing the impurities of demonic energy, it directly converted them into the purest primordial power. Zhongluo had not yet reacted when a sensation of indescribable hunger erupted from every cell in his body. It felt as if a starving ghost, famished for 3,000 years, had been reincarnated. He looked at the demon stones on the table as if they were a freshly cooked feast, ready to be consumed. Zhongluo took 2 demon stones and activated his cultivation technique. There was no need for the tedious process of guiding energy into the body. The demon stones in his palms shattered instantly, transforming into 2 torrents of black energy that surged into his body. His previously withered meridians were filled at once, followed by a violent expansion. Crack, early-stage demon tribe, mid-stage demon tribe. Zhongluo's body was like a bottomless pit. The 1,000 demon stones on the table dwindled at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was not enough, nowhere near enough. The sensation of hunger did not subside. On the contrary, having whetted his appetite, it became even more frantic. Zhongluo's eyes gradually turned a burning red, reflecting a desperate craving for pure energy. Boss. The henchman stared at the pile of stone dust on the ground, trembling with fear. That was our ration for the entire month. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Zhongluo panted heavily, sensing the pitifully small amount of demonic origin remaining in his body. Demon tribe full circle 1,000 demon stones had only pushed him to the perfection of the refinement stage. The appetite of this royal-grade physical body was immense, but the foundation it laid was terrifyingly solid. He felt that he could now fell the city gate guard with a single punch, but this was still far from enough. What Yuji gave him was merely an appetizer. Zhongluo stood up, his bones cracking and popping throughout his body. If he wanted to be truly satisfied, he would have to take matters into his own hands. Tell me, what did you find out when I sent you to scout the situation? The henchman hurried forward. I have gathered the information clearly. Downstairs there is a beast fighting arena. One only needs to sign a life and death waiver to enter the ring. Winning one match earns 100 demon stones. Consecutive victories double the prize. If one can defeat the arena master, they will be rewarded with 10,000 mid-grade demon stones directly. 10,000 mid-grade. The red light in Zhongluo's eyes grew even more brilliant. Converted, that was 1 million low-grade demon stones. Let's head downstairs. I am taking you all to earn some fortune. In the first floor beast fighting arena, the atmosphere was hot enough to be suffocating. In the center of the arena, a man with bulging muscles held 2 massive hammers. The pig-headed demon roared toward the heavens. At his feet lay a corpse cleaved cleanly into 2 pieces. Fresh stained the ground crimson. Who is next? The pig-headed demon's roar echoed like thunder. I have achieved 9 consecutive victories today. Is there any other soul here who is not afraid of death and dares to come up to surrender their life? In the spectator stands, the gamblers screamed in a frenzy, yet no one dared to step forward. This pig-headed demon is a demon general of the early Foundation establishment stage, possessing innate divine strength and ruthless methods. Any ordinary rogue cultivator who ascends that stage is destined to die. In a private chamber on the second floor, Yuji reclined lazily on a soft couch, gently fanning herself with a silk fan. A maid beside her whispered, "Madam, that young man has gone downstairs." Yuji raised an eyebrow. He just received his resources. Instead of focusing on his cultivation, why is he heading down there? To watch a play? He has gone to the registration desk to sign a life-or-death contract. The motion of Yuji's fan stalled, a flicker of astonishment flashing through her eyes. He hasn't even been here for half an incense stick of time. He hasn't even caught his breath, yet he already wishes to fight in the life-or-death arena. This is not a fallen prince. This is clearly a fool who has no regard for his own life. Let us go and watch. If he dies, drag his corpse back. A king-level bloodline is a pity to lose, but it can still be refined into 2 batches of blood pills. Yuji's tone remained indifferent. Business is business, and a talentless person holds no value, making them unworthy of her emotional investment. Below, just as the referee was about to declare the pig-headed demon the victor, a dark figure lightly descended onto the arena. He carried no weapons, wore no armor, and even his aura fluctuation was pitifully weak. Clad in an oversized black robe with faint demon markings visible across his chest, his long vibrant red hair was left to hang loose in disarray. The pig-headed demon looked down at the lad, who barely reached his waist, and let out a disdainful laugh. Where did this pretty boy come from? This is a place of slaughter, not a place for you to come and sell your charms. Laughter erupted from beneath the stage. Get lost. You haven't even finished growing. Whose pet escaped because they didn't watch you properly? Zhonglu stood amidst the pool of blood, his expression as calm as if he were strolling through a garden. He raised his head to look at the pig-headed demon and asked with complete seriousness, "What are you worth?" The pig-headed demon was momentarily stunned before shaking his head. Zhonglu raised a single finger, signaling a move that courted death. Feeling deeply humiliated, the pig-headed demon let out a roar, his 2 massive hammers descending with the force to cleave. Demonic energy billowed, sealing off every path of retreat. This was a full-force strike from an early-stage demon general. Even those of equal rank would not dare to meet it head-on. In the spectator stands, Yuji shook her head, as if she had already foreseen the boy being cleaved in 2. Yet, just as the hammer hung 3 inches above Chonglu's head, he moved, or rather, he vanished. That speed was not something a member of the demon race should possess. It was the absolute velocity born from an explosive outburst of physical prowess. A muffled thud echoed, and time itself seemed to freeze. Zutomo remained frozen in his stance, clutching the hammer. As for the figure of Chonglu, he had appeared behind the demon at an unknown moment, still holding his finger aloft. However, that finger was now dripping with blood, and a hole no larger than a fingertip had pierced through the demon's steel-like back, straight into his heart. A sound like wind whistling through a hollow pipe emanated from Zutomo's throat. The 2 massive hammers clattered to the ground. The colossal frame collapsed with a thunderous crash, sending a cloud of dust billowing into the air. The entire arena fell into a deathly silence. The gamblers who had been jeering only moments ago looked as though they had been strangled, their mouths agape, unable to utter a single sound. A one-hit kill. Chonglu flicked the blood from his finger and turned to look at the referee, who stood as if carved from stone. The next opponent, if there is no one left, tell that arena master to come out here. He rubbed his stomach, which let out a low rumble, the crimson light in his eyes becoming even more menacing. I am in a hurry, and I am ravenous. Second floor. The fan in Yuji's hand came to a sudden halt. She gazed intently at the man standing beside the corpse. For the first time, her violet pupils betrayed a look of genuine gravity, mixed with a sliver of excitement that was difficult to conceal. He used no demonic energy, relying solely on the power of his physical body, to pierce a demon general with a single finger. Yuji extended her crimson tongue to lick her lips. The return on this investment will be terrifyingly high. In the silent fighting arena, the gazes of all the demons were fixated on the figure clad in black robes. Greed, suspicion, a myriad of emotions intertwined. Chonglu felt the thunderous growl emanating from his belly. The hunger stemming from the indestructible heavenly demon physique gnawed at him like maggots and bone, consuming his reason. The victory in the ring yields only a pittance of magic stones. For a royal-grade bloodline and physical body like mine, it is not even enough to fill the gaps between my teeth. This is too slow, I complained in my consciousness to the system spirit. Only now do you realize it is slow? The figure of the young demoness materialized from the void, legs crossed, tossing a magic stone in the air. I have said it before, working in the shadows has no future. If you want to amass wealth quickly, you must rely on making a deposit. State your proposal. I have no patience for idle talk. It is simple. This demon race avatar of yours possesses a solid foundation. It is merely an empty vessel. While your reserve of spirit stones is insufficient to upgrade every single avatar, it is more than enough to empower one. The little demoness smiled like a fox that had just stolen a chicken, directly using the spirit stones to synchronize his strength to the golden core perfection stage, though due to the energy conversion across worlds, the consumption will be slightly higher than that of an immortal Dao avatar. I weighed the decision in my mind. This pawn Chonglu is tied to the perfection of my future cultivation technique and my plans for the demon realm. Its strategic significance is immense. Toiling away in the arena, who knows how many years it would take, and the risks are extraordinarily high. Gritting my teeth, I commanded, deduct the cost, deposit all the spirit stones within the system's storage into him. As you wish, boss. The little demoness clapped in excitement, initiating cross-world energy synchronization. Consumption 30 million low-grade spirit stones. Almost the moment the command was issued, a torrent of energy, majestic beyond description, poured from the void into Chonglu's body. This was not the impure demonic energy absorbed from the outside world, but the purest primal essence refined by the system. His arid meridians, like parched earth meeting a torrential flood, surged through the stages of demon soldier, demon general, and foundation establishment. Each cultivation realm, as fragile as a thin sheet of paper, was shattered in succession. From the outside, Chonglu, whose aura had previously been faint, suddenly erupted with an astonishing pressure. Black demonic energy surged into the sky, coalescing into a vague yet magnificent phantom of a demon god behind him. Demon General, Golden Core Early Stage, Middle Stage, Late Stage, and finally Golden Core Perfection. The entire process lasted only a dozen short breaths, and that oppressive aura swept across the entire arena. Every member of the demon race below the Golden Core stage was forced to their knees, trembling uncontrollably. Even Yuji in her private room on the second floor stood up abruptly. The fan in her hand was shattered by the invisible shockwave. Her purple pupils constricted violently as she stared fixedly at the man in the arena. How could this be? One moment he was a talentless wretch with nothing but his bloodline. The next, he had become a formidable master of the Golden Core perfection stage. Could it be that he had been concealing his true strength all along? No, that energy explosion was undoubtedly a genuine breakthrough in cultivation. Chonglu clenched his fists, feeling the power surging and roaring within his body. That accursed hunger had finally been suppressed. He lifted his blood-red eyes, scanning the entire arena with icy indifference, finally letting his gaze settle upon Yuji on the second floor. Yuji's heart skipped a beat as she read a hint of warning and impatience in Chonglu's eyes. You must quickly grow accustomed to the demon realm and find a way to rely on your bloodline to locate your kin. Spare no effort to acquire the Sea Silence Demon technique. After issuing the command to Chonglu's independent consciousness, I withdrew my main consciousness. Back in the Heavenly Court small world, I opened my eyes and exhaled a long, turbid breath. I could clearly sense that with Chonglu's breakthrough, my own comprehension of the laws of the demonic path had naturally ascended to a new level. I glanced at my clones, who were still brimming with enthusiasm, pushing forward the Industrial Revolution. Recalling everything I had seen and heard about the demon race in the demon realm, an unprecedented sense of urgency washed over me. Little demoness, is there any way to accelerate my breakthrough? Boss, you have finally asked the question that truly matters. The little demoness flew toward me, wearing an expression as if she were prepared to mentor me. In truth, deducing cultivation manuals later on is quite simple. As long as the database is sufficiently complete and you provide enough spirit stones, I can do it for you. However, the problem is, she circled around me, clicking her tongue, your spirit roots are simply too mediocre. If not for the system and your clones helping you preserve your life, you would never dream of forming a golden core in this lifetime. My face darkened. Those words were deeply hurtful. I had always known my innate talent was lacking, but to be told so bluntly was a first. Getting back to the point, if you wish to raise your strength, you must first upgrade your spirit roots. After all, spirit roots are the very foundation. How do I upgrade them? I asked simply, using earthly treasures combined with a massive influx of spirit stones to force the progression. The little demoness raised a finger. As long as there is enough wealth, even the heavens can be shattered. I looked at the system panel. The remaining balance of over 10 million low-grade spirit stones, after the funding provided to Chonglu, left me in deep thought. This small amount of wealth is certainly insufficient to upgrade myself. Then let us go pillage once more. Little demoness summoned 9,000 clones at the Foundation establishment stage. Very well. A flash of white light erupted, and the plaza was once again filled with an army of new clones. Elevate all these clones to the Golden Core stage. Boss, the spirit stones are insufficient. The remaining funds are only enough to elevate 5,000 clones to the Golden Core completion stage. The remaining 10,000 plus clones can only reach the early stage of the Golden Core realm. It will suffice. A flicker of madness ignited within my eyes. Transmit my orders. My voice resonated throughout the entire small world. Ada, lead 2,000 Golden Core early stage clones to scout every forbidden ground, perilous location, and renowned ancient cultivators dwelling within a 100,000-mile radius of the southern region. If you encounter an opponent you cannot defeat, utilize the system's teleportation to employ human sea tactics. Bring every scrap of dust from within those sites back to me. Ayer, lead 2,000 Golden Core early stage clones to conduct a carpet search within a 100,000-mile radius. Expropriate every spirit mine and herb garden you find, regardless of whether they have an owner, and transport everything into the small world. Asan, abandon your infiltration of the Qingyun sect. Lead 2,000 Golden Core completion stage clones to continue the tax collection operations. This time, regardless of whether they are righteous or demonic sects, empty the treasuries of every organization and clan you encounter. For those who resist, fight until they submit. The remaining clones will continue to reside within the small world to research pills, formations, and artifacts, and to further deduce cultivation techniques. Understood. The response sounded like mountains collapsing and seas roaring, causing the very foundation of the small world to tremble. The cultivators of the southern region could never have imagined that shortly after being taxed, they were about to face an unprecedented catastrophe. This is what I call, while my neighbors hoard grain, I hoard weapons. The neighbors are my storehouse. Except this time it is no longer a small-scale raid. It is a massive force. 5,000 Golden Core completion stage and over 10,000 Golden Core early stage cultivators descending like a plague of locusts. In an instant, the entire southern region was cast into a state of panic. Have you heard the news? The Myriad Beast mountain range in the north was stripped bare overnight. Even the den of the Grade 7 Demon Emperor was excavated. That is not all. The Bloodslaughter sect, a demonic faction that has endured for 3,000 years in the west, was targeted. Both their mountain gate and their guardian formation were packed up and carried away in the dead of night. Now all that remains where the largest spirit mine in the southern region once stood is a massive crater. Until yesterday, it belonged to the Tianyan sect, the premier sect within this 100,000-mile territory. Upon inspection, the mineral vein was gone, leaving behind only a bottomless pit. Even the mother ore was rescued and taken away. It is that mysterious organization again, the Heavenly Court and the Heaven Exploding Gang. Did they not only plunder the evil cultivators before? Why are they now sparing not even the righteous sects? Nonsense, they call it tax collection. My sect was taxed yesterday. The treasury was swept clean and not even a single hair was left behind. The leader even left us a receipt stamped with the seal of the Heavenly Court's General Administration of Taxation Southern Region Branch. Panic began to spread. Countless sects scrambled to activate their grand protective arrays under the cover of night. The elite disciples trembled in fear, yet their efforts were in vain. Facing such overwhelming numbers, no defensive formation could withstand them. Tens of thousands of Golden Core cultivators did not merely attempt to break the arrays, but unleashed a relentless barrage for half an incense stick of time. Even a celestial grade formation would inevitably shatter under such force. Meanwhile, I rested in utter tranquility within the Heaven and Earth Palace, watching the numbers on my system interface fluctuate wildly, unable to suppress a grin. Half a month later, as the final legion of my scrap army returned, the resources within the small world had been piled into several massive mountains. Rare treasures, spirit stones, and immortal crystals were piled in quantities beyond reckoning. Little demoness, is this enough? With a grand sweeping gesture, I commanded, quickly elevate my spiritual root to its absolute limit. As you wish. The little demoness's eyes lit up as she rubbed her small hands together. This upgrade will consume a vast quantity of 5-element treasures and deduct 50 million low-grade spirit stones. How much? I bolted upright from my lounge chair. 50 million? Why don't you just go rob someone? However, it was already too late. Before the words had even left my lips, the little demoness had completed the operation. The deduction was successful, and the spiritual root upgrade had commenced. I felt as though my entire body had been cast into a furnace. A bone-chilling, indescribable agony surged through every limb and meridian. Every inch of my meridians, every fragment of bone, and every drop of blood was forcibly torn apart. Then they began to reform as 5 brilliant rays of light erupted from my body: crimson, azure, gold, white, and black. The 5 beams of divine light harmonized, bathing the entire sky of the small world in radiant, multicolored hues. My body dissolved into the brilliance, only to slowly recondense within the light. This was a true process of tempering the marrow and cleansing the flesh. I know not how much time had passed, but as the agonizing pain subsided, a sense of unprecedented vitality flooded my entire being. I looked down at my hands. My skin had become translucent like crystal, as refined as the finest mutton fat jade. I could now clearly perceive the 5-element spiritual energy within the heavens and the earth. Like swallows returning to their nest, they poured joyfully into my body, flowing autonomously without the need for any cultivation manual to guide them. The entire world in my perception had become distinct, vivid, and deeply intimate. Spiritual root upgrade complete. 5-element heavenly grade attained. You unscrupulous merchant. You truly are a treacherous profiteer. I regained my senses, pointing a finger at the little demoness as she hovered in midair. My heart ached so intensely that my hand trembled. That was 50 million, you know. That was the blood and sweat I earned through such arduous looting. You get what you pay for, after all. The little demoness spoke with cold, unwavering logic. Master, you must broaden your perspective. If you wish to truly master the heavens and earth, a 5-elemental spirit body is the bare minimum. Had I not been lacking in merit energy, I would have upgraded you to an immortal grade constitution directly. I clutched my chest, feeling as though my heart were bleeding, yet I had no choice but to accept it. I could already sense that with this supreme spirit root, my affinity for energy and the speed at which I could circulate it had increased by more than 100-fold. This wealth was well spent, however agonizing it felt. But just as I was still grieving over the 50 million spirit stones I had squandered, the sky above the heavenly court subworld was suddenly blanketed by a vast, boundless purple aura without the slightest warning. That purple aura surged in from the east, stretching across 30,000 miles, majestic and immense. It carried a will as vast and primordial as the dawn of creation, causing every one of my clones within the subworld to instinctively cease their tasks and gaze upward. Master, do not dwell on such trivial losses. Something monumental has occurred. The figure of the little demoness appeared beside me, her usual mocking expression entirely replaced, her petite face etched with grave solemnity. This is the manifestation of the heavenly Tao. A child of destiny has been born in the southern region. I furrowed my brow. A child of destiny? Indeed, the very protagonist of this era. Little demoness explained, the great war between immortals and demons is imminent. To oppose the demon lord, the heavenly Tao selects an individual to face the calamity, bestowing upon them immense providence. Such a person progresses in their cultivation by leaps and bounds, encountering fortuitous events at every turn. They are the protagonist of this epoch. She paused for a moment, her tone shifting, a calculated glimmer flashing in her eyes. I propose you locate him immediately and take him as your disciple. Firstly, you may share in his great fortune, and secondly, once he matures and quells the demonic disaster, you as his master will receive an immense bestowal of heavenly merit, a treasure far superior to mere spirit stone. I immediately grasped the profound potential in this arrangement. A child of destiny, the savior of the future. In my eyes, he was nothing more than a walking ATM of merit. I had to find him. I did not hesitate for a second. All of my clones immediately abandoned their tasks, forming teams of 3 to begin a The target was a child of destiny, marked by an innate and miraculous celestial phenomenon. In an instant, every clone departed from the small world, transforming into streaks of light that scattered toward the 4 corners of the horizon. This massive mobilization of cultivators immediately shook the foundations of the southern region. They have gone mad. What could the lunatics of the Jatianbong possibly be planning? They appear to be searching for something, swarming across the land like a plague of locusts. Under the advantage of absolute numerical superiority, within half a day, the information was relayed back to the southern region, pointing to a remote, humble mountain village known as New Family Village. By the time the 3 clones assigned to search this region arrived, the sky above the village had descended into utter chaos. Dozens of formidable auras were locked in a tense confrontation in the air, ranging from the golden core and nascent soul stages, with even the faint, elusive silhouette of a soul formation monster lurking in the shadows. The center of their contention was a newborn baby boy, born to an ordinary family of hunters within the village. The infant did not cry nor scream, his eyes were terrifyingly dark and his body was enveloped in a faint ethereal aura. This child shares a fated connection with my Tianyin sect. I hope you fellow Taoists will show some respect. A nascent soul elder bellowed. Nonsense. A prodigy like this should join my Shusha sect to cultivate the supreme demonic arts. Stop arguing. I'm an unrestrained soul formation loose cultivator. Becoming my disciple is the greatest fortune he could ever receive. Seeing that a bloody battle was about to erupt, I watched on coldly. From within the small world, I issued a ruthless order. Ling Yi, prepare to teleport and all remaining clones form a formation to intercept them for me. The very next moment, a sudden and unexpected turn of events occurred. Within the space surrounding the village, the figures of nearly 10,000 golden core cultivators suddenly manifested. Without a word, their massive spiritual power linked together, forging a grand and peerless formation that engulfed the entire battlefield. Who goes there? It is the Jatianbang. All the great experts who were contending for the child were left stunned. They could not comprehend why these madmen had suddenly appeared here, and even more why they had arrived ready to fight to the death with everyone present. Nearly 10,000 golden core cultivators, 5,000 of whom were at the peak of the golden core stage, combined their strength for a single strike. Even if it was merely the simplest surge of energy, its power was enough to make a soul formation monster lose all color in his face. The solidified spiritual hand of that soul formation loose cultivator was torn to shreds the moment it made contact with a deluge of power. Dozens of powerful experts present at the scene, including even the nascent soul-old monsters, were forced back by this overwhelming pressure, their blood churning within them. A white light flashed as the figure of Ling Yi appeared beside the infant's cradle, scooping up the child with one hand while gripping the terrified hunter couple with the other. In an instant, they vanished from the spot. It is bad, the child has been taken. The crowd finally reacted, but it was already too late. Nearly 10,000 clones, having completed their mission before they could be summoned back, were assaulted by the furious nascent soul cultivators and the nascent soul old monsters. They dissipated instantly without a single cry, without any resistance. Nearly 10,000 golden core cultivators were shattered like bubbles, turning into a gruesome rain of blood. This scene left everyone present in utter shock. They could not fathom which power would treat nearly 10,000 golden core cultivators as mere disposable consumables. This was not madness, this was absolute insanity. 3 days later, within the Heavenly Court subworld, the figure of Asan coalesced, his face showing the relief of one who had survived a great calamity. As soon as he was reborn, he reported to me, "Boss, the outside world is in complete chaos. Every sect and faction in the southern region, regardless of whether they are righteous or demonic, have formed a demon extermination alliance. They have sworn that even if they have to scour the earth 3 feet deep, they will find our Jatian gang." I glanced at the Son of Heaven's mandate wailing beside me, as well as the bewildered mortal couple, and waved my hand. I understand. For the time being, all clones must cease their activities outside. Everyone is to remain within the subworld. Those who are refining techniques continue your work. Those studying alchemy, formations, or artifacts do the same. After laying out these instructions for low-profile development, the little demoness flew over. "Boss, the Heaven's mandate of the Immortal path has descended, which means the corresponding demonic star of the demonic path will soon appear as well. One righteous and one demonic, they are each other's final tribulation. This is the war of the immortal demon Heavenly Tao. Boss, you belong to the Immortal path. If you find it before it matures and bring it back to the southern region to execute it, the Heavenly Tao will reward you greatly." My heart stirred slightly. Indeed, why should I wait? I can simply find it myself and eliminate it. I immediately channeled my consciousness to issue a new command to Chonglu, who was currently in the demon realm. "Chonglu, find a way to collect as much high-level demon clan blood as possible, the purer the better." In the demon realm, the territory of the Blood Ant Demon clan had tracked down Chonglu's family through his bloodline. Upon receiving my command, he immediately utilized the hidden communication channels and his own peak golden core cultivation. Within a few short days, he had acquired several vats of pure demon blood from the various branch families of different royal clans. Upon obtaining the demon blood, I did not hesitate to let the little demon girl perform the top-up. I exchanged them for 5,000 demon race clones. All of them were synchronized to the golden core perfection stage, causing the system balance to decrease by half. 5,000 golden core demon clones appeared in the small world with a ferocious aura. I directly teleported them near Chonglu, then divided them to disperse in all directions. Their mission was twofold. First, to collect all available resources, and second, to investigate why this so-called Chonglu returned to the family without causing a stir. A branch bloodline wandering in exile, no matter how pure its lineage, cannot achieve anything without strength and a foundation. He lived a life of leisure and contentment, never involving himself in any struggles for power. Every month, he would remain in the small courtyard assigned to him by the clan, reading the vast collection of immortal and demon classics copied from the family library. These classics would all be synchronized to the Heavenly Court small world, becoming the nourishment needed to perfect his cultivation techniques. One day, a guard clad in ornate demon armor arrived at the small courtyard. "Young Master Chonglu, the clan leader summons you." Chonglu set down the jade slip in his hand. He followed the guard to a magnificent grand hall constructed from the skulls of colossal beasts. On the throne of the grand hall sat a middle-aged demon whose aura was as deep as an abyss. He was the clan leader of the Blood Scorpion Demon clan, a true demon venerable. A powerhouse at the integration stage, Chonglu noted. The clan leader looked down at Chonglu, a glimmer of approval flashing in his eyes. "You have done well. Although you are a branch descendant, your bloodline is the purest among this generation of our clan, but for the demon race, bloodline alone is insufficient. True strength is the only reality." He stood up and a terrifying pressure descended, enveloping the hall. "The demon god has issued a decree. The great immortal demon war is about to erupt in full force. All demon generals and tribesmen at the golden core stage and above must prepare for battle. You still have time. Improve your strength quickly and do not bring shame to the bloodline you carry. Do you understand?" "Chonglu understands, clan leader." Chonglu replied calmly. "Very well, you may return and cultivate." Chonglu bowed to pay his respects, though he was complaining. "Since the core technique hasn't been fully deduced yet, what basis do I have to advance?" Several months later, a clone positioned deep within the demon realm sent back intelligence. "Master, I have discovered the demon prince. It is rumored he has been taken in as a personal disciple by a demon emperor. He is currently guarded at all times by a soul transformation demon lord and 4 nascent soul demon commanders." Upon receiving this intelligence, I instructed the clone to observe with the utmost caution. "Do not let yourself be discovered. Little demoness, how much longer for the technique?" Almost there, it only lacks the final bit of data." The little demoness was clearly agitated. "Provide more advanced techniques and martial arts manuals. The more you provide, the better, I understand." A gleam of ruthless intent flashed in my eyes as I issued an order to all golden core clones within the demon realm. "There is no need to remain hidden any longer. Against all strongholds, and all weak cultivators within your respective sectors, implement a policy of total plunder. Use the greatest speed possible to collect everything of value." In an instant, the demon realm was plunged into chaos as countless demon factions in remote regions were suddenly attacked and destroyed. These mysterious golden core demon cultivators acted like wolves and tigers. They did not seek to occupy territory or claim resources. They merely slaughtered and stripped away every script, every technique, and every demonic artifact, moving like a sudden gale, arriving swiftly and departing just as quickly. Finally, through 6 months of blood-soaked accumulation, the heaven-earth indestructible demon physique was successfully deduced up to the late nascent soul stage. Good, very good, exceptionally good. My spirits were high. I immediately commanded the little demoness to teleport Ling Yi over. All clones within the small world were to suspend all operations, and at my signal devote their full power to assisting Ling Yi in forging a perfect nascent soul. Within the small world, over 15,000 Golden Core clones sat cross-legged, channeling all of their insights and all of their spiritual power through an invisible network, converging entirely upon Ling Yi, who sat at the center of the spirit spring. Ever since I ascended to a heaven-grade spirit root, every one of these clones has provided Ling Yi with a foundation of unfathomable strength, far surpassing any prodigy in this world. In less than the time it takes for 3 incense sticks to burn, the golden core within Ling Yi's body shattered completely. A tiny figure, transparent as crystal and identical to his own likeness, sat cross-legged within his dantian. The nascent soul had succeeded, but wait, don't, the little demoness suddenly screamed, continue condensing. Your heaven-grade 5-element spirit roots can condense a 5-elements nascent soul. I was stunned, but immediately instructed Ling Yi to follow her lead as the surging energy continued to pour into him, very rapidly. The second, the third, until 5 nascent souls, each representing metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, circled the original core and took shape. The 5 nascent souls of differing attributes began to spin, eventually merging into a single nascent soul of chaotic color. The aura emanating from that nascent soul was more than 10 times stronger than before. The moment the souls merged, the entire heavenly court pocket world trembled violently. The concentration of spiritual energy erupted, and the scale of the pocket world naturally expanded twofold, while an entirely new medium-grade spirit vein formed deep underground, merging with the previous spirit spring. This was the reward from the Tao of Immortality for those who reached the absolute pinnacle of cultivation. And under the augmentation of this reward, Ling Yi's aura surged madly. Nascent soul early stage, mid-stage, late stage, finally it settled steadily at the late nascent soul stage. I sensed the immense power being synchronized through our connection, and my heart was filled with boundless ambition. The little demoness used the spirit stones to upgrade Ada, Aer, and Asen of the heavy tower to the late nascent soul stage. All remaining clones were upgraded to the early nascent soul stage. With a single command from me, the already depleted reserve of spirit stones in the system was completely exhausted, but in return, I gained 4 great generals at the late nascent soul stage and a terrifying army of 15,000 early nascent soul practitioners. With everything complete, my consciousness subconsciously descended deep into the demon realm to the clone that was still cautiously monitoring the demon star. I looked at the youth being protected at the center like a moon surrounded by stars in the distance, and the corner of my mouth curled into a cold smile. Now it is time to go.